Naruto charged in, easily leaping over a sudden, faster volley of kunai. He landed just as Kai appeared, forcing him to instinctively lean right, narrowly dodging a fist. A follow-up right hook immediately jarred his body. Kai then spun, delivering a brutal kick to Naruto's stomach that sent him skittering several yards across the ground. Naruto rolled back to his feet, attempting to evade a roundhouse kick, but it connected, sending him sprawling again. Kai stood his ground, black markings still rippling across his skin. Naruto lifted his mask just enough to spit blood, then stood, rolled his neck, and rushed forward once more. Kai met him, throwing a right hook that Naruto ducked under, landing a jab directly beneath Kai's extended bicep. Kai grimaced and kneed him in the side. Naruto rolled with the impact, immediately leaping into a 360-degree spin to avoid a low kick aimed at his knees. Mid-spin, he unleashed a fist that connected brutally with Kai's chest. Both regained their footing, exchanging a flurry of blows until Naruto's superior speed began to gain him the advantage. Kai rolled onto his back, then pushed himself up with a kick. He leaned back, narrowly avoiding a roundhouse kick that could have taken his head off. Righting himself, he lunged, delivering a shoulder charge that threw Naruto off balance. Seizing the opening, he landed a spinning back kick to Naruto's side, sending him tumbling across the field once more. Naruto rolled out of his tumble, then leaped hard to his right, evading a potent fireball heading his way. Landing, he saw Kai forming more hand signs and waited for his next move. Kai finished his sequence, extending his hands to the sides. Miraculously, 2 whips of flame shot forth. Naruto remained unfazed. Kai swung one whip overhead, snapping it towards Naruto, who rolled clear. He immediately had to jump to avoid the second whip sweeping just beneath him. He then dropped to the ground, allowing another whip to pass harmlessly over him, before rolling across the ground to avoid a downward strike. Reacting swiftly, Naruto rolled into a crouch and slammed his hands down, causing an earthen wall to erupt before him. Kai sent both whips around either side, attempting to strike him within his cover. To Kai's surprise, Naruto popped out of the ground a few feet behind him, already going through hand signs. Kai snapped a whip towards him to disrupt his jutsu, but Naruto jumped aside to avoid it. When he landed, he stumbled, almost losing his balance. Kai seized the moment, swinging both flame whips his way. Before they could connect, however, they inexplicably dispersed. He tried to resummon them, but they refused to manifest. "What the hell?" he muttered, repeating the hand signs. As he did so, onlookers watched in amusement and amazement as the real Naruto, having just gently placed a seal on Kai's back, stood directly behind their former leader. It was remarkable to see their seemingly all-powerful leader made to look foolish. "Borrowed power makes you weak when it is no longer within your reach," Naruto stated casually, alarming Kai. He quickly leaped to the side, now facing both Naruto and his clone. "What the hell did you do?" Kai demanded darkly, clutching his neck as his curse seal began to retract. Naruto casually advanced, dispelling his clone. "I have cut your contact with that seal upon your neck," he explained, confusing the crowd further. "A gift from Orochimaru, I assume," he added, shocking the onlookers even more. Until now, they had believed it was simply a natural boost to Kai's abilities. "So, you've seen it?" Kai asked, stretching his body, now prepared to fight without the seal. Naruto shrugged, his calm demeanor unwavering as he stalked towards Kai. Once before. Kai couldn't admit it, but he was truly scared. This was his greatest fear realized: death before he was ready. All this time, he'd held back his army, terrified of the cage taking action and ending him. Now, ironically, his fear of the cage had led to a far more humiliating death at the hands of a man he didn't even know. It was a laughable end for a spineless leader. As Naruto closed in, Kai threw a basic punch, aiming to fight to the end. Without the curse seal, he could now feel his previous injury, giving him a wobbly base that proved fatal in this situation. Naruto easily caught the fist, holding it in place, and stared into Kai's eyes. "All that power you claim to have, and this is all you could put up?" he asked, amplifying his voice to further humiliate Kai before his army of onlookers. "If you were a lesser man, I'd excuse your childish boasting," he continued, snapping Kai's arm with a violent flick of his wrist. "But, you are a supposed all-powerful, fearless leader." Kai looked at the onlookers, seeing faces filled with disappointment, amazement, and even hope. He was losing his people. They weren't there for him because he hadn't been there for them. Everything his father fought and died for, everything his grandfather created, had gone to waste because of his cowardice. He wobbled on his feet before using his remaining good hand to take another swing. Naruto punched Kai in the throat before he could even complete his swing. Kai's hand immediately clutched his throat. Naruto watched him for a second, tilting his head in wonder at the vehemently coughing man. He then jabbed him in the shoulder, causing his last remaining arm to fall limp. "It is men like you that truly disgust me, Kai," he said, spitting out the name mockingly. Kai glared, then, for some reason, attempted a headbutt. Naruto simply delivered a sharp jab, breaking his nose. As Kai lifted his head to both soothe the pain, with no hands, and stop the bleeding, Naruto spun and delivered a brutal back kick to his exposed kneecap, dropping him to his knees. "It is men like you," he said, amplifying his voice again, "that eat away at the fiery passion of the scorn for your own selfish gains. In truth, if you were honest with your people, they'd know the true reason for your so-called new plan." Naruto mocked again, air quoting the last two words. Kai spat blood from his mouth but couldn't speak with his crushed windpipe. "People," he said, pacing and addressing the crowd of onlookers. "This man that you have all so graciously devoted your services to has had no intentions of fulfilling the acts he has promised." He stopped pacing and placed his hands behind his back, bouncing on the balls of his feet in an almost amusing, childlike manner. "You see, Kai here," he gestured to him, "Kai fears death." The crowd of onlookers looked on in confusion. "Of course, I know what you're thinking," Naruto continued, resuming his pacing. "Everybody fears death, it's only natural," he said, speaking for them, summarizing what was running through their minds. "But, ladies and gentlemen, you must believe me when I say that no man has ever changed the world with a fear of death holding him back. No man has liberated an oppressed nation with the strings of death securing his feet to the cliff of safety. It's preposterous to believe in a leader who is not willing to give his life for his own cause." The surrounding men and women murmured amongst themselves. Naruto couldn't tell if he was winning them over, but he was determined to drive his point home. "From the looks of you, I just know there is a passion for the cause. I can tell you people want retribution for the true evil of this world. Most of you, I'd assume, view that as the major villages," he said, receiving more than a few chuckles and murmurs of agreement. Naruto nodded to them. "Believe me, I get it. But, listen to me now. Your hatred is misplaced." The crowd was silent, intently listening to what he had to say. "The major villages are merely victims of the chaotic clutches of the established order that has been instilled by the brutality of many years of war." Ino stood behind the group of the 7 elites, watching their body language and noticing the subtle signs that Naruto was slowly winning them over. So far, it already looked like Zabuza and Kisame were on board, if their nod of agreement toward each other was anything to go by. The villages are victims, yes, but the cage are the perpetrators. At this, the people actually cheered a bit, clapping lightly in acceptance of his words. The unspoken truth of the matter is that they are the guardians of the modern standards of civilization, the ones that hold the leash upon men and women who seek something more, who seek a future of equality among us all. The crowd returned to their murmuring, apparently trying to discuss among themselves if Naruto was telling the truth. "I too seek this future. And I can assure you, I am more than willing to die for such a cause. I can almost guarantee that I may when this is all over. But if I am to die in the process of exposing these false gods for what they truly are, I want my actions to mean something. In order to do this, I am in need of an army," he stated. "I need an army willing to fight and die for the cause, just as I am willing to do the same." No one said a thing, they just stood there. "That is my purpose," he said casually. "I don't want to kill them," he said, shaking his head. "No, that's too easy. There's no pain in death. I want to humiliate them. I want to strip them of everything they hold dear and make them understand me. They have to understand that they are the antagonists." To everyone's surprise, Pakura stepped forward. "How do we know you're not just blowing smoke like Kai?" she asked daringly. Naruto turned to her and slowly paced towards her. "Because, unlike Kai, I have a vendetta. I have a mission that I will complete if not with an army, then by myself. Unlike Kai," he said once more, kicking the still immobile man over so that he was lying on his back. "I do not fear death. I don't fear the cage. Unlike Kai, I have real power." "Real power?" asked Aoi, stepping forward alongside Pakura. "You didn't look like much to me. Kai was just a lot weaker than I had imagined. If I had known, I would have killed him myself. If you wish to take his place, then you will have to fight me for it," Naruto said casually. Everyone could tell Aoi was afraid, but for some reason, he stepped up to the plate. Pakura saw the coming battle and stepped back to watch. Everyone knew Aoi was strong, so if this man could hold his own against him, then there was some merit to his words. Aoi drew his sword and stared across at his opponent. Naruto just stood his ground, undeterred by the fabled sword. Aoi waited with bated breath, hoping Naruto would make the first move. When he didn't, it only boosted Aoi's confidence that he wasn't as strong as he let on. He took off in a sprint, determined to end this quickly. When he reached the masked redhead, he swung his sword wildly, and Naruto sidestepped it. Aoi was thrown off balance and stumbled forward. Naruto caught him in a chokehold and, with absolutely no effort, began closing his windpipe. Aoi tried to free himself by stabbing at Naruto over his head, but a clone, Naruto had created it without Aoi noticing, plucked the sword from his hands. "I was lenient with Kai because I wanted to see what he could do," Naruto said eerily, so everyone could hear. "You, however, are quite famous for your prowess, so I have no need for a prolonged battle." With that said, everyone was shocked beyond belief when he spun Aoi's neck completely around with no effort at all. The crowd of people were all stunned into silence. Even the remaining 6 members couldn't believe it. They had all sparred with Aoi at one point, so they knew he wasn't that easy to take down. Or he shouldn't have been. Naruto picked up the discarded sword of the Thunder God and walked around the field until he spotted something. He walked over to the man who had lent his weapon to Kai. "I do believe you are in need of a new blade," he said, handing it over to him. The man was absolutely stunned to have received such a famous blade. The onlookers themselves were stunned to see someone hand a relic of that magnitude over so willingly. As if it were a casual thing, Naruto just went back to addressing the crowd. "Believe me when I say I have the strength to carry out my ideals. I have the knowledge of how to do it. I have the unquenchable drive to see it through. All I need is an army willing to do so as well." Everyone looked around at each other, weighing their odds. "If you are still not convinced, I am willing to take any of you on to prove my point," he said daringly, mainly directing his statement at the remaining 6 higher UPS. To everyone's surprise, Deidara stepped forward. Naruto eyed him suspiciously, expecting an attack. To everyone's surprise, Deidara knelt and bowed his head. Gasps and murmuring erupted around the area. Everyone watched as Kisame and Zabuza joined him, then Haiden and Kakuzu, and finally Pakura, who was now convinced. Seeing their higher UPS bow to a man who had just defeated their previous leader, slowly the 200 men and women began dropping down, bowing before the man who had promised action against the cage. Ino walked over happily to him, skipping a few times in a childish manner. "Looks like we have our army, hun," she quipped happily. Naruto smiled and wrapped an arm around her waist. "Looks like we do. Any news?" Menma asked as Kakashi walked into his office. The warning message had been sent to Sakura and Suzuki a week ago. They were due back in a few more days. Kakashi scratched the back of his head. "Meh," Suzuki and Mito responded with some mighty big news, he said casually, plopping down on the chair in front of Menma's desk. "What is it?" Menma asked cautiously. "Did they run into the masked individuals?" Kakashi stopped him before his string of questions ran wild. No, nothing like that," he said, waving him off. "It's a bit more personal." Menma shook his head in confusion. He didn't understand what Kakashi was getting at. Kakashi rolled his eye. Mito's pregnant." Menma sat back in his seat in surprise. Mito was. "She's pregnant?" he asked with a smile slowly creeping onto his face. "Wow, now, I'm gonna be an uncle," he yelled out, pumping his fist in the air. "Father, Hokage, and uncle," he muttered to himself. "Yup, impressive rap sheet," Kakashi remarked from behind his book. Menma was all teeth. "Are you not excited?" he asked in amusement. Kakashi shrugged. "Well, there's more news. I just wanted to give you the good before the bad," he said dangerously. Menma sat up in his seat, ready to listen. "Well, I'm waiting on one more person who needs to hear this." "What does it pertain to?" Menma asked, now growing a bit worried about what Kakashi was about to say. Kakashi just stared at him and shook his head as if telling him he couldn't say it without saying all of it. Menma just leaned back in his seat, his mind running circles, thinking about what it could be. Had Suzuki been killed? Had they been captured? Had Naruto died or something? He wasn't certain, but he just had a feeling he knew who was on their way. Sure enough, his father came in, raising his worry. If his father was here, then it definitely pertained to either Suzuki and Mito, or Naruto. He wouldn't be too thrilled about either of them. "Kakashi? What is it?" asked Minato, taking the other seat. He only nodded at Menma, who nodded back. If Kakashi took it upon himself to actually call him out for something, he knew it was something big. He and Menma stared at the dazed-looking silver-haired man, waiting for him to say it. With a sigh, Kakashi rubbed the back of his neck. "There was word from Kiri. We sent word for a more detailed description of the 2 masked assailants," he said with a heavy tone. Menma and Minato stared at him, an uneasy feeling welling up. Somehow, they both knew. "We know who it is." "Don't tell me," Minato said, shaking his head and dropping his gaze to the floor. He didn't even want to hear it. "It's Naruto, isn't it?" Menma asked timidly. Kakashi didn't respond, but his silence said enough. Menma shook his head and sighed. "Now what? He's attacked 2 nations already. There was no leniency for that. If the other villages were to find out, they'd demand his head immediately. Well, Suna and Kiri at least. Kumo and Iwa, to his knowledge, had no issues with the masked individuals. Then, the issue of it being Ino with him. That was another headache. Now it was certain, she was no victim in this. She was his accomplice and most likely how he escaped. "What now?" Minato asked. He couldn't believe it. His name was already tarnished, but now with having attacked 2 nations, no one would dispute it. Naruto Namikaze was no longer salvageable. What's worse, his actions could cause more problems for Konoha, especially for Menma. Kakashi shrugged his shoulders. "Menma, I know this puts you in a tight spot," he said, drawing Menma's attention. "But, if it comes to it, and Naruto becomes a major problem for Konoha and the other villages, then you must be Hokage first and his brother second. Both Menma and Minato understood what he was saying. Menma immediately wanted to dispute that, but how could he? Minato's heart ached, but he understood what Kakashi was saying. If Naruto was truly set in his ways, then he would have to be put down before he hurt anyone else. It hurt him more knowing that he was partially responsible for what his son had become. Kakashi, I couldn't possibly, Menma began. Minato cut in before he could finish. He's right. Menma was completely shocked by that statement. Tou-san. Had he really just agreed to kill his own son? How could you even say that? Minato shook his head sadly. Menma, Naruto is not well, and if he's running around killing people, we may have no other choice but to put him down. Menma sat back in his seat again, his heart shattering within his chest at the mere thought of having to do such an unspeakable act. Believe me, I know how you feel, but if it comes to it, it just has to be done. What if we find him before he does more damage? Menma asked, trying to find a way around this. Kakashi and Minato shared glances. I mean, we're the only ones who know who he is, so if we could find him and Ino before then, we could probably take them back undetected. Kakashi sighed. Menma, it doesn't work like that, he said, scratching his head. Even if we did get him back, he'd be thrown in a prison immediately, or worse. Well, what's a better option? He asked in frustration. What, just kill him? Minato sat up in his seat. Menma, there are just things that must be done. I doubt Naruto would even let us take him alive. What do you mean let us? I'm sure with me, Kakashi, and Sasuke there wouldn't be much he could do, Menma responded, letting slip a bit of his arrogance. Kakashi wasn't as confident. Menma, do not underestimate him. He looked much more serious than they were comfortable with. I can't explain it, but this is not the time for arrogance. Menma shook his head in confusion. Kakashi, I said me, you, and Sasuke. Kakashi just shook his head. Just, don't take him lightly. Kakashi said, looking down at his own foot. Naruto, Ino, and the 6 higher UPS sat within a room with a round table. Ino was on Naruto's lap with her bare feet propped up on the table as she stroked his hair. Naruto and the others discussed Naruto's plan, or as much as he was willing to tell them. What was the estimation? Naruto asked, directing his statement towards Pakura. She shuffled through a few papers. About even all around. About 50 for Konoha, 40 for Kiri, 45 for Suna, 40 for Kumo, and 50 for IWA. Naruto nodded as he absent-mindedly rubbed his hand against Ino's exposed thigh. Deidara asked, when is this attack happening? Naruto thought for a moment. Immediately, of course, he replied casually. No beating around the bush. Though I'm a patient man, I've waited for years. Now's the time. If we let their alliance solidify, our task will only get harder. There are 8 of us here. First things first, we must take our incentive. He said the last part darkly, confusing everyone. Yay! Sounds like fun, Ino quipped happily, wrapping her arms around Naruto's neck. Flying on his explosive clay bird, Deidara stared menacingly at the village below. He knew these familiar streets well, with maroon flags proudly waving on every building. It had been years since he was here, and it was so technologically advanced, TVs, news stores he'd never heard of. It was impressive. He thought, it'll look even better in rubble. His hatred for this place stemmed from their mistreatment of him in his youth. In IWA, you either survived independently or were handed over to the military for experimentation or early training. With his parents gone, he was subjected to the former. His eyes caught a glimmer in the outskirts of the village. He tossed down another flying creation, which swooped to the spot. Moments later, the bird returned with a blood-splattered Haiden on its back. Haiden, did you get the information? He asked. Haiden nodded, licking blood from his sickle's edge. Oh, you bet your effing ass I got it. Man, this is the most fun I've had in years, he yelled, looking down at the village he had no quarrel with. In truth, he just enjoyed destruction, all-around destruction. They left right after the meeting. Naruto had explained a condensed version of his plan to the entire army, dividing them based on which village they'd attack. He instructed them to wait at the base, training as much as possible until called to action. The higher UPS departed for their assignment, sending a message. Everyone had their task in mind and was determined. They had several objectives to complete before returning. A spark ignited within them now that they were taking action. Their new leader was clearly not one to beat around the bush when pursuing a goal. After only a week, they were already acting. Deidara chuckled, mentally ordering the birds to ascend into the clouds for cover. His eyes intently watched the setting sun, waiting for it to be swallowed by the horizon. Standing atop a high cliff overlooking their former home, Kisame and Zabuza readied their blades. Kisame had a very excited grin, while Zabuza's expression was nonchalant. Oi, this sure brings back memories, doesn't it? Kisame asked, peering at Zabuza. Zabuza just rolled his shoulders. Ah, he replied with a small nod. It's been a while since we've actually fought together. He looked back at Kisame. Kisame's grin widened. And what better way to get back at it than against our own home, he finished with a chuckle. His shark-skin sword purred in excitement. Kisame had a dark history with this place. He refused to admit that he once admired their psychotic cage, who was intent on destroying bloodlines, ironic, given his unusual mutation. So, you want to grab the kid? Or me? Zabuza chuckled. It'd be dead before its use ran out if I let you do it, he said in amusement. You just handle the distraction. Kisame grinned wider, displaying his sharp teeth. Zabuza's eyes glazed over, staring at the gentrified village he'd left years ago. It seemed almost sickeningly peaceful, as the last time he was there, it was nothing more than a stain upon the elemental nations. The last time he was there, the war had taken the last bit of life he had left. He had killed the child he'd taken under his wing just a few years prior. That was his vendetta, what brought him to Kai, who promised the vengeance he sought. He wanted the village to suffer as they had made him suffer his entire life, from his blood-filled academy days to his last years of service. He wanted them to suffer for all of it, and now, with their new leader's help, they finally would. So, you trust him? He asked the blue-skinned man to his right. Kisame looked at him to ensure he understood the question. It's been a week, and we're already attacking, he said as if it were obvious. Zabuza nodded. Yeah, but there's something else, I know it. He's got some other objective he's not telling us. Kisame shrugged. If we get the revenge we need, I don't care what he's planned. Zabuza just nodded and looked out to the horizon. The sun was almost down, it wouldn't be long now. Standing on a giant sand dune were two beautiful women, one green-haired and impressively muscular, the other a dainty-looking blonde bouncing on the balls of her feet in excitement. Oh, I can't wait to work with you, Ino chirped happily, looking over at the stony-faced woman. Pakura looked at her, mentally wondering what was wrong with this psycho. She was far too happy for someone who had just killed a group of genin on their way here. Dido. In truth, the mask creeped her out, as it seemed to match the girl's misleadingly sweet tone of voice. Do you want to grab the package or would you rather be the distraction? Ino asked her. Pakura just shrugged. For whatever reason, something inside her told her she did not want to get on this girl's bad side. It wasn't just because her boyfriend was their leader, it was a screaming intuition that this girl was far more dangerous than she let on. It's up to you. Great, she quipped happily, clapping her hands. I'll be the distraction. I get to use my new toys. Pakura wasn't sure, but she knew it wasn't something she'd want to face if she were on the other side of this attack. Had it not been for a few bad events, she might have been. Luckily for her, the higher UPS hated her for what she was and tried to kill her. That was their first mistake. After 2 years of following Kai, Pakura was losing hope in ever getting the revenge she so desperately wanted. Now, with Naruto's direction and a firm plan, it was finally time. What they did was unforgivable, and she refused to let them get away with it. Turning to the horizon, there was still some time before their attack. To gauge her new leader and understand their relationship, and to get used to the blonde's personality, she started a conversation. So, what's Leader Sama's deal? She asked casually. Ino looked at her in confusion. Are you asking me about my honey? She asked in an almost threatening way. Pakura noticed and quickly defused any deranged thoughts she might be having. And no, I was just trying to understand who he is, she said quickly. Ino gave her a very unsure look from beneath her mask. Well, don't get any ideas, lady. And you don't need to understand who he is. What is he? Your husband? Soon to be, she said happily, placing her hands together and tilting her head cutely. Pakura was weirded out but continued anyway. Well, who is he? You know, under that mask. Ino looked at her eerily for a few seconds. You don't need to know who he is. This time, it was definitely said in a threatening way. It's almost sundown, get ready. Pakura was alarmed by how hostile she suddenly became. She turned away and prepared for the mission. Standing on a lower mountain, Naruto and Kakuzu awaited the sunset. It was almost time to attack. They decided Kakuzu would be the distraction, as Naruto was more stealthy and deadly in close proximity, where their target resided. The sun was a sliver away from being completely consumed by the horizon. It's time, he said to Kakuzu, who simply nodded and followed him as they jumped towards the bridge to Kumo. Naruto looked up, and the sun was almost gone. As soon as darkness takes over, begin the assault, he ordered. Kakuzu said nothing as his body began to bubble and his stitches came apart. 4 of the masks connected to his body shot out, creating their own bodies. He nodded to his red-headed leader, who nodded back. It will take no longer than 20 minutes, he said as he jumped off the side of the bridge, intending to take a different path. Kakuzu watched the last ray of sunshine slowly disappear until it was completely gone. Wordlessly, the creatures on his back sprinted towards the mountainous village's entrance, their only purpose to cause as much damage as possible for 20 minutes. He jumped onto the back of his creature containing the fire element and they shot into the air. While there, he went through hand signs and blew an enormous ball of flames at the busiest section of the village he could see. The people had no time to react and were burned to a crisp. Within seconds, the shinobi in the surrounding area were on him, demanding why he was attacking. He remained silent and continued to wreak havoc upon Kumagakure's citizens. Using chakra, Naruto clung to the bottom of the Raikage's office. He waited closely to the nearest open window, listening for his chance to enter. He could feel the vibrations of Kakuzu's attacks, so he knew the Raikage could feel it too. What was that? A fairly drowsy voice yelled from within the office. He could hear a few footsteps charging towards the office. Raikage-sama, another male voice yelled, this one much more urgent. We're under attack. Naruto could hear the Raikage's chair slide out. Alright, he said. Samui, take Ryui into the vault. You'll be safe. Okay. You better come back, Darui. After that brief yet heartfelt commotion, Naruto heard a heavy door shut and footsteps charging back down the hall. Slowly, he crawled up to the open window. Climbing in, he looked around suspiciously, making sure no one was around. When he was certain, he walked further in slowly. He could hear small coos and reassuring whispering from somewhere. Turning his head, he grew alarmed when he saw the Haxabi form near the front of the village. That meant Kumo's Jinchuriki were still in town. At least one of them. He had to be quick. Going up to the vault, he knocked on the door. From within, the woman called out timidly, "D. Darui?" Naruto did his best impression of the man he had just heard a few minutes ago, adding labored breathing to make it sound real. "Samui, it's me, open the door. We have to leave, now." "Daddy? What's wrong?" a child's voice called out. "Ryui, everything's okay. We have to go, now," he said with the same urgency. He could hear Samui urgently trying to open the door, and he tapped the door as if he couldn't contain himself. Samui was shocked to see someone other than Darui. She stepped in front of her son with a kunao in hand. "Who are you?" she demanded dangerously. "I'd love to fight you, but I'm pressed for time. If you'd believe me, I'd rather not hit a woman in front of her son," he said casually. Samui's fight-or-flight response kicked in, and her only thought was to save her son. She rushed forward, slashing at the assailant, but Naruto grabbed her wrist, spun her around, and delivered a sharp chop to the back of her head, knocking her unconscious. Then, he was left staring across at the 5-year-old dark-skinned boy looking at him in fear. Flying above the silent village, Deidara and Haiden watched the horizon. As soon as the last sliver of light vanished, Deidara dropped the strange-looking creature from his hand. As they watched it fall, Haiden leaped from his bird towards their target. Deidara watched as his creature suddenly expanded into a huge, obese white blob. Before it even hit, he heard screams, and a small smile teased his face. When his creation impacted, there was nothing but silence. Then a flash of light blinded him momentarily, followed by a booming explosion he could feel from his bird. He smiled, seeing Ninja rally to the point of impact to recover survivors. Jerking his hands forward, he threw out 2 more creations. Both expanded into different creatures that shot forward like missiles, nose-diving straight for the bulk of the people. No longer needing cover, he swooped down on his clay bird and began throwing out smaller creatures that still packed enough explosive power to decimate a target and then some. He swiveled and swerved away from the pitiful jutsu thrown his way, continuing to attack shinobi and civilians alike. He jumped off his clay bird just as 2 earth spears impaled it. Quickly, he created another and looked towards the origin of the attack. He saw none other than the 4th Tsuchikage herself, Kurotsuki. Deidara grinned and dodged her next barrage of rock missiles, countering with a barrage of his clay creatures. Haiden used his sickle to climb the mountain. At the top, he ducked into the bushes as a group of individuals were being escorted to a shelter away from the village by 2 Chunin. The 2 ushered the group into a cave and prepared to shut it with a boulder. Before they could, Haiden decapitated one with a clean strike. He only managed to nip the other's arm. Sadly for the unaware man, that was all he needed. Performing hand signs, his body turned black, and the outline of a skeleton appeared over his skin. He pulled a black rod from somewhere on his form and impaled his own heart. The man grabbed his pouring injury, and Haiden turned to the cave. With his sickle dragging behind him, he casually strolled inside. There, he saw a few wealthy-looking civilians and some who seemed to have been luckily close when the attack began. The people gasped at his sight. They could tell he was an enemy. "Good evening, you pompous pricks," he said with a strangely excited tone. "I am here to retrieve someone important," he said casually. "Since this seems to be the VIP bunker, I just know she's here." He clicked his tongue in thought as he casually paced back and forth, looking into the fear-riddled eyes of everyone there. He seemed much creepier as he ignored the rumbles and booms of explosions in the distance. Feeling the tension, a middle-aged man in expensive-looking clothes tried to run for the exit. Being closest to the cave mouth, he thought he had it. Before he took more than 2 steps, Haiden's sickle impaled him through the back. The bottom blade pierced directly through his chest, and the second sliced through the base of his neck, protruding out the front of his face, leaving the top blade dug into the very top of his skull. He said, waving his finger as he continued looking around. can't have you FERS leaving on me now. Not that I couldn't let you go, I just don't want to. His eyes stopped on a woman nearing her early 20s with long brown hair and green eyes. She looked to be a fairly rich girl, exactly who he was looking for. Ah, he said, stepping around the people to get to her. Makatsuki, he asked. The girl quickly shook her head no and pushed back further, trying to sink into the rock behind her. Her eyes darted everywhere, trying to focus on something else, hoping he would leave her alone. Haydn could tell she was lying and could have just taken her, but he decided to have more fun. Well, that's really too bad, he said, standing up. Everyone else was afraid to move, so no one else tried to dash for the door. Haydn leaned his sickle against his shoulder. I guess I'll just have to start killing people until I find out who Makatsuki is, he said with a shrug. He turned to the man closest to the exit, other than the one he had already killed. The man saw his intention and tried scrambling away. And no, it's her no, he yelled before Haydn cut his head clean from his body. The others screamed in horror at seeing it roll across the floor. He looked around for an answer to his unasked question. With a chuckle, he held his hands out. Really? No one? Not a single person moved. Well, F me, I thought you people cared, he said, shaking his head. How inhumane. As he was saying this, he brought his weapon up again and prepared to bring it down on the next individual, which, to everyone's horror, happened to be the previous victim's shell-shocked son, not even 10 years old. Wait, yelled a feminine voice. Haydn looked over to the girl he knew was Makatsuki to begin with. It's me. Please, it's me, she said with fear oozing from her tone. Please, don't hurt me. She was clearly on the verge of hysterical tears. Haydn was still holding his sickle up above his head. He looked around the room at all the hopeful faces. He then looked down at the kid with his head down, who he was seconds away from butchering. What the hell? I already brought it up. With a disgusting sound of implement, he split the kid's skull in half. The room fell quiet at the horrific act. Even after he got what he wanted, he wouldn't spare a child. Now, their brief moment of hope when Makatsuki gave herself up was squashed. Haydn sighed as if the task was so taxing. Believe me, you little s-dash. I did you a favor. He walked back over to the girl, who was now regretting ever giving herself up as she cried vehemently on the ground, trying to scramble away. Haydn squatted down in front of her. Oh, stop your crying already, idiot, he muttered before putting her to sleep. With his handiwork complete, he stood up and looked around at the rest of the people, who were either crying or dead silent, frozen in shock. He slung Makatsuki over his shoulder and turned to leave. Well, it's been a load of fun, but I've got to make my exit. UFS have a nice day, he called out on his way out. The people were still shell-shocked by the events that just took place, but in a selfish way, were glad they'd live to see another day. Hope you die, or so they thought. With a whizzing sound, the people looked up at the top of the cave to see paper tags seconds away from blowing. Their screams were silenced with a boom that Haydn could feel even in midair as he dropped off the side of the cliff with Makatsuki slung over his shoulder. Kisame smirked as the sun disappeared. He looked over to Zabuza, who nodded. The two men jumped away, ready to begin their mission. Kisame shunshined into the village's very center. He looked around at all the stunned faces, looking his way in both fear and amazement. Finishing his hand signs, he opened his mouth, and a continuous stream of water shot out, filling the area incredibly fast until the surrounding, unlucky civilians were drowning within an unnatural bubble of water. It was huge and seemed to envelop a few blocks. Kisame smirked as his form seemed to bulk into a more shark-like appearance. From within, he went through hand sign after hand sign, sending off random attacks that burst from the water bubble where some of the civilians were drowning. Water dragons, shark bombs, shock waves, they were all being thrown around the village in different directions, drawing the attention of more than a few shinobi. He watched as those outside his bubble tried to save some of the civilians within the battle area, and those idiotic enough to jump and tried to save the drowning victims. Then, he was greeted by a few umbu who seemed to believe they were proficient in fighting within water. He smirked and swam faster than they could keep up with, ripping them to shreds with ease. He went through hand signs again and sent more and more deadly jutsu, shooting from his bubble sides. A sick chuckle accompanied his destructive reign of terror. He swam up to the surface, seeing someone he was eager to battle. Shark skin in hand, he stared across at the Mizukage, who also held his bulky blade. Kisame smirked and sank back down. Zabuza sliced through yet another guard as he rushed towards his destination. Just a while ago, he watched the new Mizukage, a young blue-haired man with glasses, walk out of the building, giving instructions to protect her with your life, so he knew he was in the right place. He was disappointed with the skill of the shinobi he'd encountered thus far. Only one put up a somewhat adequate fight, lasting but 20 seconds. In a whirlwind of motion, the last aspiring swordsman lunged at Zabuza, wildly swinging his blade with a battle cry. It was a pathetic display of weapon handling. Zabuza swiftly seized the man's wrist, sweeping his leg over the assailant's arm. He then twisted the arm behind the man's neck, securing him in a reverse armbar. Dropping to the ground, Zabuza brought the man down with him, pressing his face into the dirt beneath his legs. With a sudden jerk, Zabuza broke the man's arm, forcing him to release his grip on the sword. Zabuza rolled to his feet, snatched the screaming man's sword, and impaled his head to the floor. Silence settled in the room as Zabuza sighed, retrieving his bloodied weapon from the two lifeless bodies. He rested the sword on his shoulder and followed the muffled sounds of fearful breathing. With ease, he flipped over a wooden desk, revealing a frightened woman beneath. She scrambled away, but Zabuza simply stared, then plunged his sword into the ground beside him. Ino leaped to another rooftop, setting a paper bomb before moving to the next to repeat the process. With sundown approaching, she had already planted hundreds across the city for her plan. Once everything was set, she returned to the rendezvous point with Pakura. "You ready?" Pakura asked timidly, still wary after their previous heated exchange. "All set," Ino replied with a smile and a thumbs up. "Let's have a blast." Pakura gave her a strange look but nodded regardless. Only a sliver of sunlight remained. "I'm going," Pakura declared, jumping off the wall towards her target. Ino remained on the edge, swinging her feet to a tune in her head, watching the sunset. When the time came, she stood and stretched. "Okay, time to make my love proud," she exclaimed, gazing down at the village. Performing a few hand signs, she pulled her mask up slightly, exposing her soft lips. With a deadly innocent kiss to the air, a condensed ball of light shot from her mouth in a high, arcing trajectory towards the village center. For a moment, it seemed to vanish within the city. Ino casually waited for the result. Then, with a flash, an explosion erupted, followed by a deafening boom that rocked the ground beneath her. She cheered loudly at the destruction until a patrolling Chunin spotted her. She stopped her shouts of praise and pulled a scroll from her pouch. Unsealing its contents, a sword materialized in her hands. She rushed the boy, who was attempting to form hand signs. Before he could finish, she thrust her sword into the center of his chest. Rushing forward, she plucked the sword from his body before leaping and firing a sizable fireball at the village below. As it hit, she jumped from her high vantage point, evading a puppet that shot towards her. Searching for the assailant, she saw none other than Kankuro, controlling his personal puppet. Ino smirked beneath her mask and dashed through the village, unleashing more deadly attacks as she went. Pakura crashed through the window of the building she presumed contained her target. Moving deeper inside, she performed a few hand signs, and 3 balls of flame encircled her as she walked. Down the hall, she heard footsteps approaching from an adjacent path. She willed one of the flame balls forward, it intercepted the man, slamming straight through him. He fell to the ground, appearing drained of all moisture. She picked up the carcass and quickly tossed it into a nearby closet. She heard multiple footsteps from above but assumed them to be soldiers, based on her time there. Continuing her run, she leaped to the ceiling, avoiding detection by a voice she was sure she knew. It was the Kaze Kage, Gaara, heading down the hall with his apparent advisor, discussing the ongoing attack. "How much damage has been done?" he asked urgently. The brown-haired man quickened his pace to keep up with the redhead. "The assailant has destroyed a significant portion of the market district. There are numerous civilian casualties and a few shinobi as well," he debriefed. "Kankuro-sama is currently giving chase," he finished as they rounded the corner. Pakura was impressed by her partner's destructive capabilities. She had assumed Ino would be more delicate in battle, perhaps relying on speed rather than power. She had doubted Ino's ability to play the distraction, but her unease was clearly misplaced. If the Kaze Cage was en route, however, she needed to act quickly. Dropping back to the floor, she sprinted down the hall and rounded the corner. At the end of this hall was a room reserved for important, private meetings, the perfect place for the Kaze Cage to hide valuables. Before reaching the door, she threw a kunai with an explosive tag. The door blew open, revealing elderly council members still seated. These were the same individuals who had tried to kill her years ago. Ignoring that fact, she had a mission to complete. One of them saw her rush in from the smoke and immediately grew worried. "No, wait." Paku, he stopped as she leaped over their table and blew the door behind them off its hinges. Inside was a woman nursing a child. The men at the table stood, realizing her intentions. "She's after the Kazekige's nephew," one of them yelled. Pakura had no time for pleasantries as she reformed the chakra balls around her. She sent one out, draining the woman who had set the child down to face her. The woman's lifeless body fell to the ground, and Pakura quickly rushed to the crib where the baby lay. Picking him up, she turned and sent another ball into the room. She stepped to the side of the door and waited. The ball she sent into the room burst into a mist that rapidly drained the life from the 5 remaining men. As soon as it did, she took off, glaring at the disgusting men on her way out. Rushing back down the hall, she burst through the first window she saw. Covering the baby to protect it, she leaped away from the building. As she ran along the top of the village wall, she looked in at the extensive damage. The city was utterly devastated. In the distance, she could see sand tendrils chasing the masked blonde, who was too quick and nimble for the Kaze Cage to catch. Pakura created a clone and sent it to inform Ino that they were done and needed to escape. She didn't want to alert the Kaze cage to the true purpose of the mission. She couldn't let him see the bundle for fear of him giving chase. Pakura's clone reached the commotion center and threw an explosive kunao at the sand tendril, descending on the still recovering blonde. Ino looked up to see Pakura empty-handed. The green-haired woman simply nodded and vanished in a cloud of smoke. Understanding the message, Ino crouched to a stop. Looking across at the sand-wielding man, she smirked beneath her mask. "This was fun, Kazekage-sama," she said in a cute, eerily unsettling tone, considering how many people she had killed. Gaara looked absolutely furious, the sand behind him seeming to bubble with his anger. "Why have you done this?" he demanded. Ino just shrugged. "How about I tell you later," she said, using her hand to gesture a blown kiss. "You're not going anywhere," he declared, raising his sand menacingly. Ino smiled and made a hand sign. "Oh, I think I am." Gaara's eyes widened, unsure if she was bluffing. "You've got a village to save." She simultaneously set off the tags she had placed all over the village before taking off. Gaara turned to see all the explosions. He peered back over his shoulder, torn between chasing her and saving his people. Begrudgingly, he made his decision and flew towards any sound of people calling for help. He ordered every nearby shinobi to assist in recovering the injured. Pakura waited on the other side of the wall until she heard the massive explosions. Ino jumped down and began running with her, giggling in excitement. He. "We did it," she cheered happily as they made their exit. Pakura remained cautious of the girl but ran alongside her regardless. The 5 higher UPS, having returned from a completed mission, lounged in the meeting room, discussing the satisfaction of their actions. It had been a week since their simultaneous attacks, and they were still awaiting the lady's return. Naruto was absent from the group, opting instead to sit on the throne overlooking the main room, engrossed in a book. He was planning their next move. There was one more task to complete before they were ready, the most taxing, but also the most satisfying. Reaching a thought-provoking section in his book, he read it aloud. "War is but a mere stepping stone in the struggle of humanity. A struggle to survive, not only in the basic sense, but to survive in comfortability, survive with pride." It made sense. Humanity is selfish, arrogantly driven by a need to possess more than others. More power, more intelligence, more money, more land, more lovers. It was all just a pointless objective to blind everyone from the truth. That truth being, high love. "We're back," Ino's voice chirped as she landed on the throne beside him. Naruto smirked beneath his mask and looked over at her. "Ah, at last," he said, putting his book away and standing up. He offered her his hand, which she took gracefully. "Did you retrieve the target?" "Yes." "Well, no. Pakura did. I was the distraction," she said, hugging his arm. Naruto looked over at her. "Were you now?" he asked rhetorically, receiving a nod of her head against his arm. And love, my kiss of doom worked," she said excitedly. Naruto slowed his pace. "I thought I told you, I don't like you using that," he said, holding onto her mask. "You nearly killed yourself last time." Ino rubbed his hand. "I've got it down now," she said casually, shrugging her shoulders. "I can do it from up to 50 feet away now," she added with a nod. Naruto shrugged. "Well, if you say so," he said nonchalantly as he began walking again. Ino rushed him and jumped on his back, as she always did. Naruto cupped his hands beneath her knees and carried her to the meeting room as she once again played with his slicked back hair. Despite being slicked back, it was extremely moist, as if he perpetually took showers. When they reached the meeting room, the others were still chatting about their completed missions. They were all giddy about what was next, though they expected a few months of inactivity. Or so they thought. "Be ready," Naruto said as he tilted his head so that the now maskless Ino could freely attack his neck. "We leave for the final portion of preparation in an hour." With his piece said, he turned to leave. "Final portion?" Pakura asked for the group. Naruto turned back and looked at them as if it were obvious. "Konoha, of course, we're all going," he said nonchalantly before continuing down the hall. The 6 higher UPS exchanged glances. Haydn stood up with a chuckle. "HOH, I love this F*******ing guy." The others didn't verbally agree, but by the way they all stood up with either a grin or a chuckle, they were very pleased as well. Naruto and Ino walked down a hall leading to the containment area where the 4 kidnapped victims were held in a cell. Well, the 3 who could provide for themselves. The Kazekage's nephew was being cared for by one of the army women a few rooms over. Naruto had set Ino down, and they were casually walking until they reached the front of the cell. When they peered inside, the 3 victims scrambled away from the bars. "What do you want?" yelled the woman Zabuza and Kisame had taken from Kiri. Naruto simply stared at her. "Welcome, Raisama," he said pleasantly. "You must be wondering why you lot are here." He paced in front of their cell. Despite her outburst, she was still very much afraid and backed up to the wall. She even tried to block Naruto's view of the child, displaying her motherly instincts. "I am horribly sorry, but you are here because of your fiancé. I need him to accept my invitation. And if I have you, he'll come running. Makatsuka decided to question him next. Then, why am I here? Her voice was timid, as she already knew the answer. Naruto just shrugged. From what I was told by Haiden, you are widely known to be the closest friend to the Tsuchikage, Kuratsuki, he said. At least that's what the informant told him. Makatsuki remained silent after that, certain that lying would do her no good. Naruto just went back to pacing. What are you gonna do to us? Rai asked in fear as she pushed the little dark-skinned boy further behind her. Naruto tilted his head at her. Nothing, as I said before. You are only here as incentive for your fiancé's attendance. Rai began crying even more hysterically as she slid down the wall. In due time, Rai-sama. Until then, remain here. Shout out to this gentleman here if you need anything, he said, grabbing onto a random soldier who was passing by. The man looked absolutely starstruck standing in front of their leader. Yes sir, he yelled with a salute. Naruto patted his shoulder, and he and Ino walked back. A few minutes later, the group of deadly ninjas stood in the field above their base. Now, Naruto said, turning to address them, the attack must happen now, and we have to get there as soon as possible. It takes about 10 days total for a message to be sent from Suna to Konoha, meaning we have an estimated 3 days to beat it there, he said with a deadpan tone. Oh, we'll make that no problem, Deidara said, throwing out some clay. It expanded into a huge dragon, large enough to carry them all. Naruto nodded to him in apparent appreciation before continuing. The reason we are all going is because of Konoha's strength. He could see some of them were immediately offended, and he diffused their anger quickly. Not as a nation, but individually shinobi-wise, they possess the most extensive listing within the bingo books. Everyone will need to play the distraction other than Ino, who will retrieve the target. Gotcha, hun, Ino said from his side. As everyone climbed onto the clay creation, Naruto turned to them. We attack with no mercy. Cause as much damage as possible. Keep the attention on the main battlefield and off of the objective, he said, looking out towards the ground that grew smaller and smaller the higher they got. Then, on Deidara's command, they were zipping through the sky. Menma and Shikamaru stood on the roof of the Hokage Tower, looking out at the clear day. Menma was reviewing everything they had discovered, hoping Shikamaru had a different viewpoint. Ino, so she's alive, he said solemnly, thinking about his old teammate. Menma understood what Shikamaru was going through on a much deeper level. It was his brother, his own flesh and blood. Even though it hadn't seemed like it in the past, they were much closer before they started their training. It was the common infatuation any kid would feel for his older sibling. Mito as well, but to a different extent with him. They were brothers. He remembered climbing into Naruto's bed after nightmares, or jumping on him and crushing his ribs to wake him up in the mornings. Those were much better times. The three Namikaze children were inseparable then. It was crazy to think his own selfishness in starting training had caused the whole neglect. If he had just waited until after they graduated the academy as planned, perhaps his mother and father would have trained Naruto while they spent their time being children. Instead, all their attention focused on him and Mito, leaving Naruto to fend for himself. For a while, in his Chunin days, when they left on their training trip with Jiraiya and his mother, Menma wondered why Naruto was so forgiving of them. When he was younger, he wasn't worried about it, his young mind just focused on them returning to normal, and Naruto was a part of normal. By the time he made it to the academy, he had so much pride in his brother that he constantly boasted to everyone about how great he was. Of course, he was always overshadowed by Sasuke, whose brother was Itachi Uchiha. Regardless, on the trip out of the village, he began to mature and understand the world better. When he did, he thought back to those days when they sometimes wouldn't see Naruto for days, then weeks, then ever. It was the first time he truly understood why he sometimes found his mother crying alone. He understood what neglect was and couldn't imagine how it could affect someone. So, why was his brother so okay with it? Menma was certain that had he been in that position, he wouldn't be so carefree. He saw Naruto in a new light, even from miles away. To him, at that moment of realization, Naruto was unbreakable. He was too strong, both mentally and physically, to let anyone or anything hold him down. Then, they received word, midway through their trip, that Naruto Namikaze had been arrested. Without hesitation, the trip was dropped, and the four of them ran home demanding answers. It was a shock to Menma when he returned to a cold-shouldered Sasuke who seemed to hate him for some reason. Only later did he learn the circumstances. Naruto had killed Itachi Uchiha through the manipulation of the Snake Sunin. It was a heartbreaking story, knowing how close the two were. It seemed as though Sasuke would never forgive him, but apparently, after their fathers made up, Hyuga gave Sasuke a talk that settled his misplaced anger. He absolutely hated Naruto though, which Menma understood. It was only a natural human emotion. Regardless of their friendship, he was determined to free his brother for an act that wasn't his fault. The point is, he knew exactly what Shikamaru was going through, and then some. What do we do? Menma asked him, gripping the railing in front of him. Shikamaru sighed and looked around the village. Menma, if it comes down to it, we cannot spare them if they plan to continue their actions. Menma shut his eyes in defeat. Hearing it from Shikamaru just sealed the deal. Everyone else had already suggested it, and now hearing it from the one person he knew could come up with a better solution solidified what everyone else had told him. He would have to face his brother the next time they met. If Naruto wouldn't listen, he would be forced to kill him. Do you think you can do it? He asked him, referring to Ino. Shikamaru leaned over the rail as well. Menma, I have a son. If Ino jeopardizes his safety in any way, shape, or form, I will not hesitate. It destroys my heart, but for my son, I will do what I have to. Menma rubbed his neck, already stressed from having just taken office. He looked up at the cloudy sky in confusion. Why were there so many clouds? It had been perfectly clear just minutes ago. As if an ominous warning, a faint clap of thunder from miles away shook the village. A storm was coming. Ugh, I thought we were in for clear skies, Shikamaru said, looking up at the gray clouds. Damn, weather is so unpredictable these days. Yeah, Menma replied, trying to ignore the feeling welling up in the pit of his stomach. Naruto and the others were hidden above the clouds, preparing to attack the village below. Ino grabbed a kunao and jumped off the bird into the forest they were gliding over. Deidara brought the clay bird back to the center of the village, awaiting the order. Naruto slowly mouthed numbers, as if following a clock. The enemy forces were poised for attack. Deidara clutched two clay birds, Pakura manifested chakra orbs, Zabuza and Kisame drew their swords, Kakuzu's back-mounted masks detached and assumed their own forms, and Haiden was eager to leap from the bird and wreak havoc. Naruto performed hand signs, extending his palm. A Raiznan began to coalesce, emitting a high-pitched scream as wind blades encircled it. Sparks of flame then erupted from its core, transforming the orb into a brilliant white. He held it over the edge of the clay creature, the others watching in awe as the surrounding wind violently twisted. Naruto silently continued his countdown. 6, 5, 4, 3. He fell silent, extending his hand further. Then, he casually inverted his hand, allowing the lethal ball of light to drop. The others observed it with curiosity, wondering what it would do. The chakra orb plummeted into Konoha's crowded market district, drawing the curious gazes of a few people. Upon impact, it seemed to melt into the ground before a devastating, ground-shaking explosion engulfed the entire area. Silence reigned for several blocks, followed by a deafening sonic boom. The others watched in amazement as that single jutsu annihilated block after block. They were quickly spotted, and fireballs rained down on them. Go, Naruto commanded as everyone dove from the clay creature, which spiraled to the ground like a missile. In their free fall, the group deftly dodged projectile attacks from all directions. It seemed every ninja in the village was already attacking. Pakura launched a chakra orb toward the densest concentration of people she could see. It exploded on impact, the resulting mist draining the unfortunate individuals nearby. Haiden, aided by Zabuza, used his sickle to deflect attacks. Kisame absorbed everything within his vicinity, while Kakuzu rode on the back of one of his black-masked creatures, which shielded him from close-range threats. Upon nearing the ground, they grabbed onto poles or slid off buildings to break their fall. Without hesitation, they dispersed to divide the enemy forces. Haiden and Zabuza hurtled towards the village entrance until they were ambushed by two renowned jonin. They split, narrowly avoiding wind-enhanced kunao that would have impaled them. As they rolled to their feet, they faced Kakashi Hatake and Asuma Saratobi. Nah, Kakashi. I guess we'll take these two, Asuma remarked, flicking ash from his cigarette. Kakashi fixed his gaze on Zabuza, lifting his headband. I guess so, he said, drawing two kunao. Zabuza wasted no time in rushing him. Deidara streaked through the sky, launching clay creatures until he was forced to leap, surprisingly, to avoid another piece of flying art, this one crafted with paint. Turning, he met the intense gaze of a pale man with a blank expression, who eyed him from a bird. Deidara's grin widened as he zipped away, deploying more creations, forcing the pale man to choose between saving people or attacking him. Pakura landed on the ground and was immediately thrown back by a gust of wind. Mid-air, she drew a kunao, deflecting a massive barrage of weapons. Upon landing, she saw the Kazekige's sister beside a girl with two buns and two scrolls. Oh, it's you, Pakura said casually, unfazed. Pakura. Tamari yelled, stepping forward with her fan ready. Why have you come here? She demanded. Pakura ignored the question, forming two more chakra orbs that circled her. Tamari stepped back to speak with Tenten. Don't let those touch you. You'll die instantly. Tenten nodded, retreating further, assuming support was her role since Tamari knew the enemy. Pakura charged, dodging wind-enhanced blades. Kisame used his same hata to cut down foolish shinobi who dared to engage him, simultaneously absorbing their chakra from the techniques they launched. Just as he was about to kill another man, he jumped back, avoiding a kick that shattered the adjacent wall. Gazing at his next opponent, he stifled a laugh at the man's ridiculous appearance, a green spandex suit and an idiotic bowl cut. "Heh, what the hell are you?" he asked, pointing his sword. Before receiving an answer, he jumped back again, experiencing a slight déjà vu as another individual, identically clad but younger, crashed down. "Guy-sensei, let us fight to win and better ourselves in the springtime of our youth," he ridiculously yelled. "Careful, Lee," a new voice advised from behind Kisame. Turning, he saw a member of the renowned Hyaga clan. "This guy's no ordinary opponent," the Hyaga said, veins bulging around his eyes. "His chakra is unbelievable." "Lee," Guy called with a serious expression, "remain vigilant. For some reason, I'm getting the vibe that this guy is very dangerous. We will beat him together," he proclaimed with a thumbs up and an unnaturally bright smile. Kisame, watching the spectacle in confusion, readied his blade. Kakuzu strolled casually as his masked thread blobs destroyed everything in their path. He mostly let them work, but occasionally reached out to kill individuals. He continued until he physically couldn't move. Forcing his eyes down, he saw his shadow was unusually long. He traced it to a young man crouched with his fingers in a strange position. Beside him stood a pudgier man with swirling patterns on his face, a Hyaga girl, a man on the back of a huge dog, and a child releasing bugs. Shikamaru sighed. This one was easy enough. Hinata, put him to sleep. "Hi," she responded, dropping into a taijutsu stance and activating her Byakugan. She gasped, looking at the ground. Before she could warn him, a hand thrust from the ground in front of Shikamaru, seizing his neck and slamming his face into the floor. Kakuzu retracted his hand from the hole in the floor beside him and continued walking. The group of shinobi readied themselves as his 5 masked thread blobs shot forward. Pulling herself through the window, Ino raced down the Hokage building hall, searching for her target. She had already checked 2 locations, both empty. This was her last idea. Hearing footsteps, she slid down, cutting the kneecaps of a passing shinobi, instantly felling him. Without thought of his suffering, she pressed on. Rounding another corner, she saw a door at the hall's end, light peeking from beneath it. She ran full speed and kicked it open. Inside was an empty room with only a table. But the light was on, and no one was there. Ino grunted in frustration before turning to leave. Before taking a step, she heard a faint thud on metal. Turning back, she scanned the room, puzzled. She walked further in, checking every possible hiding spot, but the room was empty. Just as she was about to leave, she noticed something unnatural. The chair was pushed too far from the desk, and she hadn't touched it. It wasn't merely from someone leaving in a hurry, it was too far. She peeked under the desk again and noticed a tiny fissure in the carpet, almost unnoticeable, but she saw it. Walking over, she pulled at the fissure until a large section of carpet easily came up. It was a cutout, perfectly hiding the scene when laid back down. Pulling more, she found a metallic door, clearly leading to a bunker. Ino grinned slightly. She pulled the door open and dropped inside. Looking around, she spotted what she assumed was her target, the Hokage's daughter, lying in a carrier. She chuckled, then threw her hands up, blocking a kick aimed at her head. The kick was strong enough to shove her to the side of the bunker, where she rolled away, avoiding an incoming fist. Ino stood at the bunker's exit, her old friend and rival standing protectively in front of her child. "Who the hell are you?" the pink-haired girl yelled, drawing a kunai. Ino smirked beneath her mask and swung her sword. She chuckled at Sakura's poor stance. Years out of training were clearly evident. "Sakura Namikaze," she mocked slowly. Sakura crouched lower, determined to protect her child. "Look, how about you just step aside before you get hurt, sweetie?" Sakura tightened her grip on her kunai, realizing she'd have to fight for her son. The bunker was too small for her usual fighting style, she'd have to play defense to protect her daughter. Walking down the street, Naruto effortlessly cut down anyone who attacked him with his sword. He had already decimated a group of Chunin, 3 Umbu agents, and several Jonin. He fearlessly strolled through the village, killing anyone he saw. By now, he expected to have been engaged by someone more worthy, like Kakashi or perhaps Guy. Not a single sight of them anywhere. He reminisced about his time there and casually observed the new scenery, what little remained standing. It was far more developed than what he remembered growing up. Raising his sword, he blocked a kunai headed for his face. Following it was an Uchiha police member with his Sharingan activated, who rushed Naruto with another kunai. Most people would feel a sense of urgency against the legendary Jujutsu, but Naruto had experience fighting one of its greatest users. He blocked the slash aimed at his face and lazily slashed towards the man's neck. As expected, the man leaned back to avoid it. When he did, a Naruto clone effortlessly sliced off his head from behind. He stared down at the wide-eyed head and stabbed both open eyes, well aware of the vultures preying around Konoha. Continuing down the road, he was greeted by 2 more people. Deep in thought, he didn't even realize he had already killed them until he looked up and saw their blood gushing out, spraying and covering the side of his mask. Naruto ignored it and continued on. Turning the corner, he was on Konoha's main road, staring straight down at the large red building. Without warning, a kunai flew towards his face. Stopping it before it impaled his eyehole, he immediately recognized its three-pronged shape as not regular. With seemingly no reaction, he put his hand up, catching the fist of Menma, who had suddenly appeared in front of him. Menma was shocked and quickly jumped back. "Hokage," Naruto said slowly, walking towards him. The look Menma gave him indicated he knew who Naruto was. Please don't do this." Naruto stopped a few yards away. "You've grown," he casually remarked, ignoring Menma's plea. "Hokage now, huh?" Menma tightened his grip on the kunai. He looked across at his masked brother with a pained expression. Why are you doing this?" he yelled, demanding an answer. Naruto didn't react. Instead, he grabbed the throat of a random jonin who jumped from an alley beside him. Menma extended his hand as if telling him not to. Naruto saw Menma's hand cocking back to throw the kunai. Without mercy or patience, he effortlessly snapped the man's neck. "No!" Menma yelled, throwing the kunai forward. A ferocious pink-haired woman stood before her objective, a slight smile gracing her unseen lips. She would make this entertaining on many levels within her given time limit. Rolling her neck with a feminine sigh, she suddenly threw a kunai and rushed in behind it. Sakura knocked it away with her own kunai and leaned back to avoid a sword slash. Immediately, she had to parry the next slash before it took her head off. Caught in a deadlock, she peered into the dark eyeholes of the woman's mask but saw only blackness. Ino released her sword, letting it drop to the bunker's side, and immediately threw a punch at Sakura's face. Before it connected, Sakura knocked it away and tried to slash at her with her kunai. Ino brought her knee up, hitting the inside of Sakura's elbow and blocking her slash. Landing, she caught the counterpunch Sakura threw. Sakura tried to slash again, but Ino used her elbow to block it once more. Before Sakura could counter, the masked assailant delivered 3 quick, sharp strikes to her abdomen. Sakura coughed, unable to avoid the kick that smashed into the side of her face, sending her sprawling against the bunker wall. Ino strolled over, standing over her with a dominant aura, watching her struggle back to her feet. "You're not as strong as they say you are, huh?" she asked mockingly. Sakura regained her footing and threw a few punches, all easily blocked. Ino caught Sakura's last hit and twisted her arm. Before she could break it, Sakura flipped over her and kicked her in the back, sending her into the wall. Before Ino could turn around, Sakura had her pinned. "What do you want?" she demanded, feeling she had the upper hand, pressing her forearm against the back of Ino's neck. Ino merely giggled at Sakura's laughable threat. She pushed off the wall just enough to slip beneath Sakura's hold. She rolled away, delivering a sharp kick to Sakura's knee. Sakura yelped in pain and limped back towards the carriage to protect Sumire. She began healing her injured knee while keeping a sharp eye on the masked woman. Ino watched her silently. "Who are you?" Sakura asked again in desperation. She felt a disturbing familiarity fighting this woman, though she couldn't describe it. The hair gave her a thought she dared not consider. Ino giggled, knowing Sakura already suspected. She raised a hand and covered her mask's mouth. Gently gripping it, she slowly pushed it up, revealing the face Sakura had once prayed to see again, but not like this. "Ino," she yelled in shock. Ino giggled, placing her hands on her hips with a twisted, closed-eyed smile. "Hey," she said cheerily. "What the hell are you doing?" Sakura yelled, unable to comprehend. Ino, as casual as ever, answered, "Well, I'm here to get your child." "Duh." Sakura's eyes narrowed threateningly. "Why?" Ino tilted her head, giving a condescending smile. "Well, because my honey needs her for a special project." She nodded. Sakura's face scrunched in confusion. Ino understood the unasked question and answered before Sakura could speak. "Oh, you don't need to know his name. Just know he's a brilliant man and he's just here to help." Sakura stepped closer to Sumire, raising her fists defensively. "I don't care who it is, you're not taking her." Ino raised an eyebrow. "Oh come on, billboard brow. You know you're no longer a match," she mocked. "Especially not in this conveniently tight space. What are you good for other than destructive punches? Do you really want to risk tearing up this bunker and endangering your own child?" Sakura's head and guard slowly lowered under the mental barrage. She had neglected her training for motherhood. Over a year of no combat had dulled her skills immensely. Now, she couldn't even properly protect her own daughter. Raising her guard with fire in her eyes, she readied herself for a battle to the death, where she was willing to take this. Ino watched Sakura ready herself again. Realizing she couldn't drag this out much longer, she raised her fists too. Before leaving, she had to prove she was far stronger. She had been on the losing end with this woman for too long. Sakura had once had the training, but she squandered it with her lack of focus. Love can make you weak, but also strong. Ino was about to show her the latter. Sakura rushed forward, throwing a wild haymaker at the blonde. Ino ducked the strike and jabbed her twice below her bicep. Sakura ignored the minor hits and swung her other arm. Ino rolled out of the way and rushed her again. Jumping up, she used her left knee to block Sakura's blind right hook and drove her right knee into Sakura's chin. Sakura tumbled to the ground face first. Ino waited for her to get back on her feet. When she did, Sakura rushed the blonde again without hesitation, a palpable fire in her eyes. Flipping back, Naruto avoided the raise-on that obliterated his previous spot. He landed in a crouch on a building side, staring down at Menma, who charged him with rage. Naruto waited for him to reach him before cutting chakra to his feet and falling towards him. Menma skidded to a halt, seeing Naruto shoot past him like a bullet. He leaned back, letting the redhead fly by. Turning, he leapt from the building side, dodging a fireball that destroyed the entire wall. Mid-air, he noticed another incoming. Throwing his kunai through the flames, he teleported to it, narrowly pulling his head back before Naruto's knee caught his chin. In his outstretched position, he couldn't avoid the heel coming down towards his face. It smashed into his face, sending him headfirst into the ground below. Kicking off the ground, Menma spun, only to be met by a soaring Naruto who brutally smashed into his side, kicking him into the shop behind him. Naruto rushed in and grabbed a chunk of debris falling from the wall's top. He threw it at the blonde Kage, who was trying to pull himself from the rubble. Menma dodged and rolled away before Naruto's heel struck his chest. Before Naruto could correct his footing, Menma tackled him into a nearby table. Hitting his back on the edge, Naruto regained balance and flipped Menma over him. Jumping up, he drop-kicked the table back at Menma, who had just landed. The table smashed into Menma, briefly pinning him to the wall. Naruto ran up behind him and kicked both the table and Menma through the wall and back onto the street. Naruto jumped out, avoiding a paper-bombed kunai that shot into the shop. He rolled forward, dodging flying debris. Rolling back to his feet, he quickly hit his back again, before Menma's knee connected with his masked face. He kicked himself up and jumped over the follow-up leg sweep. Menma took advantage of his suspended form and hit him in the side, sending him tumbling towards the ground. Naruto rolled out of his tumble and continued running up the side of the building with Menma chasing him. Before he reached the top, he stuck his hand out, catching the wrist of a sword-wielding shinobi who tried to catch him off guard. He pulled the guy from the rooftop and jumped away. While in the air, he kneed him in the face, causing him to release his grip on his sword. Before they hit the ground, Naruto had already decapitated him and kicked the head at the still-chasing Menma. Menma dodged the disturbing projectile and continued with rage in his eyes. He pulled two of his kunai on the way and threw one at his opponent. Naruto threw his own kunai, stopping it between the two as he rushed forward. Before Menma reached him, he was tripped by a hand popping out of the ground. He rolled until he was on his back. He quickly pushed his feet up, kicking the wrists of Naruto, who was falling towards him with his sword ready for an execution. He brought his leg back and delivered a strike to Naruto's knee, dropping him. He quickly disarmed Naruto and pulled one of his arms down over his shoulder while wrapping his legs around Naruto's neck, putting him in a triangle hold. He pulled as hard as he could, trying to black him out, but Naruto picked him up and slammed him on the ground, cracking the earth beneath him. Menma's grip loosened just enough for Naruto to free himself. When he did, he picked Menma up by his cloak's collar and swung him around until he let go, throwing his limp body into the side of the building behind him. Menma painfully stood up, wiping blood from his mouth. Naruto just stood menacingly, staring at the down form of his younger brother. Menma rose to his feet and rushed again. Naruto waited for him, and when he arrived, delivered a brutal kick to his chest, stopping his charge. Menma staggered back in pain for a second before being kneed in the face, audibly cracking his nose. With no time to recover, he flipped away and landed on the side of a building, clutching his face in pain. Before he could react, another Naruto kicked the wall from within, sending him flying through the air. He focused on landing on the building across the street, but before he could make it, he felt two hands clasp his ankles. Naruto began spinning violently to pick up momentum. At peak speed, he released his grip. Menma seethed, frustrated by his older brother's unwavering demeanor and blatant disrespect. Even now, Naruto, unmoving, waited for Menma's next move. Menma rolled his shoulder, eyes fixed on his masked brother, strategizing. He dropped another kunai, then vanished. Suddenly, blinding yellow flashes erupted around Naruto, but he remained still, unfazed, at the center of the kunai field. With practiced ease, Naruto raised a hand, effortlessly blocking Menma's right hook. Menma disappeared again, the flashes persisting. Naruto ducked, dodging a kick to the back of his head before Menma could continue. With a sigh, Naruto turned, extending his hand to somehow grasp his younger brother's neck as Menma flashed to the kunai beneath his dangling feet. "Ah, Otato," Naruto mocked from behind his mask, casually adding, "it's like you don't even truly understand the jutsu. Maybe the yellow flash himself can enlighten you a bit." He released Menma, letting him drop before flashing away. Menma landed on his rear by the kunai he'd placed, away from the redhead who wasn't looking at him. Following his gaze, Menma saw his father standing a few feet from Naruto. "Tou-san, get back." Minato glanced at Menma for a second before his attention returned to Naruto. Naruto. The redhead remained unfazed, facing two Hokage. Why have you done this? What was your plan? Naruto scoffed. Do I look like a guy with a plan? He asked ominously. Menma rose and stood beside his father. Both stared at the other male in their family with steely resolve. We will not allow you to destroy the village, Menma declared with finality. Destroy the village? Naruto asked casually. Is that what you believe I was doing? Menma and Minato sunk into their stances, ready. Naruto looked up, something in the sky catching his eye. Well, in any case, I'm done here. He turned and began walking away. Menma stepped forward hastily. Wait, after all of this, you think we're gonna let you walk away? He yelled incredulously. Naruto continued walking as if he couldn't hear. Hey, try to impede my gracious retreat, and I promise more damage will befall the village, Naruto called over his shoulder. Risk it if you wish. Menma readied his kunai, but Minato grabbed his elbow. Menma questioned him. Minato sadly shook his head. We can't beat him here, it'll cause too much damage. Menma gritted his teeth, watching Naruto's retreating form. I don't like how easily he's giving up. Go check on Sakura. Menma's eyes widened. He couldn't sense her seal, but before he could voice his concern, Minato calmed him. The bunker blocks the Hiraishin signal, to avoid all detection. Menma nodded and took off. Naruto, now on the back of Deidara's clay bird, didn't bother waiting for or calling out to the others below. They joined as he and Deidara passed low enough for them to jump on. Soon, everyone was aboard except Zabuza, who had Kakashi's rakery pierced through his chest. Naruto spared him only a glance before ordering Deidara to continue. Ha ha, Haiden chuckled, swinging his sickle. That was fucking amazing. I killed so many of those rat fuckers. Kisame chuckled. Ha ha. What's your count? He asked, his and Zabuza's sword slung over his shoulder. Too fucking many. Haiden replied with a grin. Where we going next, oh great leader? He asked excitedly. Naruto stared over the side of the bird, looking through the trees until he spotted Ino. We're going to greet an old friend, he said ominously. Hakura looked at him confused. What, right now? You don't allow rest, do you? Deidara, Haiden, and Kisame chuckled as they continued. Kakuzu seemed indifferent, and Naruto ignored it. They swooped down, scooped up Ino, and shot away from the hidden leaf. By the time they realized the Hokage's daughter was gone, they'd be too far to catch. 3 days later, Menma sat by his wife's hospital bed, staring at her bandaged form, trying to plan their next move. Naruto had attacked the village, tried to kill him, and taken the most important thing in his life. Before, he'd considered talking to Naruto, reasoning with him, but now, only the will to kill remained. He'd never thought he'd want to kill his own brother, but the thought now consumed him. With their most loved family member gone, the entire family, even his mother, had made up their minds. A heaviness in his heart still yearned for another way, but with his daughter at stake, there was no alternative. Despite his self-assurance, Menma knew he couldn't defeat Naruto. Their last battle confirmed it. Perhaps with the Nine Tails, he could have forced Naruto to fight seriously, but fear of losing control had kept him from his strongest technique, which he'd only recently learned was useless against another user. Naruto could have ended him at any moment, a realization that dawned on him only at the battle's end. It was as if Naruto's intention had been to humble him. Ending this conflict, it seemed, was no longer Konoha's sole responsibility. In the past 3 days, Menma had received letters from Kumo, Kiri, and Suna, all describing similar attacks and the abduction of their cage's loved ones. Menma had no idea what Naruto was planning, but it felt like everything was falling into place. Was he planning to incite a war? It had all the makings of one, but that would be too obvious for someone as intelligent as Naruto. Perhaps the simplicity of the objective appealed to him? Possibly, but it was too risky to assume anything. All he knew was that every living shinobi connected to a village, except for IWA as far as he knew, was calling for Naruto's head. A knock broke the silence, and before Menma could answer, 2 people entered. Is it true? Mito asked, her eyes heated and desperate. Suzuki stood behind her, equally alert. Menma sighed, rose, and walked to the window, staring at the destroyed village. He took Sumayer-chan, he said, letting the words hang in the air. Mito clutched her stomach, looking down at the still unconscious Sakura. She couldn't even imagine. Well, what the hell are we gonna do? She asked urgently. Menma spun around. We are not going to do anything, he stated firmly, emphasizing we. Why aren't you out there trying to find her? Why haven't you just teleported to her? She began again, her anger slowly rising. Menma shook his head. Naruto has tampered with her seal, we can't feel the pull, he said in disappointment. We've tried everything. So, what, we just sit around and do nothing? Mito asked, taking a seat beside Sakura and grabbing her cold hand. What if he kills her? Menma's focus was on the white blanket, contemplating her words. He wouldn't do that, he tried to convince himself. Menma, Suzuki said, making his presence known for the first time. Look around you, look at how many people he's killed. Are you still trying to defend that monster? No, I'm just. He couldn't find the words. We'll find her. He finally managed, staring out the window once again, his eyes on the horizon. We will. All three were alerted by urgent footsteps in the hall. The door flung open, and the gate guard burst in. Hokage-sama, we've received another note. Menma walked over to him. Is it IWA? He asked. The man looked down at the note and shook his head. Menma took it, a look of shock, hope, and underlying worry lighting his face. What is it? Suzuki asked, walking towards him. Menma turned, reading the message several times before reading it aloud. Note. Dear Hokage, it is my greatest pleasure to offer you this invitation to an event that may allow you to retrieve a certain prize I have taken from your village. Since it is a prize, you must follow the rules of the game I have set up down to the T. Any ulterior actions will be taken as an immediate forfeit, and your prize is eliminated. The rules of this game are simple. * You must meet me at the location marked on the back of this scroll in 3 days. * Bring with you nothing but yourself, any kage of your village still living, your strongest jonin, and one other individual of your choice, optional. * Arm yourself for a battle. The rest of the instructions will be given in person upon your arrival. I pray you heed my warning and stick to the rules. My patience is far from what it used to be. No late entries will be accepted. Failure to comply with the rules, failure to attend, and failure to cooperate throughout will result in forfeit. Good day, Otauto. Menma clenched the scroll shut and stared at the ground. What was this? Was it some kind of game to Naruto? He snapped his fingers, and an umbu dropped from the shadows, kneeling before him. Bring my father and Kakashi, he commanded with finality. Suzuki looked at him questioningly. I'm going, he stated, as if demanding it. Menma shook his head and walked towards the window. No, I need you here. Menma, he's the strongest jonin. Who's stronger than him? Mito asked, defending Suzuki. Kakashi is, Menma responded quickly. I am sorry, Suzuki, but you are not a match for Naruto. I don't even think I am. Suzuki stepped around Mito and approached the blonde cage. We can take him together, you know we are strongest together. Menma sighed and rubbed his head. Yeah, but you have a personal vendetta that will cloud your judgment. I can't take you, Suzuki. I need you here with Mito. Here with Mito? I'm going too, she yelled angrily, as if his suggestion was an insult. Menma spun around. Are you kidding? Mito, you're pregnant. You're not going anywhere. I don't have to fight him. I could just talk to him. Menma just stared at her. She didn't understand yet. Mito, he's not the same anymore. There will be no talking to him. His eyes held a finality Mito had never seen. He took Sumair. So you really want to kill him? She asked. You don't? That's your niece, he yelled back. You don't understand yet, because you haven't had your child. He's right, a new voice said. Minato walked in, holding Kushina's hand. Mito, I understand how you feel, we all do. Kushina couldn't make eye contact with anyone. Naruto has done the unforgivable. He's attacked our home and taken Sumair. We cannot allow him to do any more damage. Mito looked around, everyone else seemed content with the decision. Then, I'd rather not go anyway, she said, leaning back into Suzuki's chest. I am taking Kakashi and Tioyu-san, Menma said. I don't know what he has planned, but it can't be good. What about the special guest? Suzuki asked, piquing Kushina's interest. Menma shook his head. It says it's optional. I don't think it's Nisi's dash. I'm going, Kushina interrupted, shocking everyone. Menma stared at her, shaking his head as if preparing to refuse. Menma, please. Minato looked at her with remorse. Kushina, you can't save him. That's not why I want to go, she quickly said. Minato, this is our fault. This is all our fault, and we have to be the ones to fix it. Minato didn't reply, refusing to dispute her statement. He agreed with her but didn't want to let her blame herself. Ka-san, Menma said, getting their attention. You wouldn't stand a chance. I'm sorry for saying it, but Naruto is in a class of his own. And by the way she handled Sakura, Ino is far stronger than she was back then as well. I am not weak, Menma, she said in a threatening way. I can handle myself. Menma sighed in frustration and looked at Minato, silently deferring the decision to him. Minato looked at Kushina, noticing a look in her eyes he hadn't seen in a while. He slowly nodded and turned back to Menma. Menma got the message and finally relented. Okay, Ka-san, he said, nodding to her. Just be careful. Kushina nodded in agreement, a fire of determination blazing in her eyes. 2 days later, an unnaturally placed earthen platform jutted out from the raging waters, far from shore. Naruto watched from the front of the boat as 5 smaller platforms extended from the main one, and on the other side, a rectangular platform rose, holding 2 throne-like seats. The creator of the construct, an orange-haired man with strange facial markings, asked, "Will that be all, Leader-sama?" Naruto stepped forward. "Yes, that is fine, Yugo." He jumped from the boat onto the side of the rectangular formation. The other occupants headed up as well, walking to their respective platforms and beginning to write seals on the edges. Naruto and Ino sat casually on the thrones, watching the others work. Ino held Sumire, rocking her to sleep. She looked at Naruto, who was now reading another book. Worries clogged her mind. With 5 cages now pursuing them, she couldn't see Naruto's plan ending in victory, and failure in this case meant death. Was this some kind of suicide mission? It made sense when she thought about it. She knew Naruto wasn't a big fan of life, and he'd admitted he wasn't suicidal. Perhaps, subliminally, this was a plan to make his death more likely. It wasn't an uncommon tactic among people with his level of psychosis. "Hey, babe," she called out to him, turning back to Sumire to seem nonchalant. Naruto looked at her questioningly. "What's the plan?" Naruto just stared at her for a second. "I told you, doll face. It's a surprise." Ino wasn't content with that answer. "It doesn't feel like, whatever this is gonna work, or like we'll even survive." Naruto turned back to the people working on the seals. "Ino, death cannot be a factor when proving a theory such as this." "What theory?" she asked, finally looking at him. Naruto dropped his book and looked into the distance, lost in thought. "Well, it is far from pointless. I'll tell you that much." With that, he buried his nose back in the book. Ino took the hint he was finished discussing the matter. She didn't want to push, fearing he'd think she was questioning his plan. Instead, she returned to playing with Sumire. Naruto reread a line in the book. His new literature was a gift from one of his soldiers, delving deeper into the concept of conflict and the theory of chaos and order. Strangely, the book had no author. By its writing, he might have thought he'd written it himself, based on thoughts he had yet to conjure. The book portrayed a much darker view of what the world considers precious. It was undeniably nihilistic, presenting a classic tale of a benevolent king and rebellious outcasts. Uniquely, it lacked a clear protagonist, blurring the lines of good and evil and leaving the reader to decide who to follow. While the antagonist was obvious, no hero emerged. Naruto realized there was no impartiality in forming connections. Crowds quickly labeled individuals evil when their ideals differed, yet couldn't agree on a hero. This entire situation, he understood, directly mirrored that dynamic. He was the undeniable antagonist, a stain of evil on the world regardless of his motives. He was no hero, not even to his followers, but simply someone willing to tip the scales from peace to chaos, and they craved that imbalance. In truth, he saw them as vultures he refused to empathize with, burdened by their own vendettas and hatreds yet too afraid to strike first. The heroes were the cage, who expertly kept their people praying at their feet, treating them as gods. It sickened him to see a man willingly bow to another, a truly disgraceful sight for many reasons. He couldn't grasp the concept, despite having done the same for most of his youth. The book described it as not a hierarchy of power, but a hierarchy of fearlessness. A man, it explained, bows to one who fears less, or appears to, a man willing to face death without concern. These cage ruled as false kings, ignorant of the true, rotten meaning of such a position. Especially Menma, which deeply irritated him, seeing his own family caught in such a vindictive cycle. He refused to tolerate it. Standing up, he saw the seal users had finished, now chatting in the middle of the battle platform, awaiting his orders. His movement instantly silenced the crowd. Naruto stood at the edge of the long, rectangular platform, observing their work from afar. "Excellent job. You're all free to go." The men nodded and jumped down to the waiting boats below. Naruto descended to the arena platform, personally inspecting the seal and making adjustments. He then moved to each of the 5 other platforms, doing the same. By the time he finished, day was ending. He jumped back to the throne pillar, resuming his place beside Ino, who was sprawled across her throne's armrests, bottle-feeding Sumire. "Everything good?" she asked, kicking off her shoes and resting her feet on Naruto's armrest as he sat. Naruto nodded and sighed. "Yeah, now we wait." Ino looked up and smiled. "Not for long. Our cargo's here." Naruto followed her gaze, seeing Deidara's clay dragon approaching, carrying the bound and gagged forms of their prizes. Naruto stood, directing Deidara where to place them. He had them spaced evenly along the rectangular platform in front of their thrones, each chained to the ground, facing the arena. All except the one too young to walk. They were arranged by village. To Naruto's far left was the Raikage's son, a chain around his neck. Next was the Tsuchikage's childhood friend. The third slot, directly in front of Ino and him, remained empty. The fourth held the Kazekage's nephew in his crib. The final slot contained the Mizukage's fiancée, slumped on her knees, her arms tightly bound behind her back. Naruto moved from slot to slot, performing hand signs. He slammed his hands on the ground behind each, causing their area to briefly light up before he moved on. Once finished, he returned to his seat with Ino, awaiting the confusing plan's outcome, a plan he admitted was a borrowed experiment. And so, they waited. The next day, Menma, Kushina, Minato, and Kakashi navigated the waters to the scroll's coordinates, the silver-haired Jonin steering. Everyone was fully armed and ready for what felt like war. Each wave hitting the boat felt like a distant heartbeat, increasing with the tension. The silence heightened the eeriness. Menma sat by the boat's side, staring into the foggy water. Fear gripped his heart, and his mind raced. What if it was a trap? He felt sure it wasn't, given Naruto's apparent honor despite his actions. Yet, it was a perfect ambush opportunity, which he expected. He tried to clear his head to prevent clouded judgment during battle. Of the 4 on the boat, he was the only one who hadn't experienced war. Everyone else seemed calm or at least composed, understandable given their history with such events. Still, a part of him argued they truly didn't comprehend his brother's threat. He himself hadn't realized Naruto's monstrous strength until their last battle. If his father hadn't intervened, Naruto would have killed him. They hadn't grasped the magnitude of his power. Despite their own accomplishments and confidence, this was something else entirely, something far more overwhelming than he cared to admit. That realization struck him during their fight. Naruto didn't just handle him, he did it with ease. It was the first time in years he felt humbled. Matching his father, a shinobi marked flea on sight in the bingo books, had made him believe he was on par with anyone. This, however, was a completely different level. Finally, his eyes caught sight of rock formations with boats surrounding their base. They seemed to be the last to arrive, strange since the sun hadn't even risen. Staring up, they tried to gauge the height, but the mist obscured their view. They pulled up next to the smaller pillar bearing Konoha's symbol. The 4 nodded to each other and jumped to the platform's side, beginning their ascent. Reaching the top, they were too late to hear the others' protests as a barrier shot up around them. They saw the other cage and their guests bickering. Directly in front, the arena platform remained barren, and further off, the platform holding the prizes. Minato, Kushina, and Kakashi stared at Naruto, who seemed oblivious to their presence, still engrossed in his book. Menma watched the blonde holding his daughter. Hokage, a feminine voice yelled from their far right. Nice of you to finally show up. Menma tore his gaze from his daughter, looking to the platform next to them holding the Tsuchikage who had addressed him. Tsuchikage-sama, he greeted with a nod. Maybe now we'll start this crap, a dry, lazy voice said from her other side. Menma looked past her, nodding to Darui, the Reikage. He then turned and greeted Kazekage Gaara to his right and Kojuro, the Mizukage, on the end. So, any idea what we're in for? He asked them all. No. The piece of shit hasn't said a word since we got here, yelled the Tsuchikage, looking up to the higher platform. As soon as I get out of this, I'm killing him. Then I guess this is just a race to see who can get to him first, the monotonous voice of the Kazekage replied. Menma simply stared up at Naruto, wondering what he planned. He had everyone here, everything seemed set, so what was he waiting for? Hey, he yelled up, thinking Naruto hadn't noticed them. Don't waste your breath. He won't respond, Kojuro informed him. Minato stepped up next to him. Tou-san. I can't feel her pull, he informed him. I know, the blonde man said. Neither can I. He must be disrupting it somehow, even from such a short distance. What do you think about this seal? He asked him, examining its unique green glow. Minato just shook his head. I haven't seen anything like it in a long time, he said, running a finger over it, noting its solid feel. You can't do anything about it, he asked hopefully. Minato seemed hesitant. I don't think I can risk it. Knowing Naruto, it wouldn't be as easy as tampering with its writing, which isn't even visible. We should have planted Kunao on the boat. Menma nodded in agreement. Make sure Kaa-san is holding up okay, he said as Minato nodded and stepped back to Kushina. Kakashi walked up next, looking more tense than Menma had ever seen him. So what's the plan? He asked lowly, not wanting the others to hear. We just wait. Menma shrugged. Seems like we don't have a choice. Kakashi nodded and fell silent. For the next 20 to 30 minutes, the shinobi groups all waited in silence for whatever was to come. Ino played with Sumair, trying to make her laugh. She looked over to Naruto, wondering what he was waiting for. She got her answer when he finally looked away from his book and out to sea. She giggled. Is it so important to wait for the sun? She asked. Naruto shrugged, still looking at his book. Gives them time to plan, he replied with amusement. Ino nodded and returned to playing with Sumair. Naruto continued reading, occasionally peeking at the horizon, waiting for the first glimpse of light. Soon, the prizes began to wake, drawing their respective parties' attention. Naruto watched their interactions with interest, a few minutes of dramatic eye contact and whispered reassurances. When time allowed, the cage also planned ways to take him down. It was laughable watching them form these sudden alliances, proving the saying, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Friendship among those who saw themselves as protagonists was fickle, he knew. It wouldn't last longer than he desired. Looking to the horizon again, he saw a sliver of sunlight. He grinned beneath his mask and snapped his book shut. Everyone turned to him as he stood. He began pacing behind the prizes, ominously drawing attention to their incentives. He hadn't spoken yet, but his movements signaled the beginning. Finally, he stopped at the middle section, originally for his niece, and stared at the cage and their parties. "Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I welcome you. Your being here means you have accepted the rules and regulations of my game. That being said, let's have some fun." "Hey you fucking psycho. You gonna tell us why we're here or not?" yelled the Tsuchikage from her pillar. Naruto stared at her silently. Her group consisted only of herself and her selected jonin, a chubby man Naruto recognized from the bingo book as Akatsuki. Based on information he had, the hot-headed Cage was brash, vulgar, and temperamental, so he ignored her impertinent statement. Ino, however, didn't like her insulting her man. "You bitch. Don't you fucking talk to him like that." Naruto simply raised his hand, cutting off her string of curses. She huffed in protest and went back to playing with Sumire, muttering venomous words. Naruto stepped back slightly, walking towards the second prize slot where Makatsuki was chained. Her watering eyes desperately pierced her friends. "I believe you are here to retrieve your prize," Naruto spoke, drawing the much more subdued Cage's gaze. The Tsuchikage's tear-filled gaze pierced Naruto's eyeholes with a look that promised death. "You're fucking right. And if you laid one finger on her, I swear I'll fucking kill you," she growled, not intimidating him in the slightest. Naruto nodded at the statement and stepped back to the platform center. "I assure you, none of them have been hurt. They are merely incentives for your participation," he said, walking to the cliff's edge and sitting with his feet hanging over. The Cage were visibly aggravated by his casual demeanor, which infuriated them. Tired of the procrastination, the Raikage spoke up. "The letter said we would receive more information upon our arrival," he said, as if Naruto had forgotten. Naruto looked over at him, examining his party. There was a man he assumed was their strongest jonin, Killer Bee. Then, the blonde woman he knew to be the boy's mother. The previous Raikage wasn't present, which Naruto found strange. He hadn't known he had died. "Yes, and you will, Raikage. In time. First, I'd like to explain my reasoning for this venture," he said, receiving an uproar of disgruntled protests. Naruto simply waited for them to quiet down. "No fucking way," yelled the Tsuchikage, taking a useless threatening step forward. "I'm here for Makatsuki. I didn't come to listen to your cracked-out plan." "We don't want to play your games," Chuckles. "I want my son back," yelled a man in a strange black suit with face paint, standing behind the Kaze Cage. He was the only one accompanying him. "As do I," the Raikage said smoothly. "We would much rather begin whatever trial you have set up," he said, looking up at his son, who was trying to reassure his mother. Naruto listened to their complaints impassively. He turned his head right, staring at the blue-haired Cage looking at his wife. His group consisted of another blue-haired man with an eye patch and a bald man with two broadswords on his back. "What of you, Mizu Cage? Do you have any complaints?" he asked for no apparent reason. The Mizu Cage gazed at him with contempt, gritting his teeth. "Let's just get this over with," he growled. Naruto turned back to the middle, staring across at the one group that remained silent, the largest group of all, with 3 Cage-level shinobi and his mother. He didn't address them directly but spoke towards them. "Maybe my instructions weren't as complete as I had thought." He pulled 4 kunao from nowhere, expertly tossing them into the air. Each landed next to a prize, a paper bomb attached to its loop. The Cage remained silent, now more fearful of what he might say. "You do as I say, when I say, and you get your prize. You don't, and your prize is eliminated. Simple as that." He let that statement hang in the air for a few seconds, observing their reactions. As expected, they stared at him with murderous intent. Naruto remained completely unfazed, meeting their gazes effortlessly. "Now, to begin," he said, returning to a casual demeanor. "I do not like you." They all exchanged glances, finding this obvious. "I don't like you. I don't like what you represent, and I despise the people who follow you, even though they do so through no fault of their own," he said. "You have a blatant hatred for the shinobi villages," the Kaze Cage said, summarizing his point. Naruto shrugged. "In a way, my hatred, as you called it, extends to a much broader spectrum," he said. "Hypocrisy is something I despise, and you people have it in spades." "So, what? You hate that we're hypocrites?" the Tsuchikage asked incredulously. "That's why you're doing this?" Naruto shook his head. No. That is but a minor reason for today's test," he quipped, rubbing his shoulder for some reason. "Before we begin, you all must understand what it is that I propose and why I am proposing it," he said. "So this is some kind of game to you?" asked the Mizu Cage threateningly. Naruto tilted his head toward him. "Well, of course it is. Which is why you lot have prizes," he said as if it were obvious. "Now, to further your understanding, I must explain the role you play in society. It is an awful thing you do, you just don't realize it." "What are you talking about?" asked Menma, speaking up for the first time. Naruto stared at him. Patience, Hokage. We've got all day, he said ominously. You all are the respective keepers of order within your own villages, the pinnacle of apparent success that every wide-eyed child strives to achieve. Yet, what you're doing is far from righteous. Okay, hold on, said the Tsuchikage with an arrogant smirk. I already figured it out. Naruto simply stared at her, awaiting her ridiculous words. And ridiculous they were. You were one of these wide-eyed children pining for the cage position. When you didn't get it, you were thrust into a life of hatred and self-loathing that made you hate the position and the village system altogether. Now, you concocted this psychotic fucking plan to show everyone who wronged you how stupid they were for not giving you the position. She finished, crossing her arms with a smug, certain look. The entire area fell silent, everyone pondering the possibility that she was correct. A sudden, untamed burst of chuckles caught them off guard as Ino bellowed with sincere laughter at the ridiculous statement. They couldn't see it, but they could feel the smirk on the masked man's face and noticed his shoulders bouncing slightly, indicating silent chuckling. The blonde, with tears from overwhelming giggles, caught everyone's attention. Ha ha ha, you dumb bitch. Ha ha, she yelled through her fit of laughter. For no clear reason, the Tsuchikage began to feel a little embarrassed by their blatant disrespect for her insight. It was a sound assumption, given his statements. Shut up. You. She couldn't even find words to insult the blonde woman, who was completely ignoring her in favor of gut-wrenching laughter. Naruto finally seemed to calm down and raised his hand for Ino to do the same. Slowly but surely, her incessant laughter died out. Interesting theory. Not correct, but interesting, he said with a hint of amusement. No, Tsuchikage. In honesty, I have never truly cared for the position of a cage until my recent despise, he admitted. What sparked it? Asked Minato, speaking up for the first time. Naruto stared at him for a moment. Literature. Believe it or not, he said, pulling a book from his pouch. Everyone was surprised by that answer. You mean, a book told you to do all of this? Kakashi asked the question on everyone's mind. Naruto just shrugged. Not necessarily. This particular book simply unchained me and allowed me to leave my cave, he said cryptically. Ugh, figures he'd hole up like a hermit, the Tsuchikage muttered under her breath. Naruto paid her no mind, pressing on. Figuratively speaking, of course, he clarified. I believe you need to hear this story to grasp its relevance to you. There was once a man, chained deep within a cave, facing away from the entrance. Born in captivity, he knew only the shifting shadows cast by passers-by. His sole companion was the shadow of a man who would visit daily, spinning tales of dangers he was protecting him from. This shadow figure convinced him that the shadows he saw were monstrous beasts, and that the cave was his sanctuary. I fail to see the connection, the Mizukage interjected, voicing everyone's thoughts. This sounds like mere fiction. Naruto continued, the Shadow Man successfully deluded the prisoner into believing he was doing good. Years later, even after his chains were removed, he remained rooted, terrified to venture beyond his perceived safety, oblivious that the creatures were just ordinary people. You cage, are those shadows to your villages. You blind your people with your words. It's even reflected in your very titles. The Mizukage retorted, you're mistaken. If what you say is true, what are we protecting them from? Monsters like you. Naruto smirked beneath his mask. Oh, I'm no monster. I'm simply ahead of the curve. He winked, head cocked in amusement. Chaos, Mizukage. You lot are protecting them from the joy and serenity of chaos, he stated, letting the words hang in the air. You enforce order because your predecessors ingrained the belief that chaos is inherently bad. It's quite paradoxical, as you are both prisoners and oppressors in this theory. It is bad, Minato countered, speaking up again. Since you enjoy explaining things, allow me to enlighten you. Naruto nodded, gesturing for him to proceed. If you speak of chaos in terms of war, then you truly have no idea what you're talking about. War is a period where one is forced to do anything for the sake of their home. It is bad. Naruto remained silent for a few moments, observing the blonde man, assessing his resolve. War, he began, is merely the manifestation of a struggle for order. It's a man-made catastrophe, and it would be foolish to blame anything but ourselves. This infuriated the older attendees who had seen conflict before. Is it really so bad? To unleash our true selves and become the killers we were meant to be, he said, mocking their disdain for the subject. We were not made to be killers, the Kaze Cage stated, clearly annoyed. No one is made to be a killer. Naruto sighed. Humph, wrong again, he said, rolling his neck as if their conversation was utterly draining. We were all meant to be killers, and I don't just mean shinobi, I mean the entire human race. That's why we were given the capacity to kill. Think of it this way, a kunai was made for killing, and it excels at it. He nodded vigorously, as if to emphasize his conviction. It wasn't made to be toilet paper, so it can't function as such. Human beings were created to kill, it's how we survive in this world. It's why we were given such intelligence to refine our tactics, it's why war was invented. We were all made to kill, but modern society tells us it's wrong, so from a young age, we're taught that taking a life is bad. This lesson is drilled into us so intensely that when we're forced to do it, the act itself is sickening. Then, you do it again, and the guilt remains. A few more times, and it becomes routine, until finally, you become who you were meant to be, and you're shamed for it. That sounds like the making of a goddamn psycho to me, that Sachikage interjected. Naruto merely shrugged. If that's your perception. But by that logic, every shinobi who has ever taken an enemy's life without remorse is as psychotic as you claim. In our world, there is no innocent power. Our strength is predicated on our ability to take a life, yet you all have the audacity to stand here and assert we weren't created for such a thing. If you weren't all so eccentric, I'd think you were insane. He winked, hand cupped to his mouth as if sharing a secret. The Sachikage's lone guest, who had been silent until now, finally lost his temper. Shut your mouth. You don't know what it's like, he roared in anger. As an older man, it was safe to assume he had lived through the previous war. Naruto looked at him. Oh, I know what it's like. Believe me, I understand, he said. No, you don't, Minato quipped with a knowing tone. Naruto looked back at him. No, I know for a fact that you don't, he said, raising his voice slightly to drive his point home. Naruto grinned beneath his mask. Is war not merely a struggle between two sides to gain the upper hand, employing every underhanded tactic imaginable? Minato remained silent. That was a fairly accurate description. War is far more than just bloodshed and loss. If that's all you presume it to be, then I assure you, I've experienced that too, in a far more grotesque manner than even you. Minato shook his head. You truly don't understand. Naruto chuckled. Well then, Yandame, what is war to you? Minato froze, noticing the stares from the other older village members. Everyone there knew of the terror he had been during the last war, but witnessing it firsthand was an entirely different matter. War is complete and utter hell, in every sense of the word. To function in a world of such true chaos, you have to kill off pieces of yourself that make you human. Before he could continue, he heard a scoff from the one he was speaking to. Naruto noticed Minato's hesitation. My apologies, he said bashfully. I just found it outrageous that you actually view war as true chaos. What was he saying? Most people would consider it the truest meaning of the word, Minato disputed. Everyone watched the blonde woman rise from her seat, placing the child she held into a carrier and setting it down on the platform behind Naruto. Naruto merely shrugged. Then most people would be wrong, he replied. War is ordered chaos. Methodical factions of soldiers clashing to prove themselves. It's far more barbaric, he said as Ino plopped down beside him. You see, true chaos is actually irrelevant to me, non-existent, in a sense. At this statement, everyone looked at him strangely. He had seemingly advocated for chaos this entire time, and now he was saying it didn't even exist? Paradoxical, I know, he said, settling their busy minds. Chaos is described as something incomprehensible, complete disorder and confusion. The problem is, when this comes to mind, you all associate a single image with the word, he said, toying with the kunao in his hands. You picture a lawless world with people running rampant, killing everyone for their own motives or for no reason at all. Yeah, is that what you're trying to turn the world into? Asked that Sachikage. Couldn't hurt, he replied. The reason I don't believe chaos exists is because, to me, there is no confusion. You all would view such a world as some hellish struggle of life and death, but there's much more to it than that. Every word he spoke was punctuated by the rising wind and the brewing storm. While you see disorder, I see freedom. As you see illicit behavior, I see equality. Looking at the world differently doesn't make it a better place if it comes to what you're describing, the Kazekage argued with his ever-present monotonous voice. You're just blinding yourself to the horror of the crimes being committed. Naruto quipped, snapping his fingers and pointing in the Kazekage's direction. There goes that famed hypocrisy, he replied with amusement. You say this, Kazekage, but you impose the same fate on your people without their consent. In the world I speak of, they would be free to choose which side they wish to view. What about the people who would view it the way you claim we would? The Mizukage asked. The people who would see it as a hell and search for a better life. Naruto continued to play with his kunao. Astute point, Mizukage. But there's something unique about chaos that sets it apart from its colleague, he said. They share many qualities and possess radical differences, but one thing that stands out to me the most is that chaos is fair. He winked. And you believe order is not? The Raikage asked from his spot. Naruto looked over at him. Well, of course not. You yourself are a testament to that, Raikage, he said, eliciting a strange look from him. In fact, most of you are, he clarified. You all harbor this false belief that with a little hard work, anyone with strong enough will could climb the ranks and reach a position like yours, yet you neglect to see that your lives have all led you to your positions. You all held some sort of connection to your previous cage, whether it be student, child, grandchild, or simply a blatant favorite, as in your case, Mizukage. My position was earned fairly, the Raikage stated, receiving shouts of agreement from the other four. Naruto nodded. Oh, I'm sure, he said. I'm sure every other child your age had the privilege of training under the Sandaime Raikage, or the Sandaime Tsuchikage, or the Yondaime Hokage. The point is, regardless of what you may believe, your position was achieved with the advantage of tutelage under a powerful shinobi. Most of the other children in your villages were probably pawned off on some ordinary jonin who was barely capable of teaching them the basics, at best. There have been shinobi in the past who achieved power without anyone's tutelage. You'd know about that, right? Minato asked, implying Naruto was one of these people. Actually, I wouldn't, Naruto replied. If you're implying that I am self-made, then you are mistaken. Just because no one held my hand and walked me through the steps doesn't mean they didn't teach me. Okay, hold on, that Tsuchikage said. What the hell is it with you two, she asked, looking at Minato. You've been sitting here talking to him like you know him or something. Who the hell is he? He's from Konoha, isn't he? She yelled. Minato ignored her. If that's what this is about, please, you don't have to do all of this, just take your revenge and be done with it. Naruto just stared at him. You give yourself too much credit, Yondaime, he said, standing up and throwing the kunai over his shoulder. It landed right next to Sumire's carrier, a paper bomb attached to the ring. I hold no anger towards you specifically, or your wife. My goal is much more interesting than petty revenge. It's not that kind of story. We gonna start, hop, Ino quipped, hopping to her feet as well. She looped Naruto's arm and followed him as they walked back to their thrones. Yes, we are. When they sat down, Naruto surveyed the group of shinobi. Okay, let's see. Why don't you pick, doll face? Ino sat up happily. Oh, okay. Ipa Iwa. Aon Suna, she said happily. Naruto nodded, appraising her selection. Very well, he said. He went through hand signs and, in a flash that Menma and Minato knew all too well, the Kazekage and Iwa's lone jonin appeared in the arena. The Tsuchikage ran forward and put her hands on the barrier. Hey, what the hell are you doing? He's no match for a cage, she yelled. Akatsuki. The Kazekage was looking at the man in question. It was a very hefty-looking man with a big nose. He then turned and looked up to the masked man. What is the purpose of this? Naruto shrugged. I just want to see what happens, he replied portentously. Don't wait on me. Start whenever you wish. Nobody moved a muscle. I have no quarrel with this man, the Kazekage said with his arms crossed. He refused to fight a man who had done him no harm. Of course you do, Naruto said. This man here is keeping you from retrieving your prize, he said, pointing over to the Kazekige's nephew. Everyone grew alarmed seeing that the explosive tag was burning. Wait, the Kazekage yelled, raising his hand up to him. Wait, I'll fight, he yelled, trying to get the man to stop the burning of the seal. Naruto shrugged. Oh, I'm sure you will, he said casually. That seal is a slow-burning tag, it will blow in 2 minutes unless I stop it. Sadly to say, as long as this man is still breathing, I will not do so. Everyone grew horrified at the implication. The Kazekige's eyes were burning with rage. He was trying to weigh what would be the right thing to do. From the deathly stare he was getting from the Tsuchikage, he just knew there would be hell to pay for this. Gaara, yelled Kankuro. Gaara, please. He looked across at the man who now held a shaky kunai in his hand. He looked back up to Kankuro and then over to the worried look on the Tsuchikage's face. Wow, a minute wasted, Naruto said, staring at the half-burned tag. Gaara looked back over to his begrudging opponent, and the sand from his gourd burst out of the top. I'm so sorry, he whispered lowly, sending wave after wave towards the man who did his best to dodge the flood of sand. Losing his footing, he fell to his back and was engulfed completely. Gaara tried hard to kill the man, but for some reason he couldn't crush him. Suddenly, a hand of stone burst from the sand. 30 seconds, Kazekage, Naruto said. Gaara grit his teeth and shut his eyes. Suddenly, his sand took on a much more demonic look with cracks covering its surface. His right eye turned black with a golden iris. With the help of the Shikaku, he was finally able to crush the man with ease. No, yelled the Tsuchikage, beating the barrier with all she had. Fuck, she bellowed out as she dropped to the ground. Gaara felt remorse for his action, but relief seeing that the tag stopped its burning. A flash of light blinded him, and he was back next to Kankuro. Everyone remained silent, staring at the mutilated body of the Iwa shinobi. Naruto eyed the Tsuchikage, whose eyes were on the ground beneath her. He was waiting for the outburst, and sure enough, he received it. She hit the barrier with all the strength she could muster. Let me out of here. I'll fucking kill you, she yelled. I swear on everything. I will fucking kill you, she yelled. Whether the threat was for Naruto or the Kazekage, no one knew. Naruto was not fazed by her worthless threats, he simply shrugged it off. A hand popped out of the ground within the arena and dragged Akatsuki's body down. Well, revenge seems to be on your mind, he said, going through hand signs. The Tsuchikage appeared in the arena, staring over at her opponent. "Shit," Kankuro whispered softly to himself. "No," the Kazekage yelled, seeing the danger. "Wait," Naruto just stared out, wondering what the Tsuchikage would do. Her hate-filled eyes pierced into the Kazekage's worried gaze. "When can I start?" she asked suddenly. Naruto shrugged. "This one's on you. If you don't want to do it, you may return to your barrier," he informed her. Kankuro released the breath he didn't know he was holding. His heart skipped a beat when a rock spear popped out of the ground and nearly punctured his chest. He jumped back just in time to avoid it. "Hey, what the hell?" he yelled out to her, pulling his favorite puppet from his back. The Tsuchikage went through hand signs and spit out some kind of strange lime concoction that covered Kankuro's prized puppet. The slime also covered his feet, holding him in place. "Hey, wait," he yelled out, throwing his hands up. "Tsuchikage, please," the Kazekage yelled out, begging for his brother's life. "He has a family, please don't." The Tsuchikage stared at Kankuro's trembling body intently. Slowly, a rock spike rose from the ground next to her, and she snapped it off. So did Akatsuki. With no mercy, she threw the spike forward, impaling the helpless man. It tore through his head with ease, splitting his skull in two. Silence rang through the area, with everyone's eyes on either the dead body or the ghastly look on the Kazekage's face. "Let me out," the Kazekage said lowly, trying to draw on the powers of Shikaku. Naruto just stared at him. He knew at this point there was a blatant hatred resting between the two. It was an inevitability. "I said, let me out," he repeated with a disgusted look on his face. "In time, Kazekage," he said, looking back to the Tsuchikage. "The Tsuchikage hasn't truly played yet," he said, going through hand signs. In a flash of light, Kakashi appeared in the arena. Hey. No," Menma yelled out until Minato put his hand on his shoulder. "Menma, he'll be fine," he said. Naruto stared at Kakashi, knowing full well what was to happen. "Now," he said, looking towards the Tsuchikage, "your revenge is out of the way. You fight for the survival of your prize." A muffled cry of desperation left the gagged mouth of Makatsuki, seeing her tag lit aflame. "Your time begins, Kuratsuki," he said, using her real name. Without hesitation, she chunked spikes of rocks at the Sharingan wielder. Kakashi jumped to the side, kicking off the barrier to avoid the next barrage. When he landed, he leaned back, avoiding the next strike. Quickly, he jumped up, dodging the slime she used against Kankuro. Figuring the only way to survive was to fight back, he rushed her with a kunai in hand. Kuratsuki pulled one of her own and clashed with him. She began slashing at him like a woman possessed, and Kakashi was able to avoid all of them thanks to his Sharingan. Feeling desperate, she yelled out in anger. "Ard!" Kakashi got her off balance and kicked her away. He slipped in between the two spikes she shot out at him. Immediately, he had to dodge another that shot out of the ground. Going through hand signs, he slammed his hands on the ground, and a wall of mud shot up in front of him, blocking the slime. He jumped away before the spike that jutted from the wall pierced his neck. Losing his footing, he rolled back and scrambled away from the airborne cage coming down on him with another spike in her hand. To the horror of the Konoha individuals, she drove it straight through his chest. Naruto chuckled, seeing the clone burst into a cloud of smoke and the real Kakashi pop out of the ground, delivering a roundhouse kick to the Tsuchikage's face, sending her into the side of the barrier. "1 minute," Naruto informed the frustrated woman. She growled again and went through hand signs, puffing her chest full. She spit out big balls of lava that Kakashi had difficulty dodging. Jumping up, he was caught vulnerable in midair. She spit a ball of lava at his unprotected form. Thinking quickly, Kakashi packed his left eye with chakra and opened it, displaying his Mangekyo Sharingan. The ball of liquid flames was sucked into a portal in thin air. When he hit the ground, he covered his eye and nearly fell over from the backlash of using that technique. Quickly he had to roll forward to avoid the spikes shooting out of the ground. He was cut alongside the back of his calf in his escape, inciting a yelp of pain. 10 seconds, Naruto said, upping the adrenaline factor once more. The Tsuchikage's panicked look stared up into the eyes of her best friend in desperation. Like a child begging for something, she squealed out a hollow "please" that was either directed at Naruto or Kakashi. She threw everything she had at the silver-haired man who dodged each attack as best he could. He was just too hard to hit within the confines of 2 minutes. 5, 4, 3, 2. An explosion rocked the area as the kunai next to Makatsuki shot off. A barrier shot up around her space, protecting the others on the ridge, but they all felt the violent tremor. None more so than Kuratsuki, who froze in horror and stared at the smoked-out barrier that slowly cleared. A prize lost, a rage unleashed. "Your prize has been eliminated. You've lost. You're free to go," he stated, preparing to return her to the platform. She shook her head, halting him. Tears still streamed down her face as she glared at Kakashi with pure hatred. "Hey, no, wait!" Menma yelled, echoed by Minato and Kushina, realizing she intended to kill him. Kakashi scrambled back, his leg further injured from her previous attacks. he gritted his teeth, seeing her charge. He was helpless, having poured too much chakra into his mangekyo. Naruto watched with interest. In her furious sprint toward the man who refused to die for her friend, she pulled a spike from the ground. All she saw was red. In an hour, she'd lost 2 of her closest people. Driven to the edge, she needed to kill someone. She had to. An unexpected interruption. Bringing her hand down on the silver-haired jonin with a war cry, she was surprised when an unexpected masked man, responsible for all this, caught her wrist. He was here. Looking back, his throne was empty. This was the real one. I can't let you kill a participant. You failed your task. You have 2 options, leave or die. Her teeth ached from clenching. Seeing her chance, she drew a kunao and swiped at him, effectively choosing death. Naruto struck her throat before her arm reached him, then mercilessly kicked her back, impaling her on a spike she'd made herself. Kurotsuka gasped at the rock protruding from her chest, a shaking hand clutching it, feeling her body slowly descend, each second agonizing. Naruto approached, grabbing her hair. You've done well, Tsuchikage. Your people would be proud. He added, well, what's left of them? With that, he mercilessly snapped her neck. The truth revealed. Now, the others finally grasped what they faced. This man had effortlessly defeated a cage. Some dismissed it as her being too emotionally distraught, but Menma knew. He knew more than ever. Kakashi did too, but Minato's thoughts remained a mystery. I apologize for this minor hiccup, Naruto said, turning to Kakashi and forming hand signs. Kakashi reappeared within the barrier with the others. It was expected, as human emotions are delicate. He performed more hand signs, and the barrier's interior returned to normal, as if no battle had occurred. Now that this hiccup is out of the way, let's continue, he said, flashing back to his throne. Hokage, Darui called out, eyeing Naruto suspiciously. There's no denying it. You know this man. Menma looked worried, it was inevitable. He refused to speak. Thankfully, or unluckily, he didn't have to. I know who this is, a new voice stated. One of the Mizukage's group, an older man with blue hair and an eye patch, stepped forward. Years ago, during Konoha's rise in popularity due to Itachi Uchiha's fame, another name emerged. The Second Flash. His statement hung in the air, everyone's gaze shifting between the 2 Hokage and their masked oppressor. Is that you? Naruto chuckled beneath his mask. Heh, I'm flattered. I didn't think that little title stuck enough for people to remember it, he said with a shrug. He's from Konoha. The Kaze Cage said, drawing everyone's attention to Menma, who stared at the furious redhead. He's your shinobi, and he caused all of this. His hands clenched tightly at his sides. Menma had to speak. Kaze Cage. I'm sorry. Who is he? He asked softly, unable to lift his gaze. Menma froze, unable to utter it. Who is he? He repeated, finally staring into the blonde's eyes. Menma didn't shy away, just shook his head. With a chuckle, Naruto instigated. Heh, oh come on Otauto. Don't be ashamed of me now, he said, shocking the group. Everyone stared at the Konoha group. This was their family member? What? You didn't think just anyone could learn the Yandame's most prized possession, did you? He asked rhetorically. A mother's plea. Finally, the silent redhead stepped forward. Naruto, she called softly, tears welling. Her heart had been broken too many times by the man before her, mostly self-inflicted, but this was on a new scale. This monster couldn't be her son. Naruto, what is this for? Ah, Ka-san, Naruto said, somewhat softer. Being an Uzumaki certainly has its benefits, huh? He asked, completely ignoring her question. You haven't aged a day. Even now he was. Naruto, please stop this. He stared at her for a few seconds before standing, turning to look out at the sea. The day was beautiful to him, cloudy with slivers of sunlight, streams of light on the water. A faint clap of thunder and brief lightning flashes. It's a beautiful day, isn't it Ka-san, he said, momentarily disregarding the others. It seems my hair color isn't the only thing I inexplicably acquired over the years that I share with you, he chuckled, running his hand through his blood-red hair. Kushina was speechless. Everyone else was also at a loss. He seemed civil with her, unlike his cryptic badgering of others. He seemed, in a way, much gentler. I guess that goes to show I was right, he said, strolling back to his seat, taking Ino's hand. Tou-san and I are more alike than I imagined. Just as he put his books down for you, I put mine down too, he said, looking at Ino. Well, sort of. Ino slid her mask off. Aw, babe, she cooed, slithering over her throne into his lap. Naruto chuckled. What a pair of beautiful young ladies we have, Tou-san, he said as Ino snuggled into his neck. Menma too. I guess we just have a thing for powerful women, he chuckled again. Please, Naru-kun, Kushina pleaded, shaking her head. She couldn't understand any of it. He was mentally assaulting her with compliments? After everything, he still had the nerve to speak to them as if everything were normal. "Please stop this," she said again, desperation in her tone. "A world's end." Naruto stopped altogether, staring at her in wonder. Then, as if a switch flipped, he reverted to normal. "I can't do that, Kaa-san. You know I'll die if I do," he said casually. "I'll die if I don't as well, but since I've begun, I may as well make it mean something." Her pleading face remained confused. Why are you doing this? Please, just tell me why," she begged. Naruto sighed, looking up at the sky and thought, weighing his options. "Kaa-san, I'm doing this because I want all this to end. I want someone to create a world better than this," he explained. "For that to happen, it has to destroy itself." Kushina and everyone else were confused. Before she could speak, the Raikage interjected. "If it destroys itself, there will be nothing left for creation." Naruto shook his head. "No, Raikage, you're wrong," he said, tilting his head. Ino shamelessly kissed his neck, as if tallying hickeys. "You see, creation and destruction go hand in hand. Think about how a man cuts down a tree to build a home, or men cut down a forest to build a village. It's a cycle of destroy to create again. Erase a man's mind, and he's a new person. Erase the world, and it has a second chance at life. Regardless of what you believe, this world is doomed to fail." "The world isn't doomed," the Mizukage said, with an edge to his tone. "For sick people like you, it's doomed because it doesn't allow you to control it. For sick people, like me," he said slowly, examining the words. Ironic how wrong you are," he said carelessly. "I mean, if you think about it, there's more wrong with a man who resigns to being like everybody else. It's truly disturbing how each of you are currently fighting for the right to walk around like dead fish floating down a stream rather than being an individual. Synchronization and normality have become the new social norm, but if you went back years ago during the clan wars, they would have laughed at such a thing," he said. "That's the real issue. I mean, you laugh at me, because I'm different, but I laugh at you because you're all the same, wink. Your theories are derived from a psychotic mind and they'll only make sense to you and that dumb bitch on your neck," the Raikage's wife, who hadn't said much, interjected smoothly. Ino's head snapped up, staring at Naruto, who threw his hands up in an I don't know pose. Ino quietly got off his lap and walked to the edge. It looked like she would step off, but as she took that last step, there was a flash, and she appeared in the arena. Simultaneously, Samui appeared too, much more alert, seeing the intense look in the blonde's eyes before he slipped his mask back on. "Well," Naruto said, "this should be interesting. A brutal exhibition." Rushing forward, two swords held in reverse grip, Ino jumped over the short-haired blonde woman who swung her own blade. Landing in a crouch, she jumped back, avoiding the next slash. Kicking off the wall, she rocketed towards her, swiping her sword aside and delivering a kick to her chest, sending her rolling back. She waited a few seconds, letting her get up. How dare she disrespect her in front of her love? She would pay in the worst way imaginable. They had been at it for a few good minutes, and she had to admit, the woman was strong. Samui finally struggled back to her feet, staring across at this psychotic blonde. Her movements were completely unpredictable. Whatever her Kenjutsu style, she'd never seen anything like it. It was incredibly flexible and unnaturally quick. "Okay ladies," Naruto said, drawing everyone's attention. "This little bout is taking longer than expected. You're the boy's mother, so what the hell?" He shrugged. "Fight for your son. Actually, let's switch things up. You stay alive, and so does your son." "Doll," he said, getting Ino's attention. "Try and kill her." Samui quickly glanced over, seeing her subdued child's tag alight, and wasted no time rushing back into the fight. The Raikage placed his hand on his blade's hilt, ready to force through the barrier. B put a hand on his shoulder and shook his head, unusually serious. "No, bro. Let Samui handle it, yo," he said, eyeing the masked man. The Raikage silently gritted his teeth but released his sword. Swinging her blade with unrivaled intensity, Samui went for the kill. The best way to avoid being killed was to put her opponent on the defensive. She refused to lose to this blonde bimbo. Ino kicked her wrist away before her sword was in range. Attacking with both blades, Samui went on the defensive, backing away. Ino continued her volley of slashes, not letting up. Feeling her time running thin, Samui planted her feet and kicked the blonde away. As Ino stumbled back, Samui drove her sword into the ground and formed hand signs. Pointing her fingers, the tips lit up with a bright white light and shot towards the now recovered blonde. Ino jumped away from the white bullets that tore through the ground with ease. She had to keep moving as the blasts continued, coming closer and closer. Thinking quickly, Ino drew an explosive kunai and threw it towards the next bullet. Samui paused for a second, her vision clouded by smoke. Then, as Ino jumped away from the smog, she continued firing. With an accurate shot aimed straight at the masked girl's chest, Samui was kicked into the barrier by the real one. Quickly getting to her feet, she rushed her again. Throwing a punch, she was infuriated by the woman's unnatural flexibility as she swiveled out of the way of each attack. 1 minute, Naruto called out. Sumui furrowed her brow and continued, doing her best to dodge the blonde's unorthodox attacks. Eventually, their blades were back in their hands, dancing in a shower of sparks and slashes. Sumui was getting demolished as Ino parried all her attacks with one blade and delivered small, seemingly insignificant slashes with the other. Slowly, however, she noticed her body refusing to obey. Ino was simultaneously using her blade hilts to hit pressure points. Creating an opening, Ino made a deep cut on the back of Samui's calf, dropping her. She realized the masked girl's tactic too late, her body wouldn't move. The Reikijin watched in shock as Ino raised her sword for the finishing blow. Just as he put his hand on his blade's hilt, Naruto called out, "Time." Ino's blade lingered at the woman's neck. "Babe," she whined, as if begging him to let her kill her. Sumui was helpless, her arms and legs riddled with tiny cuts and bruises that seemed insignificant but were far more effective than anyone thought. She couldn't even lift her fingers. She was completely humiliated with a blade pointing at her neck. Now, Ino," Naruto replied gently. "You had 2 minutes just like everyone else." He nodded towards her. Ino huffed and flicked the small amounts of blood off her blades. In a flash of light, she was back on her throne, arms and legs crossed, clearly unhappy. Sumui breathed a sigh of relief, looking up at her crying son. Darui and B also calmed, seeing everything would be fine. "Hey, are you going to send her back?" "She's injured," the Reikage said, disliking her continued presence there. Naruto looked at her immobile form and then around at everyone. Ino could tell he was having an idea. When he stared at the Mizuki's party, something clicked. He looked at their prize, his wife. Then he looked back at Sumui, who was physically immobile. "Did you hear me?" "She's hurt," the Reikage repeated, noticing how the man ignored him, looking around at everyone. Ino tried to follow Naruto's head movements. "Whatcha thinking, babe?" she asked. A horrifying choice. Naruto stood and began casually pacing behind the prizes. The direction of his mask never revealed where he was looking or what sick action he planned next. "Actually, I think this is a perfect opportunity to prove a point," he said, strolling towards the platform's right side. He stopped directly behind the last person in the prize slot, a woman with short brown hair, hunched on her knees, trying to avoid detection. Naruto stared at the Mizukage from this distance. The blue-haired man didn't shy away, partly because he couldn't see his gaze. A sickening feeling arose in his stomach, figuring it was their turn. All he had to do was follow the man's rules. If he had to kill someone, he would do so without hesitation. He had to. "Mizukage, your fiancé here, Ms. Ayakaroyo?" he asked rhetorically, already knowing the answer. The Mizukage glared dangerously. "She has never been a shinobi, correct?" he asked. Again, he received no reply, as expected. "Well, she hasn't," he said, cutting the rope tying her hands and ripping the chain from her neck. He grabbed her arm, pulling her to a standing position, ignoring her muffled pleas for her life. "Hey," the cage yelled, stepping to the barrier's side, leaning forward for a better view. "Don't hurt her," he yelled frantically. Naruto ignored him and walked forward a bit. Ignoring him for the time being, he spoke to the remaining members, namely Gaara. "Now, you claim we aren't all monsters. I say, we are." He grabbed her throat and held her over the cliff side, to the horror of the Kiri group and his family. Her hands wrapped around his wrist, her bulging brown eyes pleading desperately into his eye holes. "Naruto!" "Wait, no," yelled Minato, hands out as if telling him to calm down. Naruto ignored all the outraged cries of protest and continued. His mask now looked at the woman in his hand. He spoke as if talking to her. "When your way of life or your life itself is threatened, you will do absolutely anything to maintain it," he said, holding the kicking woman with absolute ease. "It's the law of human nature. If it's an action with an immediately positive outcome, even if there's another way, we'll take it if that other way isn't a sure thing. Please." The Mizukage yelled, hitting the barrier with his giant sword. "I'll do whatever you want," he said, his eyes darting to the middle platform where Sumui still lay. "You want me to kill her? I'll do it. Just, please." That proclamation garnered a daring look from the Reikage's party, but he didn't spare them a glance. Naruto looked over at the blue-haired man, eyeing him lazily. "Tempting," he said. "But, no." Just like that, he unclenched his hand, and Aya fell. Outrageous gasps and a hell-curling scream from the Mizukage filled the air. He packed his sword with chakra and hit it as hard as he could with a war cry. Before he hit it again, his attention was drawn to the middle barrier where Aya landed unceremoniously in a flash of light, her eyes nearly popping out of her head and tears returning full force. She landed on her back and ungracefully rolled over to her knees. In another flash of light, a kunao appeared directly in front of her. "I want her to do it," Naruto finished, looking down at the fearful civilian woman. The Reikage and Mizukage shouted protests, screaming hatred-filled threats at the redhead. Naruto casually walked back to his throne and sat down, his gaze landing directly across from him, on his brother's unreadable expression. A soul-crushing decision. For your freedom, Aya, he called out, still looking into Menma's eyes. Kill this woman, and you, and your party are free to walk away, he said, surprising everyone. Aya's eyes were on the blade in front of her, tears streaming uncontrollably. You choose not to kill her, and you, and your party remain for the duration of the game, in which your husband will eventually have to fight for you, he said. Her first thought, of course, was that she wouldn't do it. She would wait for Kojuro to save her. But then she thought about the Tsuchikage's violent end. The man she brought with her died at another cage's hands. Her eyes traveled up to their platform. What if Ao or Haki were chosen to face off against the Raikage or the Hokage? They wouldn't stand a chance. By choosing to stay, she'd be choosing for them to die instead, even though it wasn't a guarantee Kojuro would save her. She looked back down at the kunao, then up into the immobile woman's eyes. Her heart and brain tore themselves apart, both making sound arguments for each scenario. She cried hysterically, not knowing what to do. Monstrous action for certain freedom? Naruto called out blandly. Or, a righteous action for an unassured chance at life, he asked her ominously, further distorting her will. The constant screaming of those around her also fueled her anxiety. The look in the woman's eyes ate at her soul, even from a considerable distance. She hadn't said anything, just stared back, tears beginning to fall. Aya reached forward with a very shaky hand and grabbed the kunao. Holding it up, she stared at the very tip and looked back at the blonde woman. Standing, she slowly walked forward until she was right in front of Samui. She dropped to her knees and stared at her, trying to steady her resolve. She had to do it. This man was a complete psycho. As soon as she refused, he would do something worse to them, she knew it. He spoke as if he knew she would end up killing this girl. He was trying to prove a point to everyone here, and if she refused to feed in and made him wrong, there was no telling what he'd do. Don't do it, yelled the Raikage, pushing against the glass in frustration. Don't you fucking do it. He looked across at his son, who witnessed the whole thing. Don't look, son. Look away, he pleaded. B was quiet behind him, watching it unfold. It broke his heart, but he kept his composure, knowing nothing they did would change the outcome. The Mizukage's shouts, of course, told her to do it. If it was a sure way to save her life, he needed her to do it. Every now and then, he looked back at the masked man, cursing him for making his soon-to-be wife do something of this magnitude, but if it was a way out, he needed her to do it. Aya-chan, just do it. Please, just do it, it'll be over quick. In their contradicting pleas, they locked eyes a couple of times, shouting curses and hate-filled. Aya finally ceased her brutal assault on the already deceased woman, flinging the kunao away. She collapsed, sobbing, and continuously apologizing to the lifeless body. I had to do it. I had to, she repeated to herself. Hunched over, she vomited the last remnants of her previous meal, tears and pleas for forgiveness gushing out alongside it. Naruto observed the entire scene, his gaze fixed on his family's expressions. Like everyone else, they watched with disbelief. It seemed this revelation was simply too much to bear. The red-headed Kazekage also watched in restrained shock. None of them could comprehend the actions that had just transpired. Animal is a derogatory word that inaccurately describes what we are, he suddenly declared, reclaiming their attention. When someone is cruel, we're all so quick to call them an animal, yet if you truly nitpick, humans are the only animals capable of such atrocities. So in other words, he said, looking down at the two women in the barrier, Aya, you're a human, and you're also free to go. With that, he dropped the barrier. The Mizukage's barrier also fell, freeing him and his two chosen attendants. He wasted no time leaping down to his fiancée, wrapping her in a hug and shielding her eyes from the gruesome sight of the mutilated blonde before them. He wrinkled his nose at the stench and looked up at the masked man. Naruto perceived the anger in his eyes. If you wish to end up like the Tsuchikage, you are free to attack me as you please, he said ominously. Your prize has won her own freedom. Take this opportunity to leave while you can. The Mizukage glared up at him, and for a second, the others thought he would attack. He picked his fiancée up in a bridal carry, still eyeing the masked assailant. If they don't kill you when this is all over, I swear I'll find you, he vowed, pure hatred in his eyes. Showing no fear, Naruto nodded sharply, still unfazed by the meaningless threat. With his piece said, the Mizukage turned to leave, stopping as he caught the eye of the Raikage, who was staring right back. Had it been your wife, you'd have expected her to do the same, he offered, attempting to make him understand. The Raikage merely stared for a second, a look of disgust crossing his face. Sadly for you, it wasn't my wife. The threat completely understood, the Mizukage nodded and began walking away. He and his men jumped off the cliff before the middle barrier shot back up, leaving just 3 more groups. A clone dragged Samui's body down and cleaned the area for the next event, which was still undecided. Naruto looked at them all, as if contemplating his next move. Let's see, he murmured, tapping his hands on his armrests and thought. Well, I'm not too interested in fighting any more than one Biju. He began forming hand signs. In a flash of light, the Kaze cage and B appeared on either side of the arena, both utterly silent and not looking to play games. Anger literally bubbled around them, red chakra began to emanate as they hit the arena. Well, Kaze cage, for a man who advocates against the monstrosity of mankind, you know a lot about what that's like, he said, eyeing him. The Kaze cage didn't respond to his pointless words. Instead, his gourd began to disintegrate before producing a tail made of sand. The sand began to cover most of his form until the top half of his body resembled a much smaller version of the Shikaku. B's form remained unchanged, save for the red silhouette of the Haxabi surrounding his body. His eyes were hidden behind his glasses, and his facial expression gave little away, but from studying him, Naruto could tell he was beyond angry himself. Figuring this was sure to be a good match, Naruto simply leaned back and snuggled into his seat. Oh, and if you haven't noticed, this seal won't allow you to fully transform, for obvious reasons, he added with a shrug. No stakes in this one. You two just seem angry enough to rip anything to shreds, so have at it. Needing nothing more, B rushed forward with his arm extended. The inside of his elbow met the throat of the sand creature, and contrary to his expectation, he began to sink in. He spun around, ripped the appendage from the sand, and kicked him away. The Kaze cage hit the barrier wall, the sand cushioning his blow. Without hesitation, he got up and rushed the Kumo Jinchuriki. Throwing his arm forward, the sand extended and missed the elusive man by an inch. In her throne, Ino yawned, drawing Naruto's attention. This is kinda boring, hun, she said honestly. I'm gonna take a nap. Naruto raised an eyebrow beneath his mask but shrugged and returned to watching the battle. The Kaze cage was confused when he rolled to his feet, now holding every sword that was on his form at once. There was one tucked into the wedges of each of his coiled arms, one in his mouth, one held by the back of his knee, one in the crook of his neck, and one in the crevice between his thigh and stomach. He doubted they could be used as such. Expertly, he leaped through the air, avoiding the tendril of sand that shot at him. He threw two of his swords down, hoping to impale the man inside. He couldn't hurt sand, but if he could get to the Kaze cage inside, he could kill him, and the Shikaku would die and reform elsewhere. When he landed, he rolled forward and picked up the two swords he had thrown. Continuing on, he dodged sand bullet after sand bullet. Rolling under the final one, he moved in to try and thrust his sword through. As soon as it came within range, a plate of sand shot up from the ground, blocking it before it even hit the main body. B loosened his grip and kicked the hilt of the blade on his way back. When he landed, he was standing on a thin strip of sand. When it shifted, he fell onto his back. He looked up at the wave about to crash down on him. The Kaze cage clenched his sand-formed hand, directing the wave of golden substance to crush the man. Before it hit him, a tentacle appeared out of nowhere, shielding the man's body from the assault. Pulling the sand back, he saw that B now had two very large tentacles protruding from somewhere on his back. This meant he was also proficient in partial transformations. He ignored that revelation and sent out more waves of sand to try and cover him completely. B swiped the tendrils out of his way with the tentacles and rushed forward, the sword still on his form. Clearing a path to the core, he threw one of his blades at his head. Before it came within range again, a sheet of sand popped up. He was thinking of a way around that armor. His control of sand meant he was an earth-based ninjutsu fighter. If he attacked with lightning, maybe he could wear him down some. He rushed forward, charging his remaining 5 blades with lightning chakra, and began attacking the main creature directly, letting the tentacles keep him safe from the sand. He flipped and slashed at every conceivable angle of the beast, but nothing was getting through. Losing focus, he landed in a sinking pool of sand that began swallowing him whole. He scrambled up, trying to stick his tentacles to anything that would pull him up, but nothing would stick thanks to all the sand. Darui watched in horror, thinking this might be too much for even B. Seeing him sink into the unexplainable sinkhole worried him. B was resilient, but only a few hours ago, he had watched a man with the protection of rock armor crushed by this very same opponent. His worries were relieved when he watched as the sand seemed to become much more mud-like than before. 2 of B's tentacles shot out from the mudded sinkhole of sand and stuck to the barrier, slinging him out of the substance. He remained high off the ground with his tentacles sticking to the hard surface of the barrier. While up there, he got an idea. It seemed that water was the obvious weakness, which was good because it was an easy solution. Going through hand signs, he puffed out his chest and shot bullet after bullet of water towards the sand creature. Seeing the danger, the Kaze cage used the sand he made from the ground to block the water, while simultaneously making more. He knew the man's plan was to drench all his sand, leaving him defenseless, but he could work with that. He blocked each of the water bullets to protect the Shikaku's sand armor surrounding his body. He kept them coming in plentiful supply, increasing their size by pumping more and more chakra into each blast. He had to keep moving around the top of the barrier to avoid getting caught by the counterattacks sent his way. He didn't know any area-wide water techniques, so these water bullets would have to suffice for now. The Haxabi was explaining that the weakness of the Shikaku's containers in this state was at the base of the tail, so that would have to be his striking point. They continued their battle of hit and counter-hit for a few minutes until B noticed that there was nothing left for the cage to use other than mud, which was too slow and weak to be effective. So, he swung forward and landed near the mudded creature with his swords drawn again. The mud was wrapping around his ankles, trying to hold him in place, but he walked through it with ease. It was just like walking through regular mud. The Kaze cage played the role expertly, swiping away as he scrambled back. He truly looked like a helpless victim. When B finally began rushing, however, his stoic look returned. B circled him until he got behind him and targeted the vulnerable spot. He went in for the attack, but just when he drove his sword forward, a tendril of chakras shot up and caught his wrists, lifting him from the ground. B struggled, trying to use his tentacles to swipe it away. As soon as he did, two skinnier tendrils of sand shot through the mud, cutting it off. He brought out another, which met the same fate. Darui's eyes widened in alarm, not even understanding how that could happen. It was just sand. B, he yelled, seeing how helpless he seemed. B was confused as well. This sand was just slicing his tentacles off. That wasn't possible unless that was some kind of jutsu war. His eyes widened when the skinny tendrils that were slicing the tentacles rose in front of his face. There was a glimmer from the tips before they drove forward, one going straight through his head, and the other through his chest, the blades of his discarded swords popping out of the back of his head and chest. The swords he had so carelessly let sink into the sand at the start of this little battle. No, yelled the Raikage, hitting the barrier with his sword. No, no, no. Twice today he had watched someone die. B, of all people, he was sure couldn't lose. He stared at the masked man who began clapping at the outcome of the battle. You bastard. I'll fucking kill you, he yelled, hitting the barrier over and over again with his blade, not even aware that his son was watching him lose his mind. Naruto ignored the screams for his head from the usually level-headed cage. He was slowly clapping for the Kaze cage, who had let the mud fall from his form as he stared at the Kumo shinobi that fell before his feet. In a flash of light, he was back in his spot, staring at the ground. A clone once again struck the arena of the previous battle before sinking into the ground. Naruto stared across the way at his fellow redhead, who was completely silent. Well, I must say that was a very impressive display there, Kaze cage, he said, looking over at his prize. You're a very formidable man, as was the famous Killer Bee. He nodded to the Raikage, who was still cursing him out. I'm trying to decide what to do with you. You've withstood each of my tasks and have done so with extreme grace. I'm not sure if that warrants enough respect to let you leave yet, he said, negating the fact that he allowed the Mizu cage to leave without ever having to do anything. Have I been unfair with you? The Kaze cage looked him in the eyes with pure hatred. He hated everything about him at this moment. Not that he was too fond of him before, but now he was sure he was going to kill him. I have for a reason, he said, sitting up. None of you have noticed yet the true reason I've done this. He stood up. I mean, it's not like you all haven't been in these positions before. It's just now you know what it's like to have it happen in real time. He began pacing. Out of all of you, who's gone? He asked, looking around as if he were confused. Everyone's gaze met the empty pillars of both IWA and Kiri. Ah, yes, IWA, a nation built on the arrogance of their ancestors. It's sickening having such a nation running around, isn't it? They are gone because of their refusal to forgive. They lived on the cusp of revenge. In this experiment, their anger was directed towards Suna. Had she forgiven the actions of the Kaze cage for doing what he did when he had no choice, she would have returned to her spot to fight another day and probably would have received an opponent she could actually beat within the given time slot. But, her need for revenge was just too much for her to bear, and she killed in vengeance. Now, Minato was starting to understand. These selections weren't as random as he claimed. It was a cycle of cause and effect. Now, you may be wondering why I allowed Kiri to leave without so much as stepping foot into the arena, right? He asked, receiving no answer. Well, it's simple. Kiri is a nation known for shooting themselves in the foot, which is what they did. In this case, it wasn't the cage of Kiri that represented them. No, Kiri's cage had been known to disappoint, so of course, I went to the people instead. Aya refused to give up the chance for certain freedom because of her fear of failure on her cage's part. The Raikage sent him a death glare. He allowed them to kill his wife for a fucking experiment? Had she refused to kill the young lady, rest her soul, he said, looking over to the Raikage, which infuriated him. Then, perhaps they would have lived longer, he said with a shake of his head. Everyone was confused by this. Minato spoke up for everyone. You let them go, or did you? He asked, now fearing that he had something waiting for them. Naruto put his mind at ease. No, I did, he said, nodding. But, I doubt the Raikage will be letting that slide by so easily. He looked over to him. You're damn right, he spat out. And as soon as I'm finished with them, I'm coming for you, he said with a deathly look in his eyes. He looked completely insane. Naruto smiled beneath his mask. Oh, of course. And then Suna, I'm guessing. He nodded over to the Kaze cage, who was unaffected by the threat. The Raikage didn't express it, but he agreed. And what of you, Kaze Cage? Is IWA still on that list of yours? He asked, looking over to him. Finally, he lifted his head, a dead look in his eyes that spoke volumes about his psyche. IWA will fall, just as Kumo will fall, just as Konoha. None of you deserve to live, he said ominously. Menma looked over to him in surprise. Kazekage-san, he said, in an attempt to reason with him. Was he still angry that Naruto originated from Konoha? Naruto is no longer a shinobi of Kono dash. I don't care, you'll fall too, he said lowly, no hint of a joke in his dead eyes. Suna, Naruto said, drawing everyone's attention again, the nation that has fought their way out of the disgrace of the sand dunes to mark their place in this world, they take the most beating, but persevere and fight on. Kumo, the nation that holds strong in their belief of power and rule but remain firm in their qualities of self-reliance. Then, there is you, Konoha. The Kaze Cage and Reikage both eyed them with suspicion. If there was a reason they were still untouched, then what was it? Oh yes, the nation that everyone loves to hate. You sit atop your throne unscathed and watch as everyone else tears themselves apart. The definition of a false god, he said. Hold on, Minato said, trying to defend them. We're only unscathed because you haven't chosen any of us. He pointed out the obvious. Of course, I haven't. There's been no need to, he said as if he had just given them a huge revelation. Without any help at all, you lot gain the most enemies. Why is that? He asked with a sincere tone, as if he were genuinely asking. Your power, he said with a nod. Minato and Menma looked at each other in confusion. Now he was telling them things they already knew. This isn't news to us. The more power you gain, the bigger the target on your back. We get it, he said, as if he had figured out the next outlandish philosophical theory Naruto had coming up. Well, actually it's not that, he said, shocking them. It's actually the opposite. Your false power is what I should have said. He nodded. You believe your village is the strongest because of the people you hold within. With individuals such as Kakashi of the Sharingan, the Red Death, the entire Uchiha clan, the Hyuga, the Yellow Flash, the list goes on and on. You have grown arrogant in your seat at the top. Now, you walk around and flaunt your abilities as if they were just badges of honor or something, he said in disgust. Are you saying we are weak? Menma asked, truly confused by what he was trying to say. On the contrary, Naruto said, now they were truly confused. Everything they said, he would say the opposite. Which one was it? You're strong, but your village as a whole is very weak. With the individuals you have, there is an unquestionable struggle of power that you yourself aren't even aware of, Naruto said. Now he was talking as if he knew something they didn't. How well do you know your people, Menma? Naruto asked. Now he was truly confused. What the hell are you talking about? He yelled out. Your people, Menma, he said, slowing down his speech in a mocking way. How well do you know them? Minato took the initiative and placed his hand on Menma's shoulder. We know them well, Naruto, far better than you do, he said in a brief moment of arrogance. Naruto chuckled beneath his mask. I would argue that case, Tou-san, he said with a grin. In fact, I'd venture into saying that you are completely unaware of what goes on within the shadows of that great tree of yours. You live in ignorance of a village that does not follow you, contrary to what you may believe. Friendship is a fickle thing, and let's just say I learned that the hard way. What are you trying to say? Menma asked, not liking what he was implying, even though he didn't actually understand it. It sounded like he was saying they had traitors in the village, which he wouldn't stand to hear. Naruto just shrugged and walked towards the Reikage's prize slot. Well, if you don't get it, that's fine. You will eventually, he said cryptically. Get the fuck away from him, the Reikage yelled, seeing Naruto standing behind his son. That was all he had now, and he'd be damned if he lost him too. Naruto stared him in the eyes and went through hand signs. In a flash of light, the carrier holding the Kazekage's nephew appeared in the center arena. The barrier fell, as did the Kazekage's. You've done well, Gaara. You are free to go. I believe you get the point. Gaara said nothing. He grabbed his nephew and left. Once he was gone, the barrier arose once again. Going through hand signs, the Reikage appeared within it. As do you, Reikage. He broke the collar from the boy's neck. In a flash of light, the boy was in the barrier, stumbling from the disorientation. The Reikage caught him before he fell. He hugged him to his chest and glared up at Naruto. The barrier fell again. The look he was giving him was enough to know that there would be hell to pay if he didn't die here. He turned to leave and stared up at Minato and Naruto. Another monster from Konoha. He shook his head and walked off. Naruto and Ino stood at the cliff's edge, silently awaiting his family's resolve. Naruto watched Kakashi cradle Sumair. The silver-haired man's final glance conveyed his remorse. Naruto, I'm sorry we've let you fall so far. We are all to blame. I wish it could have been different. With that, he limped towards the precipice. Naruto called out, so do I. Kakashi. The Jonin paused, not turning, but acknowledging the words. He remembered the younger Naruto, not the disturbed mask before him, and with a heavy heart, left them to their fateful battle. Minato then faced Naruto. Naruto, regardless of anything you've done, I'm proud of the splendid shinobi you've become. I always have been. Both knew this battle would end in death, with no mercy. Menma spoke next. I don't know if this means anything, but when we were younger, I did everything for you. I wanted to start training early, just to catch up. Seems I never did. A hollow chuckle escaped him. Kushina sighed, tears welling. I don't know why you did this, or how much it means. But this is the life you chose, and no matter the context, you found someone who loves you, someone who lets you see the world. I'm so happy for you. Rain began to fall. Naruto, silent, watched each speaker. When they finished, he gazed at the violently swirling sea, finding it a fitting reflection. Watch me as I sleep and smile when I wake. Before you lay me down again, remember my last words, we will always be as we always were. Complete, even as broken as we are, we will always be complete. Believe me when I say it, because I'll say it once more. We will always be. His words trailed off, and he inhaled deeply, then turned to the group, steadying himself. Family facing family is troubling. I've seen this scene plenty of times, he said, drawing confused looks. I read it in many books. It's common for families to kill each other. These situations make for the best stories. As he spoke, he removed his jacket, preparing for battle. Perhaps it's a sickening design of humanity to harbor such disturbed thoughts of killing our own family. It's common enough to assume so, right? He unsealed his sword and strap, securing it. As he readied, the others followed suit, thunder and rain accentuating Naruto's words. There was a methodical way to write a good book. Jiraiya was probably the last to use it, he said, drawing his sword and testing its balance. There'll never be an author as thorough as that old pervert. He chuckled, bouncing on the balls of his feet. As grotesquely perverted as he was, the man knew how to write when it wasn't smut. Tsunade did too. Now that I think about it, lots of good authors from Konoha. He shook his head. Anyway, I'm getting off topic. Let's not waste such a beautiful day. Everyone froze, staring each other down. Rain and crashing waves dominated the sound. Minato and Menma held tri-pronged kunai in reverse grips. Naruto held his lone sword similarly. Ino's swords were reverse gripped, and Kushina wielded hers like a true swordsman. The unyielding rain offered no hints of their intentions. In the next flash of lightning, battle erupted. Menma threw his kunai and flashed, instantly kicked back by the pursuing redhead. Minato flashed to Menma, grabbing his hand and simultaneously kicking at Naruto, who dodged. Before Naruto could slice him, his mother's blade parried, rushing in. Naruto flipped to his feet. Before Kushina could attack, Ino drop-kicked her over the edge, diving off right behind her. Naruto watched the incoming kunai multiply, surrounding him. To his surprise, Menma and Minato began flashing between them, creating a light show of bright yellow. Evening the odds, Naruto rapidly flashed between them, his red mixing with their vibrant yellows. Appearing near a tag with Menma, Naruto ducked under a throat swipe and thrust his sword forward. Menma flew back just before being hit. Naruto flashed away, leaving his sword upright next to a tag. Flashing to another, Naruto jumped, avoiding his father's near hit to his thigh. He flashed again and jumped back, evading a throat slash. Menma flashed behind him, and a yelp of pain confirmed Naruto's plan. The flashes died as Naruto jumped away. Minato saw Menma with a sword through his calf. Naruto had placed it upright, anticipating Menma's careless jumps. Menma pulled out the sword and nodded to his father, who nodded back. Minato created a raise-non and flashed to a nearby kunai. Naruto expected it, jumping to avoid the blast. Menma lunged with his own, and Naruto felt his father grab his ankle, holding him and placing a tag. Naruto twisted awkwardly, grabbing Minato's arm, pulling himself away from Menma's attack, and quickly sending Minato flying with a chest kick. Menma recovered, rushing back in. He scooped up a discarded black sword and threw it with all his might. Kushina flipped back across the water, planting her feet on a jagged rock formation, then flipping up it. The thrown blade impaled the side. Ino rushed forward, plucking the blade from the stone, then chased the red-headed woman, delivering slash after slash. Kushina, a blade expert, blocked each attack, maintaining distance to avoid pressure point strikes. Blocking a slash, she stabbed into the rock, slashing upwards and dislodging a chunk. Gravity pulled the rock towards Ino, who had to cut through it to stay on the rocks. As she did, Kushina dropped towards her with both feet out. Ino, with no time to dodge, took the skyward drop kick, rocketing towards the water. She stabbed her sword into the rock, righting herself. Kushina did the same, and when Ino rushed forward, so did she. Ino planted a sword sideways into the rock, continuing with a single blade. The two locked blades briefly before Kushina used her weight to force Ino back. Ino quickly regained control, rushing forward, violently slashing at the red-haired woman. Kushina was again defensive as they climbed higher. Gaining room, Kushina cut her chakra and nosedived towards the surprised blonde. she swiped her strike away and tackled her. They stumbled along the rocks until Ino regained her senses. She grabbed Kushina's ankles, spun violently, and threw her towards the water, falling right behind her. On the way, she plucked the sword she'd stuck in the wall and threw it down. When Kushina's back hit the water, she saw the sword and the blonde heading her way. A chain quickly flew from her back, knocking the sword off course. It headed straight for Ino's unprotected form, but she punched the side of the rock formation, throwing herself further out to sea. Landing on the violent waters, she awaited the red-haired woman. Her eyes lit up at a glimmer of gold beneath her. She jumped, avoiding the almost impaling chain, and was forced to keep jumping to avoid the many that followed. Searching for the source, she saw Kushina surface and stand atop the water. Taking a deep breath, Ino cut the chakra to her feet and used water jutsu to propel herself around the rapid currents, attempting to flank Kushina. Underwater, she dodged the same chasing chains. Figuring she'd fare better above, she resurfaced, shooting through the air and jumping away to avoid strikes. She circled the rock formations, hoping to confuse the redhead or test the chain's extension, weaving in and out of the newly formed rock bases. Kushina saw her plan but went along. Her focus broke when a booming sound from the arena pillar was followed by rumbling. Something flew from the pillar's side, splitting its top in half. It shot out with a smoke trail. It was Menma, splashing down into the water. She looked back to ensure the blonde girl still fled her chains before checking on Menma. He scrambled grimacing to the surface, but seemed fine. "Tou-san," he yelled, looking up at the formation's top. Kushina traced his gaze, seeing Naruto rushing the stumbling man with a sword. Thinking quickly, she yelled, tightening her chains to shatter the rock formations at their base, bringing the rest down. Naruto was thrown off balance by the quake and noticed the pillar leaning. He leaped towards the sea, landing on the violently churning water. Steadying himself, he looked back at the regrouped trio. On their other side, Ino stood on the remaining flattened rock. Their three opponents discussed something briefly, then nodded. Menma and Kushina ran towards Ino, planning to quickly eliminate her before ganging up on him without distractions. A sound plan, in his opinion. He stared at his father, who began walking towards him. "It's a sad day when a father faces his son in battle, especially when death knocks at both their doors," he said, loud enough for Minato to hear over the rain and violent waves. Minato shrugged, still catching his breath. He began a slow trot towards the redhead, building to a sprint. Ino ducked under the lunging blonde cage and blocked Kushina's next slash. She kicked Kushina's knee, sending her to the ground, then rolled from Menma's ground-cracking stomp. She rose, rushing him, picking up her discarded sword and slashing. He swiveled away, having no kunao left. Ino nearly slipped on the wet rock, giving Menma an opening. He punched her stomach, punching her over and making her drop her blade again. As he did, his mother flew overhead, delivering an axe kick to the back of Ino's head. Ino's mask hit the ground, cracking. She rolled away, avoiding Kushina's finishing blow. Getting to her feet, Menma kicked her chest, sending her tumbling back towards the water. Righting herself, she stood and formed hand signs. A ball of flame shot towards the two, as if there were no rain. It hit their previous spot. They approached from two directions, and she knew she needed to reach Naruto for any chance of survival. As they attempted a high-low attack, she sank into the water and shot off, Kushina's chain chasing her. Propelling out of the water, she jumped side to side, avoiding the dragging chains. Naruto was only a few yards away. They worked better together, so if she made it, they had a chance. She was surprised when Menma appeared, kneeing her unprotected face. Blood rushed to her skull. With no time to recover, Menma delivered a roundhouse kick, sending her skipping across the water. He ran over, not wanting her to get up. As he thought she would, he kicked, which would have landed had she continued her movement. Instead, she cut her chakra, slipping underwater. Menma jumped away, avoiding her as she popped up with a kunao. He had her tagged, allowing some room. Inhaling, he flashed back to her and attempted a punch to the face. Ino's reflexes were too quick, she leaned away and kicked his weakest spot. Menma hunched over, cradling himself, until he was kneed in the nose in revenge. He stumbled back, and Ino rushed him with the kunao until Kushina's chain impaled her leg. "Arg!" she cried. Menma quickly righted himself and punched her face. Ino cut chakra to her feet again, sinking into the water. Kushina yanked her out, allowing Menma to hit her gut. Before he could strike again, a flash of red appeared. He was kicked in the chest, sent stumbling away. Naruto plucked the chain from Ino's leg and jumped back. He landed and immediately began healing the injury, keeping an eye on the others. "That'll lessen the pain," he said, forcing her to stand. "You gotta keep fighting, Ino." He casually placed his hand over the Hiraishin seal on her. She nodded, looking at the three now surrounding them. She and Naruto stood back to back, staring them down. Again, the battle began with a brief flash of lightning. Menma and Minato ran forward while Kushina stayed back, trying to catch them with her chains. Ino rolled over Naruto's back, kicking Menma's leg away before he hit Naruto's side. As he stumbled, she jabbed his throat and kicked his chest before rolling into him, avoiding the chain that split them. As the chain rocketed towards her, she flipped back. Naruto stuck his hand up and grabbed Ino's. Yanking down, Ino kicked out, stopping Minato's run and kicking up water, momentarily obscuring his view. Before it fell, Naruto's foot soared through it, catching Minato on the chin and sending him flying back. Naruto jumped back, pulling Ino with him, avoiding the chains that almost impaled them. They landed a ways back, and Naruto began hand signs. Ino spewed oil that sprayed and clung to the water, and Naruto burned it with a stream of flames. Menma jumped aside, ignoring the technique, and rushed forward, slashing. He jumped over Ino's kunao and kicked her backward. Reaching Naruto, he engaged him in taijutsu, somehow gaining the upper hand and kicking the redhead back. Naruto rose and rushed forward with Ino close behind. Both jumped, avoiding the chain from below. Menma chased Naruto, forming hand signs. In a puff of smoke, 2 more of him appeared. The 3 rushed forward, throwing punches that refused to land. With his superior taijutsu, Naruto dispatched the 2 clones. So caught up, Naruto's foot was impaled by a chain, and he was yanked forward. Quickly, Menma formed a raise nan and slammed it into his chest. It tore through skin and bone, sending Naruto skidding back across the water. Menma watched as Naruto's tumble was stopped by an unseen rock. Ino ran to him, screaming his name in panic. He did it, they did it. Ino dropped to her knees, cradling Naruto's bloodied face. Hey, you're alright, she yelled frantically. Naruto, hey, desperation and sorrow clear on her face. Naruto, please no, don't do this to me. God damn it, she yelled, slapping his chest. Minato came up beside him, placing a hand on his shoulder. Menma, finish it, he said, handing him a kunao. Menma stared at it tragically for a few seconds before walking forward. Ino didn't even turn to look. His chest hurt, his thigh, his arm, his head. Turning around, he thought he heard his mom calling his name in the distance, screaming something he couldn't make out. But it was his name. What did she want at a time like this? He was about to end it all. He was so close. All he had to do was wake up. His mother's voice finally resonated. His eyes opened, half his body submerged. He blinked, wondering what happened. His father was fending off both of them, but he'd already killed Naruto. Come on, Menma, Kushina said. They got you with some kind of toxin. Luckily, you've got the Kyuubi. You probably would have been out for days. Menma blinked, shook his head, and stood. Damn, they got him. Come on, Kaa-san, he said, rushing back in. Kushina followed, rejoining the fight. Minato jumped away as Ino swiped at his chest. Menma soared in, kicking her away, and quickly blocked Naruto's strike. Naruto dodged his counter and put him in a chokehold, then gently pushed him forward when Kushina's chain flew from the water. Kushina stopped the strike just before it punctured Menma's chest. Both sighed in relief until Naruto dropped back down and kicked Menma back towards her. He immediately jumped back as Minato rushed him. He leaped away, realizing too late Minato was intentionally leading him away, leaving Ino alone with the other 2. Clever. Staring off against him again, they rushed forward. Minato had one last tri-pronged kunao. He slashed at Naruto, who leaned away. He countered with a quick jab to Minato's chin. Minato blinked it off and slashed again, receiving 2 more jabs before he brought his arm back. Going for an overhead slash, Naruto stuck his arm up, pushing his forearm against Minato's wrist. With his body exposed, Naruto kneed him in the gut. Minato coughed and dropped the kunao, letting it fall behind the redhead. As soon as he let go, he flashed to it, appearing behind him. Naruto expected it and turned to catch Minato's wrist. He spun the other way and kicked Minato's chest. Minato skipped across the water like a rock. Naruto flashed to the kunao in Minato's hand and appeared behind him. He stuck his knee out, causing Minato to hit his back incredibly hard. Minato's face contorted in a grimace. Just before he sank, Naruto grabbed his collar and tossed him again. He skidded towards the other 3, still locked in battle. Naruto noticed Ino was losing, despite holding her own. Figuring his father had had enough, he began walking that way. He took a step and was instantly kicked in the face. His back hit the water, but he quickly resurfaced to see his father still standing, clearly on his last legs. Minato wavered, yet the fire in his eyes burned on. Taking a deep breath, he charged again. Naruto effortlessly dodged the unrefined strikes, feeling like he was fighting a drunkard. He seized Minato's fist and used his palm to painfully jam his nose back. Disoriented, Minato stumbled backward. Before he could recover, Naruto kicked him in the stomach, dropping him to his knees. You've got more fight than I expected, Dad, Naruto said, looking down. Nothing less from the yellow flash. He began to circle. Minato reached out, gripping Naruto's ankle in pain, unwilling to let him go. Naruto could have simply lifted his leg, but something in the act itself made him pause. He noticed himself slowly sinking into the water and wondered what was driving Minato. He pulled Minato's body from the rippling water, marveling at his beaten expression. There was nothing left, not dead, but too exhausted to continue, lacking the reserves for this water battle. Naruto! Ino's distant yell made him turn. They had finally subdued her. Kushina's chakra chains impaled her wrists, leaving her dangling as Menma now held the sword. Naruto watched for a few seconds before dropping Minato back into the water, who struggled to keep his head afloat. Seeing Naruto approach, Menma swiftly decided, stabbing Ino through the heart. Her eyes widened, gasping at the sharp pain. In a flash of red, Naruto kicked Menma away and grabbed Ino. The chakra chains dispersed as Kushina ran to the drowning Minato. A shallow piece of land allowed them to carry him there, not far from Ino and Naruto. Naruto offered her no comfort. She choked on her own blood as he watched her pleading eyes, holding her above water. Ino's breathing slowly faltered, tears streaming. SHHSHHSHH, Naruto whispered. You were always just an empty doll. You served your purpose. He heartlessly shut her eyes. The others heard his cruel words, appalled. As life left Ino's eyes, Naruto gently pushed her body down. She filled with water, sinking to the bottom. No parting words, no cries of sympathy from the man she claimed to love. Naruto used the water to wash blood from his hands as he stood. He slowly walked toward them. When he was finally in range, he looked across at his exhausted father and angry brother. Now, a true family death match, he said casually, as if his companion's death meant nothing. No more distractions. What the hell is wrong with you? Menma asked, anger bubbling. Naruto shrugged. Too many things, little brother, too many things, he said slowly. Well, while we wait for Dad to regain some energy, how about a little insight? He dropped into the water, conserving energy. Insight into what? Menma asked, mentally drained by Naruto's constant rambling. What more could you possibly have to say? After the leaf attack, I visited an old friend, if you will. Not much of a friend, but, he shrugged. He's a man who sought more than anyone believed, even me. For so long, I thought him selfish. Turns out, you don't truly know a man until he's on his deathbed. I've learned this all too well. What are you rambling about now? Menma asked, clearly frustrated by the cryptic speech. Naruto smirked, waving his hands across the water. The people we face never truly show their real selves until forced. Could I tell you a story while we wait? He asked, receiving no answer. He shrugged and continued. A panther and a tiger, unlikely companions, forged a deep, secret friendship. The tiger was a wild card, scorned by the world too many times, growing spiteful. Everything he saw or felt was viewed negatively. He plotted revenge against those who harmed him, even as a cub, knowing hatred intimately. One day, he met a panther cub. Young as they were, the panther moved with such grace and joy, making the tiger envious of his carefree life. The tiger was alone, while the panther had a family depending on him. The tiger lacked purpose, the panther had the most. When they first spoke, the tiger was determined to convince the panther not to be so happy. Sure, he had family and friends, but where would that leave him when they were gone, or when his usefulness ran out? The panther simply smiled, telling the confused tiger that the world isn't always fair. So, focus on what it gives you, not what it doesn't. From that day, the tiger changed. Inspired by the panther's sweet words, he vowed to be more like him, even when his surroundings didn't permit it. True to his word, the cub lived by that belief, wholeheartedly ignoring anyone who told him otherwise. The panther and tiger cubs were inseparable. Slowly, the tiger was drawn into the dark-furred cat's family, receiving the same appreciation as the panther cub. He gained a friend and family by focusing on the brighter side, ignoring life's ugliness. He loved every second, but something about them always felt off, a foreign feeling he held dormant for years. As they grew, the cubs became beasts, defending their jungle home and all creatures within it. It was the first time in a long time the tiger felt purpose, embracing it with extreme gratitude. They grew stronger together, each fueling the other's fire. That was their growth. Eventually, their lives subtly diverged when the panther fell in love. It was expected, but the panther he loved was a weaker fighter, unable to defend herself. Inevitably, in their world, she was captured by a lion, a universally hated lion, the jungle's most selfish predator. The panther and tiger pursued her. When they finally caught them, the lion gave the panther an ultimatum. Claiming he wanted to be entertained, he demanded they fight to the death. During their final battle, the lion spoke of an atrocious betrayal the tiger couldn't comprehend. He rambled about the jungle's darkness and creatures' deceit. The stakes rose when the tiger was forced to fight back for unknown reasons. As they repeatedly clashed, both aiming to kill, the lion finally explained himself, in a way. He told the tiger something that made him understand. As a child, making a friend is easy, which is why the tactic is so clever. The tiger killed the panther that day, unknowingly saving a jungle he no longer cared for. When he returned with the news, he was ostracized by everyone. Even hearing his story and knowing he had no choice, he became a hated individual, eventually becoming nothing. A prisoner, within his own mind, trapped in isolation. For years, he remained a lone beast, hating the world and devising ways to make a difference. But all those years, he remembered the lion's words, wondering their meaning. He had a hunch but couldn't understand why. His isolation ended, and he traveled the jungle, seeking what he needed to cause a ripple. When he found these things, he began his deeds, doing things he'd never imagined. Once again, his name was hated, and he was ostracized by many. He eventually returned to his jungle section with his band of misfits and attacked his own people. After that, he went to greet an old friend. Well, still not really a friend, but you know. He returned to the lion with that one question. After all these years, the lion remained alive. The tiger demanded the answer to the question that had plagued his mind for so long. The lion said he had no issue divulging that information if the tiger could defeat him in a fight to the death. After a hard-fought battle between two hated individuals, the lion finally revealed the information. The panther's innocence was a fraud. He'd chosen the tiger as a friend solely to draw him in. The panther's family had a plan, silently recruiting other families for a takeover, if you will. They felt the jungle wasn't being ruled correctly. The tiger's actual family had led the jungle for years, their leadership lax, spending too much time on trivial matters rather than jungle needs. Unintentionally, the tiger and the lion prevented a war all those years ago. The lion took the panther's heart, knowing he would come after her. She was the strongest member of the panther's family and the key to shifting the power balance in their favor. That was why the tiger was so profusely ostracized upon his return and his tail. Not because he killed their family member, but because he destroyed their weapon, and it would be years before the next one was ready. Even those unaware of the apparent takeover disregarded him as a common beast. They hated him because he prevented a war, though they had no idea. It's ironic. But one thing still bothered the tiger. The lion was hated by all, so why go through the trouble to save people who would rather see him dead? The lion's reasoning: he was going to be the one to bring the jungle to its knees, not that sneaky pack of panthers. No, it would be him. The jungle's villain saved the animals within it, for a selfish reason, but he saved them nonetheless. And that's what you don't yet understand, little brother. All your knowledge comes from these heroically perceived individuals. You embody beliefs of courage, power, and self-sacrifice because you crave endearment, Naruto said. But you must understand, there's much to learn from a man who lurks in the shadows of righteousness. Menma vehemently shook his head. No, you're lying. He tried to convince himself more than anyone. Minato and Kushina were silent, pondering Naruto's words. The characters were obvious, but how could they know if the story was true? Minato, having finally regained some strength, spoke up. You believe that? He asked, looking directly into his mask's eyeholes. Naruto stared back. Perhaps I shouldn't, given his track record. But I do, because of something I remember from back then. My best friend's last words solidified it, he said, looking at the water. With a sword through his chest, Itaka's bloodied, beaten face rested on Naruto's shoulder. His onyx eyes gazed at his blonde hair tips. Coughing more blood, he grimaced, feeling the sword shake within him. With a shaky, barely audible voice, he leaned into Naruto's ear. Before I go, remember my name. It was the only thing real in this friendship. Naruto's eyes widened, realizing the meaning. His grip on the sword loosened, his hands dropping to his sides. Who was this man on his shoulder? I'm sorry. The weight slipped from his shoulder, and with a thud, his best friend was gone. He stared at the wall, scenes of their best moments playing in his mind like a projector, the training, their talks, the book he received on his 12th birthday. He dropped to his knees, hunched over, hands supporting his weight. A slow trail of blood seeped into his sight, and he stared at his reflection. A tear slipped, splashing into the red liquid, rippling slightly. A slow chuckle caught his attention, accented by rhythmic clapping. And then there was one, Orochimaru said with a slithery tone as he stood. Naruto then realized why he did what he did. He looked up and flinched as the snake Sannin slit the throat of the bound and gagged Izumi. His sister's crying caught his attention, and he crawled toward it. Mito, he desperately called. When he finally looked, the crying stopped, and her face distorted into that man's image, the renowned shinobi of Kusagakur, 100 Transformation Kazan. You did well, Naruto, Orochimaru praised. It was a noble thing you've done today. You'll realize one day. He then disappeared into the back room, followed by the rogue shinobi. Naruto was left in the barrier, beside the dead bodies of his only two friends. What does that prove? Menma asked, not understanding how it explained anything. Naruto sighed, looking back at him. On my 12th birthday, Itachi gave me a book. It was called On the Nature of Betrayal, a drama depicting the falsified friendship between a spy and his target. Before I go, remember my name. It was the only thing real in this friendship. He quoted the book, just as Itachi had. I feel foolish now. He gave me that almost like a joke between him and his family. Played me for a fool the whole time. all to produce another shinobi of Itaka's caliber and have him join their cause. Menma shook his head again. No, even so. That would have died along with Itachi. He tried to poke holes in the story. You said he was the key to tilting the power struggle, so with him gone, there would be no more plan, he argued. Naruto simply shrugged. You're being played for a fool, Menma. He shook his head. Dad, you know it too. Remember that day on the balcony? When you wanted to talk to me after the 3-year training and all that, he asked. Minato stared at the water, recalling the conversation. Of course, he remembered. When I told you those two will become something amazing one day. That's a lot how Itachi and I were. Yes, Minato was getting the hint. He couldn't voice it, but he knew what Naruto was saying. How do you know all of this? He asked, not understanding where Naruto got this information. Naruto shrugged again. I overthrew a very disappointing leader of his army of shinobi village haters, and he had a very extensive spy network. Dedicated rogue ninja deeply woven within their respective villages' undergrounds, he said casually. I got this information by piecing together the bits I had. What solidified it was the confirmation of a traitor among the group of traitors, a Hyaga, if you'd believe it. So, the Hyaga are against us too? Menma asked, clearly displeased by the upsetting news. Naruto shrugged, as if telling him to believe what he wished. God, Dad, you're not believing this, right? He screamed at him. Minato was speechless for a moment. It was too much to comprehend. I mean, after 3 years gone, half the village could have turned on them. What reason would Naruto have to lie? He made it clear he might die today. So, why lie? I don't know, Menma, he said sadly. Menma stared at him, utterly appalled that he would even consider it after everything that had happened. Naruto placed his palms on the violently shifting water, pushing up until his feet resurfaced. He stood back up on the water's surface, clearly ready to resume the fight. Well, believe what you will, Menma. Heed my warning, though. The life of a shinobi is shrouded in secrecy. For your wife's sake, and your daughter's, do what you must, even if there's a slight chance you think what I'm saying could be true, don't risk it, he said. The three of them rose to the water's surface too, facing him, Menma's features completely distraught by the troubling news. Minato and Kushina stood a little further back, behind him, staring at his back. Now, there was even more to worry about. Whether Naruto was telling the truth or not was undecided, but they would remain vigilant upon their return. Well, if they returned, that is. The merciless rain did not hinder the intense stare-down of the 3-on-1 standoff. The water they stood on bounced and rippled with the storm. Flashes of lightning closely followed by booming thunder, felt in their chests, did little to calm their anxiousness. With an undetermined or unannounced starting point, Menma created 2 clones and rushed forward with one, beginning the battle to end it all. He leapt, feigning a straightforward right hook. When Naruto moved to defend, he spun out of his attack, instead going for an overhead kick, which was blocked all the same. Naruto pushed Menma into the air before stepping back, avoiding the popping chain. He leapt left before his father could reach him. In the air, he twisted from the rushing Menma clone. Menma quickly gave chase, swinging on his mother's rapidly appearing chains. Reaching the redhead, he threw a string of punches, all blocked before he was kicked away. In flight, Minato jumped over him, grabbing his hand to stop his tumble across the water before continuing. Naruto easily dislodged Menma's clone and lunged forward, avoiding the chasing chains, engaging his father. He threw a right hook, blocked with a grunt of effort, then twisted his body, throwing a roundhouse kick with his right leg, also avoided. He leaned back before being caught in the face by Menma, who came flying back. Now defending against 2, he leapt away, making hand signs. 2 of his clones jumped from the water. He briefly grabbed their necks before the 3 split, attacking opponents, the original rushing for Menma. Kicking out, Menma ducked beneath the strike and rolled to his feet. Naruto spun, catching the hasty punch. He kicked Menma's side, creating space. Immediately, he made more hand signs and jumped away, spewing air bullets that stirred the water. Menma dodged all attacks, making his own hand signs. When Naruto landed, Menma thrust his hand forward, a huge gust of wind sweeping the water away as Naruto sank beneath the dip, getting behind Menma. Knowing he would, Menma turned, blocking the punch that almost caught his face. He tried to counter, but Naruto caught his wrist with his left hand. Naruto then used his right to push up on Menma's jaw, restricting movement. When he released him, he kicked him back into the water. With a grunt of frustration, Menma made hand signs and slammed his hands onto the water. In a puff of smoke, 2 small toads appeared. Ma, Pa, I need chakra, he said urgently. With a quick nod, the 2 elderly toads hopped onto his shoulders, building up nature chakra. Menma's eyes turned deep orange, pupils horizontal. 2 blue stripes appeared, extending from his eyes to his jawline. Naruto watched with interest, unaware Menma had mastered Sage Chakra. Interesting, he quietly said. With a start, Menma rushed forward, significantly faster. Naruto adopted a taijutsu stance, waiting. Menma reached him, throwing a sloppy right hook Naruto leaned from. Or so he thought, until something slammed into his mask. He skipped back across the water. Flipping to his feet, he squinted at the anomaly. He chose to block, shrugging off the impending strike. A swift roundhouse kick followed, which Menma deftly ducked. As he landed, he raised his arm, absorbing a forceful counterkick that momentarily rattled him. With a grunt, he pushed back, evading subsequent strikes. Seizing an opening, he kicked Menma away, briefly disrupting the toad's continuous chakra buildup. Forming hand signs, he leaped into the air, unleashing fireballs that disturbed the surrounding water. Utilizing the cover, Menma submerged, performing his own hand signs. Two shadow clones erupted from the water, aiming to latch onto Naruto's ankles, but he had already spotted them. They quickly dispelled, their smoky aftermath providing Menma the cover needed to propel a spiraling chakra ball forward. Naruto expertly caught Menma's wrist, gently rerouting the attack. Before the technique could fully dissipate, his airborne father was clipped on his right shoulder. Minato grimaced at the sting in his now injured arm before a clone he was fighting painfully drove him into the water, landing on his floating form. Flashing to a tag on his back, he attempted a kick, but his leg was effortlessly caught. Awkwardly shifting his body, he spun and landed a brutal roundhouse that knocked the redhead off his feet. Surprisingly, the clone didn't disperse, leading him to wonder if he was fighting the original. Jumping back from the downed enemy's counterattack, he saw Menma land a solid blow on Naruto, which also didn't dispel. This was highly unlikely with Menma in Sage mode. Drawing his last kunai, he landed and rolled backward. Regaining his footing, he ran across the water, dodging small fireballs that curved and merged in pursuit. Seeing his evasions, Naruto changed tactics, dropping back into the water. Minato skidded to a halt, no longer pursued. He lunged backward just as a massive water dragon surged from beneath him. The dragon tailed him for a few seconds before crashing nose first into the water, dispersing into an indiscernible shower amidst the rain. Now, he faced the problem of Naruto's unknown location. In his brief respite, he marveled at Naruto's apparent clones. Even Kushina had her chains through one's arm. They should have been gone by now. Then he recalled footage of Naruto and Itachi in an exam battle. These were Naruto's perfect clones. They seemed far more durable than before. How could they be defeated? Normal injuries wouldn't work. Perhaps they needed to be killed. It seemed plausible, given their noticeable sluggishness compared to the original. Drawing his kunai, he deepened his stance. His right arm still stung from Menma's hit, but he'd pushed through. He jumped, feeling the water shift. Sure enough, Naruto surfaced, sprinting toward him. Minato slashed and sliced, but Naruto expertly dodged with ease. Going for an overhead strike, Minato's wrist was grabbed, and Naruto spun, delivering a powerful roundhouse that sent him skipping across the water. Naruto plucked the kunai from his hand before kicking him and swiftly sending it flying after him. Flashing to the kunai, Minato extended his arm, clotheslining the blonde. He lifted his face from the water, rolling forward and away from his own blade as it plunged toward him. Naruto hopped back slightly, tossing the kunai into the air. Minato flashed to it, grabbing it. He looked back to see Naruto finish a set of hand signs before launching a fireball at his exposed form. He threw his kunai into the water and flashed to it. Before he could resurface, his ankle was grabbed by yet another Naruto, dragging him down. Minato struggled to escape the impossible grip. The clone rained kicks and punches, which Minato struggled to dodge given his rapidly increasing need for air. Kicking him away, he was alarmed when the other Naruto splashed down, heading straight for him. He was truly drowning now. His ankle was grabbed again. Thinking quickly, he swiveled into an awkward position and stabbed the clone in the head. Blood poured out with rising bubbles for a second before the clone dispersed in a burst of more bubbles. Minato used the cover to swim up and kick the other clone away before resurfacing, gasping for air. He looked around, ensuring everyone else was okay. Menma was struggling a bit, but Kushina was fine, maintaining her distance with her chains. He paid for his lapse in focus with a kick to the jaw from the redhead, who had resurfaced unnoticed. He quickly leaped from the water, blocking the next kick with a grunt. He now knew how to defeat them. Their brain had to die before they dispersed. So, even a fatal strike to the heart might take a few minutes, but the clone would eventually disperse. Dodging another attack, he ducked beneath a strike and sliced at his opponent's thigh. The attack missed by a hair, and he paid for it with a brutal knee to the face. Standing up, he lunged forward, attempting a dropkick. Naruto leaned slightly, causing Minato's feet to slide onto his shoulder. Naruto latched onto him, driving his head into the water. Minato cut at his ankle, freeing himself. The Naruto clone stumbled back, grimacing in pain but fighting on. Minato jumped, narrowly dodging a second water dragon that soared out. Naruto jumped toward his airborne form, hitting him across the jaw and plucking the kunai from his hands again. Minato righted himself and flashed to the seal on Naruto's back, putting him in a chokehold. Naruto tried to reach up and stab him, but Minato tightened his grip, snapping his neck with a resounding crack. When they hit the water, Minato pushed the body off, and it began to sink. With a sigh of relief, he stood and rushed to Menma's battle, seeing he needed help. As he left, he didn't notice the glob of bubbles that arose when the clone dispersed deep below. Kushina chased the clone in frustration. It didn't even try to attack her. It simply continued dodging her attacks as closely as possible, as if intentionally staying near them, observing them. Naruto landed a short distance away and crouched. Kushina stopped, wondering what he was doing. He raised his hand, staring at his palm. Slowly, to her surprise, a blade tip, similar to her own chain, began to rise from his palm before fading. He tried again, getting a little more out before it also fizzled. On his third attempt, a chain successfully emerged from his palm, surrounded by a blue hue, unlike her yellow. He could do it. Heh, so that's what it was, he said, standing. I read the Uzumaki scrolls in the library when I was younger. I mastered most techniques, but this one always eluded me. Seeing it in action taught me what I was doing wrong. He explained his newfound ability. Kushina's eyes widened as, in a moment of irony, a blue chain soared from beneath her. She jumped back, sending out one of her own to parry it. Naruto created one in each hand and charged. He swiped away his mother's multiple attacks, even using her chains to get to her faster. Once close enough, he began swinging his own. Kushina was clearly more adept at the technique, however, as she completely overwhelmed him. He jumped back and formed hand signs. The water around Kushina began to swirl into a whirlpool, surprising her. He had even learned this technique? It was one of the more difficult abilities to master, if not the most difficult. She jumped back and away from it before being sucked into its current. If he truly knew the technique, she was in much more trouble than she initially thought. Sure enough, she saw what followed the raging waters. From the violently twisting rapids, water dragons began to emerge from its sides. She leaped out of the way of the first attack and noticed the one that attacked her re-emerged. This was the origin of the water dragon technique itself. These wouldn't disperse on the first attack, they wouldn't disperse unless the user was disrupted. Leaping away from the next strike, she saw that Naruto was still crouched, hands on the surface. Two more dragons were heading toward Menma and Minato. Before she landed, she heard another cry from behind her. Thinking quickly, she covered herself in chains and flew into the beast's mouth. Inside, she spun violently, her chains splitting the water, giving her time to escape. Forming hand signs, she spewed an air bullet toward the redhead. Before it reached, another dragon leaped from the whirlpool, blocking the attack. She squinted her eyes, continuing to jump away from the beasts, knowing that going underwater would be suicide. Minato and Menma continuously dodged the relentless attacks of the durable water dragons while simultaneously evading the original Naruto strikes. Minato knew the technique, having heard Kushina mention it, but Menma was utterly amazed. How do we defeat these? He yelled to his father from a distance. Minato actually had no idea. He had never seen the jutsu in action until now. Jumping from one of the dragons, he leaned back, avoiding Naruto, who came in with a flying spinning back kick. Before he could answer, he was falling toward the other water dragon's open mouth. Its red eyes pierced his own with ominous intent. Minato could see its body coiled like a snake ready to strike. He couldn't feel his kunai anywhere, meaning Menma must have it. When the dragon lunged, he was sure that was it for him, but a chain wrapped around his abdomen, pulling him from the beast's path. Kushina pulled him and Menma back far enough that the dragons couldn't reach. The three watched as the original Naruto stood on one dragon's head, staring at them, his clone maintaining the jutsu. There are two of them? Asked Ma from Menma's shoulder. Yeah, one's a clone, Menma replied. Pa looked at Kushina and Minato with a confused expression. Why is it still alive? I can see it bleeding from here, he said, looking at the clone Naruto's bleeding arm from Kushina's piercing blow. They're not normal clones, Pa, Minato answered, catching his breath. They're perfect clones, so the brain must die before they disperse. He offered his analysis. Wow, what kind of technique is that? That's amazing, Ma exclaimed in astonishment. They even share the same amount of chakra, she added quietly, still examining them. Minato was surprised. Their chakra is even, he asked in wonder. That had to be impossible. All clones received only a portion of the original's chakra, depending on the amount used. With these being so sturdy, it was unlikely they'd have as much chakra as the original, especially considering how many he'd made. Yeah, and it's monstrous. Much like Kushina's, she said, sensing it more clearly. Yeah, that's our son, she said, giving them more information. Pa and Ma exchanged confused glances before shrugging. They'd seen stranger things. Menma noticed how patiently Naruto was waiting. It was almost mocking how lax he was taking this entire battle. Hey, anyone know how to end the jutsu of his? He asked with slight irritation. We have to disrupt the caster, Kushina informed them. The clone is maintaining it, and we can't get close because of the nest. She tried to devise a plan. Nest? What nest? Menma asked. Minato pointed to the clone Naruto, more specifically, the whirlpool in front of him. It's an Uzumaki technique called the Nest of the Water Dragons. It's exactly as the name implies, a nest full of water dragons, he said, astonishing the blonde. Wow, how does he even know something like this? He asked with slight admiration. Kushina shook her head. I don't know. The scroll from Uzu didn't give much direction for it. That's why I never learned it. Naruto's a genius, she admired. Minato nodded. Yeah, well, he said, standing. We've got to force our way through that mess. He formed hand signs. With a huge puff of smoke, Gamabunta appeared beneath them. The giant toad quickly adjusted to the environment, sticking to the water's surface. Hey, Minato, what the hell do you need? It's raining out here, he yelled, looking at the horde of water dragons. Sorry, Bunta, Minato said. We need you to get us through that mess. He showed respect to his summons. Ugh, the toad grumbled. Was that all? He asked with a grimace. Yes, Bunta, said a familiar voice that sent chills down the giant's spine. That will be all. The giant toad drew his sword. You, sure thing, Ma. I didn't know you were here too, he said with a bashful tone. Right on it, he yelled, taking off at full speed with the others clinging to his head with chakra. Menma stepped up to his snout and got his attention. Bunta, give me some oil, he yelled, receiving a nod of confirmation. When they were in range, Bunta spewed a stream of the black liquid, surrounding the dragons. Before the toad could jump away, a water dragon leaped from the water and caught his leg. He extended the appendage and sliced the neck off the spiraling water construct. When they were out of range, Menma spewed a fireball toward the edge of the darkened water. The water's surface and the dragons were quickly engulfed in flames. However, the rainwater quickly doused them, and Bunta rushed forward while the surface was clear of the water beasts. He skidded to a halt before running into the whirlpool between him and the apparent target. Briefly looking into it, another group of water dragons burst from the nest, wrapping the toad and restricting his movement. Menma, Minato yelled, looking down at the kunao. Menma nodded and threw it as hard as he could toward the crouched blonde. Before it reached, it was swallowed by yet another dragon that then sank back into the water. With a grimace, they were now completely out of kunao. Kushina was not only thinking of a way around them but also on the fact that they lost sight of the original. Just as that thought crossed her mind, he landed behind her. She threw her arms up, somewhat blocking the punch that drove her back into Minato, who spun around and caught her. Setting her down, he rushed forward and engaged the redhead while Menma focused on reaching the clone. Bunta, he called out to the giant toad, who was trying to free himself from the tightly coiled dragons. Disperse, he yelled. The giant toad wordlessly complied and disappeared in a huge cloud of smoke, leaving the others to freefall toward the water below. Minato dipped into the water and quickly resurfaced before the now free water dragon shot toward him. Jumping around the beasts, he didn't notice Naruto until it was too late. He was very painfully kicked a ways away from the others. Getting to his feet, grimacing at the pain, he lifted his head to look at Naruto, who landed gracefully in front of him. Standing up, he looked past him at Kushina and Menma, who were still trying to get to the clone. Don't worry about them, Naruto said, walking forward. They'll be busy for a while. Minato got into a fighting stance and readied himself. Why haven't you killed us yet? He asked him suddenly. Naruto rushed him, delivering the first strike that slipped past his head. Minato tried to counter with a hook of his own, but Naruto blocked it with his elbow. What makes you so sure I could? He asked curiously, blocking the roundhouse kick and kicking him in the stomach. Picking himself up, Minato shrugged. Just a hunch, he said, spitting out a glob of blood. Standing again, he rushed forward, ducking beneath a strike aimed at his face. Coincidentally, he saw his kunao beneath his feet. Sinking down, he grabbed it and shot back up behind the redhead. Naruto turned around as casually as ever. Minato created a raise-non and threw his kunao forward. Naruto rushed him, leaning his head out of the kunao's path. As he did, he flipped up with his back to the water and hit his father beneath his armpit, instantly killing his attack. Minato landed on the water's surface and stared down at his limp arm. He looked toward the other battle, noticing he couldn't make out any figures or what was happening. Ignoring it for now, he stood and turned around just in time before Naruto came in for a knee to his face. He swiveled out of the way of the flying attack and countered with a kick of his own that was blocked with relative ease. His limp arm useless for the moment, he was unable to block the kick coming to his face. It sent him skipping across the water like a flat stone. Getting back to his feet, he was kicked in the face and sent even further away. Through the rain, he could see a small island behind him. Shaking his head, he turned, meeting yet another kick. After the third defenseless attack, Naruto tilted his head and looked at the blonde man. He didn't seem to be trying anymore, he was just taking a beating. Naruto slowly walked toward him to see what he would do. Minato stood up and put his one good arm into a lazy stance. His face didn't seem too tired, but he was breathing fairly heavily. Naruto looked down at the arm he had disabled. Rushing forward, he jabbed him in the nose, grabbed the injured appendage, and pushed Minato's face away. When he let go, he kicked him back. Minato, finally able to see the ground, cut his chakra and sank. The water reached his knees and no further. The fairly small island was behind him. Stretching, he noticed his arm was better. Did Naruto heal it? Naruto was still looking at him with curiosity as he walked closer. Minato again put his hands up in a lazy stance. Naruto stopped within arm's reach, his guard completely down. In a sudden and very unexpected moment, Naruto reached across and slapped him. Minato's eyes widened in confusion. Minato corrected himself and threw a very sloppy punch, which Naruto grabbed with ease, jerking his hand up, snapping his arm at the forearm. Minato muffled his scream before being kicked back, his back painfully smacking into a boulder behind him. He groaned as he slid down and sat on his butt, his left arm clutching the broken appendage in pure pain. Naruto had not moved from his spot. He was just standing there, staring at him. You wanted it to be done away from them, Naruto said in an understanding tone, stepping closer until he was right in front of him. Minato didn't respond, he just looked back at him, no understandable expression on his face. Often when a warrior's life is at its end, he wishes to repent for his sins in whatever way he may see fit, and you believe by having me do it, you are cleansing your mistakes. Minato didn't have to say a thing. Naruto read him like a book. It was as if he had the answers to his own unasked questions, and he understood them just from their fight. His breathing was still choppy and short, but he couldn't really feel the pain anymore. I don't know what you would like for me to tell you to get you to understand that I truly hold no animosity toward you or Kaasen. I understand everything that happened, and I don't blame you, he said in a brief moment of sincerity. Minato's eyes glossed over, and he stared into the distance, faintly able to see the battle still raging on. The rain lit up in flashes of blue and red according to their attacks. He could very vaguely make out the figures of Kushina and Menma. I know. He managed to get out amidst his still very choppy breathing. But I blame me for all of it. Naruto didn't respond, opting to listen instead. For everything wrong I've done in this life, forgetting you has been the one mistake that has plagued my mind for years. There wasn't one night that I didn't think about you, Naruto. What I did to you. He trailed off, his features contorting, signifying he was in tears. It won't mean much, and I know it won't, but I am so proud of you, Naruto. No matter what you have become, I will always be proud of you, he proclaimed, letting his emotions flow freely. A father's grief. Naruto watched, a new, undefined emotion stirring within him. He squatted, observing Minato, who was openly weeping, a sight Naruto had never witnessed in all his years with the family. This was raw, unfiltered pain. Minato sensed movement. He looked up to see Naruto removing his mask, tossing it into the muddy sand. His own eyes welled further. A trembling hand reached out, tenderly caressing his firstborn's face, as a torrent of regretful memories flooded his mind. Cherished memories. Ha ha ha. Dad, let me go, a 3-year-old Naruto shrieked with joyful laughter, trying to escape his father's tickling hands. Minato, making comical monster sounds, mercilessly attacked the boy's sides. RRRGH. Oh no. He's gonna tickle him to death. When Naruto finally broke free, he dashed through the backyard, searching for his toy weapon. Minato pursued on his knees, arms outstretched, continuing his monster charade. Naruto giggled as he ran towards the plastic sword in the grass. Reaching it, he spun around, pointing it at his father with a comically serious face, unable to suppress his laughter. Get back, monster, he squealed, his bravado dissolving into chuckles. Minato played his part perfectly, raising his hands and slowly retreating. Oh, no. Please. I won't ever tickle those people again, he said, fighting his own laughter. Naruto's next line made him burst out laughing. I know, because you already tickled them, he exclaimed, rushing forward with a giggle. Minato roared with laughter at the hero's grammatically incorrect but hilarious declaration, falling onto his back and catching the blonde boy as he jumped onto his stomach. They rolled around, Minato tickling him, before settling with Naruto pinning him on his chest. Both struggled to stop their incessant laughter, finding their improvised game endlessly amusing. Minato gazed into Naruto's blue eyes, filled with pure wonder. This was his son. Every feature, from his eyes to his face and hair, was a mirror image of his younger self, whiskers aside. He couldn't believe it. An ominous revelation. Oh no, a new voice said from the porch. Kushina stood there, holding a blank piece of paper, looking shocked and worried. Minato gently moved Naruto off him and stood up. Hey, what happened? He asked, trying to see the paper. To his confusion, it was blank. Naruto glanced at them, then shoved a hand in his pocket and turned to play alone. Kushina just shook her head. I don't know, she said. It says here that the brave knight Naruto didn't actually beat up the wicked witch. Naruto's head snapped up in interest. It says she's now an accomplice of the tickling tyrant and that they're both coming to get him, she declared, as she and Minato chased the uncontrollably laughing blonde boy once more. Despair and regret. Years later, that same face, but now worn and etched with sadness. Minato rubbed his cheek, tears flowing freely, uncaring of who saw him. "I'm so sorry, Naruto," he choked out. "I love you." Naruto remained silent, staring at his father's tear-streaked face, committing to memory the weariness life had inflicted on such a seemingly happy person. It underscored that the saddest individuals often leave the fewest clues. With a heavy heart, filled with sorrow and remorse for the man he still called dad, he stabbed him in the stomach with his discarded tri-pronged kunai. Minato leaned forward, his bloody chin resting on Naruto's shoulder, still mouthing "I love you," determined to say it for all the years he hadn't. "You too, Dad, you too," Naruto whispered, gently laying him back against the boulder. He picked up his mask, letting the rain wash away the clinging mud. He stared at its design, recalling its purpose. If the world would laugh at him, then he would laugh right back. But what was he supposed to do if it cried for him? This was new. He tilted his head back, closing his eyes, letting the rain cleanse his face. He listened to the calming thunder and rain, barely registering the absence of water dragon sounds. Turning, he looked out at the water, seeing no flashes or hearing explosions. Finally, through the driving rain, he saw his mother and brother running towards the island. Menma must have sensed the loss of Minato's chakra signature through his sage mode. Naruto smiled, noting Menma's growth. Donning his mask, he ran a hand through his hair, pushing it back. "What'll you do now, Menma?" he asked the wind, watching his brother and mother come into clear view. Devastation and accusation. "Minato," Kushina called out slowly, seeing his motionless form against the rock. Her brow furrowed, refusing to believe the inevitable. She conjured a chakra chain, swiping at Naruto, forcing him to jump back. With Naruto distracted, Menma and Kushina rushed to the body. "Dad, hey, Dad," Menma yelled, slapping his face a few times. Kushina leaned in, putting her ear to his heart, desperately hoping to hear something. She frantically hit his other side, as if to restart him. "Dad, get up." Menma's voice cracked. It was a sight, had there been onlookers, to see a cage in tears. Yet, it had happened twice today. Kushina had long since lost composure, screaming her husband's name, hoping he would hear and somehow awaken. Naruto watched from a distance, contemplating his own feelings, wondering why he remained unaffected. These were still family, yet watching his father die, by his own hand no less, he felt nothing, as if he had taken the life of a stranger. Did that make him a monster? A book he once read claimed a man that can harm his family and remain sane is a true monster. Perhaps he wasn't sane. All this time, he'd accepted the label of psychopath, as the world had decided. But he never truly believed it until now. He'd just taken his father's life and felt absolutely nothing. That had to mean something. Ino once told him he was simply a man who enjoyed walking with the insane, someone who could hear the whispers of the demented and decode the babbling of schizophrenics. Was that supposed to be a good thing? Confrontation. Whatever it meant, it clearly didn't sit right with the blonde cage now pacing towards him, head down. "Why?" Menma asked, clear anger lacing his hollow voice. Even with this as a possible outcome, he never thought. How could you kill your own father? Naruto was tearing himself apart with that question too, yet it was necessary. "Well, it's just like killing anyone else. He bleeds all the same," he replied with a snarky comment. "You bastard!" Menma yelled, clenching his hands tightly. Naruto watched him, fully aware of what was coming. "You're too naive, Menma," he called out casually. "All that power you have, and yet you're so weak. You know why that is, don't you?" He received no answer. "You're too good, too noble and too kind." Menma seemed uninterested in anything Naruto said, dropping to his knees, digging his hands into the mud. "As I've been saying all day, you and your people have placed you on this pedestal of some sort of omnipotent god. But, there is a reason god and human are two different words. For, it's hard for a god to be omnipotent with useless traits such as kindness and nobility. Humanity's ideals clash too much for a kind god to answer all prayers." Menma remained hunched in the sand, unmoving. "So, I'll say it once more, you're no god. You're just a human." As soon as he finished speaking, his mask shattered completely, torn apart by the red-eyed, feral Menma. The battle begins. Naruto flipped back, slamming into a cluster of trees, pain racking his body. With a grunt, he got back to his feet. Menma was already on him. Naruto decided fighting in open water would be the worst idea with a tailed beast, so he charged into the trees, ducking and dodging his animalistic brother's attacks. Swinging from a tree, he was tackled out of the air and onto the ground. Sticking his arm up, he tried to block a right slash to his face, but the force of the hit threw him aside. As soon as he stood, he leaned away, avoiding a flying kick that uprooted a small tree beside him. Menma spun around, his attacks fueled by pure hatred and anger. Naruto struggled to dodge all the attacks, but miraculously succeeded to some extent. He finally found an opening in Menma's guard to deliver his own strike. His fist connected with Menma's cheek, breaking his own wrist from the impact. Caught in shock, he was kicked back, partially through the tree behind him. While he had a moment, he healed his injured wrist, dodging various attacks around him. The rain severely impeded his senses, leaving him blind within the dense trees. Dropping down quickly, he created a regular shadow clone before taking off, avoiding Menma's next strike. He had a plan, but needed to buy time. He did just that, evading Menma's attacks while keeping him away from his clone. Menma was too far gone, an orange hue of bubbling chakra covering his body, a tail sprouting from his back. Naruto sighed, feeling a bit exhausted. Relentless assault. Jumping away, Naruto avoided an extended orange claw that completely uprooted the tree he was hiding behind. Rolling forward, he laid flat, avoiding the next strike. Quickly, he jumped up before the claw crushed the ground beneath him. Airborne, he was vulnerable. Menma's chakra-infused fist punched him full force, sending him flying through heavy foliage, breaking trees, and more along the way. When he finally stopped, he lifted his head, meeting the top of Menma's foot. His body was sent flying again, only stopping when his back impacted the boulder behind him. Before he could fall, Menma, moving at incredible speeds, pressed him into the stone wall. He grabbed the front of Naruto's shirt, ripping it, and yanked him from the rock before throwing him to the ground. Naruto tumbled across the muddy floor for a few feet, coating his now bare chest in filth. With a groan of apparent pain, he got back to his feet. Spitting out blood, he adopted a fighting stance. Menma crouched a few feet away, ready to pounce. With a burst that kicked up mud, he ran on all fours, striking Naruto with a wild slash. Naruto leaned away and punched him in the side. Menma ignored the hit, bringing the same arm back, trying to catch him with an elbow. Naruto leaned out of the strike, delivering 2 quick jabs to his abdomen. Menma took the hits and went to slash again. Before he could, Naruto spun and kicked him in the throat, silencing the roar. Ignoring the attack again, Menma followed through, hitting Naruto across the face. Naruto fell, but quickly found his feet. Dodging Menma's next few slashes, he kicked off the nearby tree and clotheslined the cage until both hit the ground. Menma seemed enraged by the maneuver, righting himself as quickly as possible. Naruto did the same and rushed forward. Menma also rushed, tackling him back down, pinning him. Raising his clawed hand, he brought it down, driving straight through Naruto's chest. Naruto dispersed in a cloud of smoke before the real one popped out of the ground and kicked Menma forward. Unleashed power. Menma rolled until he was back on his feet. Turning to the redhead, he roared before sinking deeper into his crouch. Naruto watched casually as Menma's skin began to peel off, revealing a dark red chakra construct beneath. When it was all gone, only a figure of deep red chakra with white, squinting eyes remained. For tails waved behind him. Naruto seemed undeterred. He settled into his stance again and rushed forward when the beast did. To his surprise, he couldn't track him, he was simply too fast now. On pure instinct, he slid down, causing Menma to fly over him, slamming into a tree. Now in close proximity, he rushed forward before Menma recovered. Throwing a punch, his fist burned against the skinless creature. Shaking his hand, he backpedaled and went through hand signs. Filling his lungs, he shot small fireballs towards the beast, which dodged them with relative ease. Jumping up, he used the branches to propel himself higher and higher. At the top branch, he kicked back and away from it, dodging a black ball heading his way. In his descent, he stared up, mesmerized by the explosion that lit the sky and momentarily stopped the rain. Finished marveling at the Kyubai's power, he flipped back around to land upright, but saw Menma directly beneath him. Thinking quickly, he made another shadow clone and had it throw him back towards the tree. He stuck to it with his chakra, watching as Menma clung to it as well and began running up its side. A desperate plan. Cutting his chakra, he began falling towards the figure he couldn't properly identify as his brother. Opening his palm, he formed a raisonnan that quickly developed a small, screeching white blade of wind. Menma was too far gone to recognize dangerous attacks, acting solely out of pure rage. Naruto drove his arm forward when Menma was in range. The wind-augmented raisonnan plunged into Menma's chest, inciting a roar of pain from the monster. He was thrown to the ground painfully but got to his feet almost immediately. Naruto righted himself after the attack and clung to the side of the tree. He stared down at the beast already running back up. Going through hand signs, he held out his palm. As the most useful attack all day due to the conditions, a water dragon formed from the surrounding water and rushed forward. Menma roared and slashed his claw at the beast's head. It dispersed the dragon, but the influx of water crashing down on him caused him to momentarily take his eyes off his opponent. Naruto came down and planted both feet into the beast's face, sending them both towards the ground. Menma righted himself quickly and grabbed Naruto's foot before he could recover. He spun around violently before releasing the redhead, flinging him through multiple trees. The exhausting chase. Grimacing, he stood back to his feet and dodged the lunging Menma. Realizing he couldn't remain solely on the defensive, he rushed forward, creating a horde of regular shadow clones that lunged at the chakra-shrouded cage. The beast slashed and clawed at them, unable to discern the real one. They all dispersed in white clouds, blinding his vision before the next attack came. The real Naruto mingled among the group, holding back and wondering where that other clone was. Seeing Menma mowing down clone after clone, he looked around, trying to devise a plan. With nothing to use, he resigned himself to the inevitability of a direct confrontation. With a shrug and a chuckle at the situation, he rushed forward along with the clones. The group threw everything they could at the chakra construct until only 5 clones remained, along with Naruto himself. They all stood around the beastly creature in their stances. Menma crouched, claws dug into the mud in anticipation. With a roar, he rushed forward, slashing at a clone that dispersed. Spinning around, he met a fireball head-on, shielding his eyes before roaring towards the attacker. He rushed forward and destroyed that one too. The mud beneath him liquefied, and he began sinking, clawing at the sides and roaring in anger as he went down. Just before his head was completely submerged, he filled his lungs and let out a deafening scream that pushed the surrounding mud back, allowing him to jump out. The final blow. When he emerged, he located the very first Naruto he saw and ran towards him. That clone dispersed just as easily before he was assaulted by a dragon made purely of mud that shot towards him and threw him back. With a roar, he returned to his crouching position and quickly disposed of 2 more clones before locking his eyes on another. Rushing forward, he hit this one in the stomach, throwing it back. Seeing that it didn't disperse, the beast knew it was the real one. Rushing forward, it hit a tree out of the way before continuing the chase. Naruto jumped from tree to tree, avoiding the red chakra hue as best he could. When the branch he was about to land on broke, he dropped to the ground and slammed his hands on the floor. Instantly, a mud wall shot up. Menma was undeterred, smashing through it. When he did, he lost sight of his target. Naruto revealed his presence by hopping down and delivering a brutal axe kick to the back of his head. True to its animalistic ways, the beast shook off the hit, grabbed Naruto's leg, and flung him through the remaining bits of the wall. Before he could get to his feet, he was grabbed again and thrown further through the woods. Naruto landed on his back, staring straight up at the sky. His head was dazed, and he found himself wondering what time it must be. It was definitely nearing sundown. Finally regaining his senses, he stood up to see Menma stalking towards him. His entire body ached, but he adopted his stance nonetheless. Menma roared again and ran forward. Naruto rolled back and kicked the beast over his head. Menma smacked into a tree but quickly got back up. He rushed Naruto again. Naruto gently leaned out of the way of the strike, sending the rage-filled creature stumbling past him. When Menma turned, a look of animosity bubbled uncontrollably in his white eyes. Naruto remained unaffected, staying in his stance. Menma roared and crouched down. Opening his mouth, Naruto could see chakra visibly pooling in front of him. He realized this was the technique from earlier. Getting ready to try and end it early, he sighed in relief seeing movement behind the beast. Menma was seconds away from swallowing the ball of condensed chakra before the red chakra around him completely dispersed, and the ball vanished. Menma's injured body fell flat into the mud, his eyes and mouth wide open in shock. Naruto sat back on his butt, looking across at the clone behind him. He nodded, and the clone dispersed, sending its memories back to him. The seal he'd slapped on Menma's back would block all contact with the beast for the next 24 hours. It had taken so long because he had to create a seal that would seep into Menma's skin. Regardless, the clone had succeeded. Naruto stood up, wincing in pain. He dropped to his knees next to Menma and rolled him onto his back. His hands glowed green as he placed them over Menma's chest. Breathing heavily, he spoke. "Oh no, Hokage, we're not done yet." Slowly but surely, the red color of Menma's skin began to retreat. His face settled into a grimace of pain. When Naruto had healed him enough, he stepped back, letting the rain wake him up. Menma's eyes opened briefly before he shut them, putting his forearm over them to shield from the onslaught of water droplets. Rolling over, he got to his butt and looked around. After the fight, Menma remembered what had happened before he lost consciousness. He saw Naruto leaning against a tree, attempting to heal himself. With a painful groan, Menma tried to stand, but failed. "Why didn't you kill me?" he asked, his voice strained. Naruto looked at him with uninterested eyes. "Had that been my goal, I would have," he said casually, his cryptic tone infuriating Menma. Shaking his head in anger and disbelief, Menma stared back. "Then what the hell is your goal?" he demanded, his voice sharp. "Because it makes no sense." Naruto spat out blood. "My goal is to get you to understand." "Oh, don't give me that shit," Menma retorted. "What's all this for? To prove you're better than me? Is that it?" Naruto gave him a confused look, as if Menma had said something strange. "You want to show everyone how far you can get on your own, so you do all this? Killing a cage? Attacking villages? Killing your own fa? Killing my father?" Naruto remained silent, staring at Menma as if he were an incomprehensible piece of art, a philosophical brain teaser. "Do you even know what you've done? Or are you too psychotic to understand? Receiving no answer, Menma's anger boiled over. Do you even care? Naruto turned, leaning his back against the tree, and stared at the ground. For a second, Menma thought he saw remorse, but only for a second. Slowly, a smile crept onto Naruto's face. He began to chuckle, then laugh, his laughter growing into an uncontrollable bellow as he tilted his head back, laughing into the sky. Menma watched him, an angry scowl on his face. For the first time, he was certain Naruto had completely lost it. He couldn't speak until Naruto's laughter finally died down. What the hell is so funny about all this? Naruto still chuckled, finding whatever amused him too funny to contain fully. When he finally controlled his laughter, he answered, I was just thinking. This would make for a great book, he said in a completely serious tone. Menma shook his head. You're a diseased maniac. Completely insane. Naruto smiled. Oh, but I'm not, he said, stepping away from the tree somewhat painfully. No, I'm actually, if you'd believe me, completely sane. In fact, I'm much more sane than most. Menma scoffed jokingly. Ha, that's the dumbest thing you've said all day. And believe me, there's a list. Smiling at the witty remark, Naruto continued. No, really. I am. In fact, I dare venture into saying that, you're the crazy one. Menma grinned, shaking his head. This was a new level of derangement. Oh really, he asked condescendingly. I'm the one who's possibly plunged the world into its fourth great war for absolutely no reason. Naruto tilted his head. Well, no. But on the same note, neither have I, he said, irritating Menma further. When you say, for absolutely no reason, that is a personal viewpoint. Simply because your naive little mind can't comprehend the reasoning, doesn't mean there is none. And you just think you're so brilliant, huh? Menma asked childishly, making Naruto grin. Brilliant when in regards to the situation, sure. That was not meant to demean your intelligence, Menma. Your naivete has become your greatest weakness, which is why you refuse to believe my warning. Because your warning is misguided, Menma immediately replied, confident in his words. The people of Konoha are good people, showing distrust drives a wedge through our bond, and I know your game plan. He spoke as if he were spot on. Naruto simply waited for him to elaborate. Knowing you, it's probably some scheme to make us drive ourselves apart, and I won't fall for it. Naruto shrugged. In time you will know. In fact, it may be sooner than you think with the coming war about to spring to life. Those wars have nothing to do with Konoha. We will not attack unless we are attacked, and I will let the other villages know that we are remaining neutral, he stated. If I try, I'm sure I could get through to the Kaze cage before he does something reckless. He muttered to himself. Naruto just shook his head. You're foolish, Menma, and your people will pay for it, he said in disappointment. When I began this venture, I was so sure that you were but a bystander in this cycle they created, a mere ignorant pawn that was unaware of his actions, but now I understand that you are the worst of them all. The worst of who? Menma asked, not understanding. The worst of these peacekeepers. You're so much more than naive and ignorant. No, you're a true believer in this theory of order you possess. One that they created. You believe you rule the people with compassion and cooperation, when really, you rule them with fear and tyranny, he explained. I rule the village with only compassion, he tried to defend himself. Naruto sighed. Not those people, Menma, he said, rubbing his head. I mean the rest of them. The other villages, the criminals outside of your walls, the individuals who would much rather see the village fall. Whether you've noticed or not, they all bend to your will. The will of the Hokage. You rule those people through fear of power that isn't even yours alone. They fear the prowess of the people under your command, but God, if they only knew how divided they truly are. I do not rule those people. I defend the village from them, by any means necessary. Wrong again, Naruto chided. No, you only believe you do. The problem resides in the fact that there are 4 more individuals who believe they do the same. Well, 3 others, he said with a grin. This world has become nothing more than a constant struggle of power. There is no life in a world such as this. Life no longer exists. There is only existence itself, and it's being wasted on people who would rather kill each other over the things they don't have instead of enjoying the things they do. For someone who hates the world, you seem to love life so much, Menma chided. Naruto chuckled. No. I would much rather die than remain in a world such as this. Believe that if nothing else. Menma stared at him, weighing his words. Why would you rather die than see this vision of yours come to life, he asked, truly confused by his brother's motives. It's simple, Menma, this world is not for me, he said, running a hand through his hair. I don't mean that in a spiteful way, I mean it in a literal sense. He looked around, unable to find the words. I'm a knight with no day, an antagonist with no true opponent. Menma was completely confused now. He had no idea what Naruto meant. Bored, Menma, Naruto said, seeing the confusion on his face. I have become bored with this dull existence. Excitement ended for me many years ago. Had I the chance, I would have ended myself a long time ago. Sadly for you, I was prevented from doing so and instead had time to think over the direction this world is taking. I decided to intervene on the cusp that this world may someday become complete again. I don't have to see it for it to do so. So you're content with not even living to see it? Menma asked incredulously. What if it doesn't happen? Naruto smirked. Regardless if it does or not, I have started something new, something much more lasting. He picked up the remaining half of his shattered mask, conveniently nearby. This mask here, Menma, this means something. There is a reason I never named it, for it will have many names in the years to come. He smiled. This served a greater purpose than simply covering my face. No, this mask is something greater. It is nothing more than an idea that order is deadly. The next wearer may have a different agenda, but their purpose will always remain the same: upset the established order. Menma finally found the strength to stand. His legs were wobbly, but Naruto wasn't entirely steady either. Just like I'm here to stop you, someone else will do the same, because regardless of what you believe, there are good people and there will always be good people, he said, getting into a stance. Still breathing heavily, Naruto stepped forward. Believe what you will, Menma, or believe the truth. He rushed forward as fast as he could. Menma rushed too, ducking beneath Naruto's wild haymaker. He tried to counter with a right hook, but Naruto caught his fist and used his arm to flip him over. Menma landed on his feet and ducked beneath the kick aimed for his head. Backing up, he avoided the follow-up that slid past him. Acting quickly, he flew in and threw a punch to Naruto's unprotected face that actually landed. He tried to follow up, but his next punch was dodged, and he was kicked in the knee, dropping him. Before he could recover, Naruto spun around and kicked him directly in the face, sending him flying back. Menma got back up before Naruto reached him. In a moment of desperation, he tried to tackle him, but as soon as he came within range, Naruto kneed him in the face. His head snapped back painfully, and he clenched his eyes shut. Naruto let him recover, standing back and watching. Menma took the opportunity and shook the dizziness from his head. Blinking a few times, he groaned and rushed again. Naruto dodged his two brawler-style punches and jabbed him twice in the stomach. Menma hunched over and used his forearms to block the incoming knee. He recovered and feigned a right hook expertly, setting up for the back kick he landed. Naruto was thrown to the ground, and before he could get up, Menma mounted him and began beating him repeatedly. Naruto seemed to let it happen, simply placing his hands out to the side. The hits grew harder as Menma tried to finish the fight. Before the next hit could land, Naruto swung forward, hitting Menma at the bottom of his clenched fist, hurting his fingers. Menma's lapse in focus allowed Naruto to hit him in the throat before delivering a headbutt. Menma fell back and off the redhead. Naruto got to his feet and kicked Menma back down before he could get up. He walked to the front of him, grabbed his hair, and yanked him to his feet, delivering a volley of punches into his midsection. Menma once again hunched over in pain. With his head down, Naruto somersaulted and brought the back of his foot down to the back of Menma's head, slamming him into the floor. Both lay there in the mud. Naruto looked up at the still raining sky, and Menma lay face down in the brown slush. Naruto took a few breaths before painfully rolling over. Surprisingly, Menma made it to his feet just as he did. Naruto groaned and hit him in the gut. Menma took the hit and socked him across the jaw. Naruto came back and returned the favor. Menma roared in anger and swung two hits that both missed. He felt Naruto sink down and poke his legs, but he didn't feel it until he tried to step forward. Both of his legs gave out, and he dropped to his knees in confusion. While on his knees, he attempted a desperate swing, but Naruto dodged it and quickly jabbed at two specific points on his arm. The appendage fell limp to his side. He groaned and hesitantly lifted the other fist. With absolutely no confidence, he threw it forward lazily. Naruto grabbed his wrist and kneed the back of his elbow, breaking the appendage. "All I ever wanted was for you to understand," he said, staring at Menma's downed form. Menma just stared at the ground, accepting defeat. "That's what this was about, pulling you from the ignorance you were living in." Menma rolled his head back. "Maybe I preferred it that way," he muttered. Naruto chuckled. "Heh, of course you did, but change was coming regardless. They would have waited for Tōyu-san and perhaps Kakashi to die off before they made their move," he said, still speaking about this so-called revolution. "You don't get it," Menma said, almost laughing at the irony. "Heh, as smart as you are, and you can't figure it out." Naruto waited, wondering what he was talking about. "Konoha is a nation built on trust. We are built on family, companionship. We are not built on this struggle for power like you say we are. The Uchiha clan? They've always been close friends to our family. The words of a traitor will not change the way I view them, especially given his track record." Naruto shook his head. "Menma, I could not get you to understand. You're too strong-willed for such a thing. For a long time, I had thought I shared the likeness to that character in Jiraiya's book, just because we shared the same name. I thought the book was describing me. In truth, it's you," he muttered out between his pain-stricken breaths. "You have faith in your people. I am telling you now, Menma, that faith is misplaced, and if you're not careful, those civilized people of yours, they'll eat each other." Menma just shook his head and smiled at him. "No, Naruto, I'm sorry I couldn't get you to understand. You've been living your entire life with disdain for people, then meeting Itachi was like a breath of fresh air to you. Then, when he was taken away, it was like someone ripped that air right out of your body." Naruto looked at him in confusion. "Touching, but wrong," he said with a small chuckle. "No, when he was taken away, it was like giving sight to the blind. I began to see the world for what it was. I began to view everything the way it was meant to be, not the way they said it is," he said, once again infuriating Menma with that cryptically difficult dialect. "I received one eye that day, and, in a kingdom of the blind, the one-eyed man is king." He let that statement hang in the air for a few seconds, clutching at his sides. Everything within him was possibly broken at this point. Menma remained silent, his mind debating whether to believe him. There was no solid answer in his heart. If he believed this, he would be incriminating Suzuki, his best friend and new brother-in-law. What would Mito think? Where would she stand if this whole thing actually came to fruition? He looked up into his brother's eyes and, for some reason, believed him wholeheartedly. It was only when he looked away that he doubted his words. "The people of today, they're weak," he said suddenly. "Thousands of shinobi within each of the villages, thousands." He emphasized the second mention. "And look what I could do with just a few hundred men and a paper bomb. There were many things I could have done. I could have taken each village's most beloved person and executed them with another nation's headband on. I could have disrupted the order of the mission income. That seems to do it. All those are great and all for starting a war, but that's not what I did," he said. "No, I proved a point. Even the individuals tasked with the lives of thousands are no different than me, a series of bad events, and they're at the doorstep of madness. So, when you call me a freak, or a psychopath, or whatever else you want, I urge you to look across that battlefield at your fellow Kage. Watch that madness play out within their eyes and tell me how wrong I am." Menma sat back on his heels and stared up at the sky. Naruto's true intentions were just unveiled. Beyond all the nonsense they'd been fed, he knew this was real. That was his plan all along, to prove that everyone was just like him. He wasn't trying to prove that point to anyone else but himself. Now, Menma understood. This entire ploy, this whole game, was just a way to prove his own sanity before he died. "You're right," Menma said, exhaustion lacing his tone. Naruto stared at him, clutching his aching body, no chakra left to heal. "You're not insane," Menma said, seemingly understanding. "Everyone has been telling you that, possibly since Itachi died, but you're not, given the circumstances. I would have done the same thing," he said, staring through the trees. Naruto chuckled and stepped closer to him. Menma shut his eyes, believing this was the end. Then, in a moment of deja vu, Naruto rubbed his head. "There you go, buddy. Now you got it." With that said, Naruto walked past him, heading out of the foliage. Menma remained in his spot, not that he could move much anyway. Those words, he remembered them so clearly. Years ago. Sitting on the couch between Naruto's legs, Menma stared at the pictures in the book. Mito leaned on Naruto's shoulder, also looking. Then, when all seemed lost, the prince came flying back in, using his shield to block the dragon's furious fire breath. Naruto read. Menma smiled in excitement. The princess thanked him and asked for his sword. When he gave it to her, they waited for the dragon's fire breath to run out before they attacked. The prince let the princess get on top of his shield, and he threw her up towards the monster. With a strike of her mighty sword, she cut his head off, Naruto said triumphantly, receiving shouts of amazement from the two 4-year-olds. "Yeah, that was so cool, Nii-san," Menma said, turning to look him in the eyes. Naruto smiled and nodded. "The princess was the best," Mito said with pride. "She killed the dragon." "Of course," Menma protested. "Nah, she only killed him because the prince let her," he yelled in defense of his favorite character. Naruto smiled at the ridiculous argument but let them fight it out as he found a new book. It was a much more difficult book with words Naruto himself probably shouldn't know at that age. Soon, Menma snuck up next to him to see what he was reading. His eyes locked onto the title written in bold letters at the top of every page. "Convoluted WR?" he asked, trying to sound it out. Naruto chuckled and shook his head. "It says, convoluted war, Menma," he corrected him. Menma opened his mouth in a silent O and nodded. "What does that mean?" he asked suddenly. Naruto brought the book down to think. He knew what it meant, he just didn't know how to explain it. "It means, difficult to understand, intricate, I guess," he said, realizing he used an even more difficult word. "Well, what does that mean?" Menma asked, noticing this too. Naruto chuckled and rubbed his head in thought. It means the same thing, Menma, he said, shaking his head. Hard to understand. Like, using big words. He said, giving a rudimentary definition. Naruto was impressed. He sort of got it. Yeah, he said, staring at him in surprise. He messed his hair up. There you go, buddy, you got it. He heard his mom call them for dinner. Menma smiled and ran off, yelling to his mom that he learned a new word. Naruto shook his head and put the book away. Standing at the edge of a cliff, Naruto gazed out at the sea. It looked beautiful now, resembling exactly what he was fighting for, the chaos of the waves finding unison on the ocean's surface. No one forcing it to be something it was not, no one commanding it. It was free. Hearing footsteps charging towards him, he assumed them to belong to his mother. Turning his head slightly, he was right as he watched her charge him with a sword in hand, ready to end his life. He smiled softly and shut his eyes. Turning back towards the sea, he awaited the blade patiently, each footstep like a timer, counting down the inevitable. He found delight in this moment, almost peaceful for a few more seconds before the end of his short-lived life. His existence was so much smaller than he hoped it would be, but such is life. The footsteps were just behind him now, still charging with conviction and sorrow leaking from the source. Just as the last footstep ended behind him, so did everything else. Naruto opened his eyes, realizing he was not impaled or decapitated yet. Over the rain, he could hear what sounded like snickering. Peeking back slowly, he saw the top of his mother's head. He turned, his gaze fixed on the woman before him, her body trembling with a potent mix of sorrow and regret. He observed her, noting her newfound fragility, a stark contrast to the strongest woman he once knew. Now, she was a mere vessel of pain, a fragile shell consumed by the turmoil of human emotions. Even after everything I've done, you hesitate, he uttered, confusion lacing his voice. Death was an expectation, especially at his mother's hand. He'd kidnapped her granddaughter and murdered her husband. What more could he do to ignite an unparalleled hatred? Kushina's eyes remained downcast, an unseen force pinning her arms, preventing her from thrusting the sword forward. Tears streamed from her face, her body racked with uncontrollable sobs. I see. Her words were choked, refusing to escape. Naruto silently witnessed the internal battle raging within her. Vengeance versus redemption, her heart offered no clear path. Such was the essence of life's struggle. Haha, she cried out, a heartbreaking sound that resembled a laugh. Can't do it, she finally screamed. I can't do dash. Her mouth opened in a silent scream, the sword still aimed at his bare chest as he watched her. Her voice was lost to her tears, her words silenced. She squeezed her eyes shut, a fervent prayer on her lips that upon opening them, this nightmare would end. She yearned to be at the dinner table with her entire family, including Naruto. She and Minato would serve, listening to Mito and Menma bickering, while Naruto read aloud to their captivated grandchildren. Was it selfish to desire such a beautiful, simple life? A tremor ran through her sword, as if gripped by an unseen hand. It wiggled, pushing back against her grasp. Her eyes remained shut, her body uncontrollably shaking. The relentless rain was a distant beat, overshadowed by a soft, rhythmic thud, bum bum, bum bum. Peeking open her eyes, she saw only the blade, piercing his bare chest. His right hand clutched the hilt, oblivious to the wound it created. Her forehead rested just above his heart. Tears intensified as she clung to the blade's hilt. Slowly, his other hand appeared, gently covering hers. He carefully removed her hands from the blade, leaving it embedded in his body. He took a hesitant step back, then a few more. Kushina watched, transfixed, as he retreated toward the cliff's edge. Their eyes met, and in a fleeting moment, she saw a flicker of his old self, perhaps in the genuine smile he offered. She yearned to reach out, to pull him back, to promise him that everything would be all right, that she'd always be there. How foolish that desire seemed now. Naruto smiled again, steadily backing away, still clutching the blade. Goodbye, Kaa-san, he said slowly. And just like that, he fell. Kushina lost sight of him as he vanished over the cliff's edge. It was the last time she would hear him call her that, a title she'd forfeited long ago. Kushina collapsed to her knees, stifling the scream that threatened to escape. She had lost him twice, this time for good. Why did it hurt so much more the second time? Before she knew it, Menma embraced her from behind, the blood mixing with the rain confirming his unspoken fears. He closed his eyes, mourning his brother, a man who had lived in the shadows of his own mind, often labeled insane. Despite everything, he still loved him, a testament to the perplexing, intertwined nature of human emotions. He was his brother, and he would never see him again. Worse, he couldn't decide how to remember him as the innocent boy he once was, or the man he truly became. Regardless, he still had family to protect. Helping his mother to her feet, they walked on, the rain concealing their tears. At the shoreline, Menma noticed a boat he hadn't seen before, waiting for them. He questioned its origin but boarded it nonetheless. Naruto sank deeper into the water, staring up at the surface. Even from here, the water was beautiful, albeit much darker. He heard only the trembling of the water as the rain beat down. His life, though brief, flashed before his eyes a glimpse of life, and the repeated sensation of death. This, he knew, would be his last for a long time. His pain and struggles were gone, he had accomplished his goal. He had cast a stone into the calm pond of their existence, a ripple that would incite others to follow until the world reverted to its intended state, a world of freedom, fairness, and chaos. His vision blurred, eyes fluttering shut as he felt his end approach. The world was so beautiful, and he couldn't wait to see it again. His eyes reopened. He stood on the cliff, watching the boat carrying his mother and brother drift away, the very boat he'd placed there moments before. His mask was back in place, unscathed. A smile touched his lips as the memories of what transpired flooded back. Though he appeared emotionless, his clones often developed a mind of their own, growing emotional as their simulated lives concluded. He watched his family depart, hoping they had heeded his words. The world he envisioned would bring them hardship if they hadn't, but he knew Menma, regardless of full belief, had felt the unease. The roots of rebellion were now deeply embedded within Konoha's core. When war inevitably erupted, Menma would be ready. He had faith. As he stood in the rain, staring into the blurring distance, the boat now out of sight, a slender hand settled on his shoulder. Ino, her mask atop her head, leaned her temple against his as they gazed out at the sea. "You know, you really should have put more chakra into my clone," she said with a smile. Naruto chuckled, removing his own mask. "Ah, I think you did fine with the amount you had." He pecked her lips. She gave him an unconvinced smile, shaking her head. "Yeah, okay," she mocked slyly. Naruto simply shrugged at her skepticism. "Well, Dr. Yamanaka," he said, turning her and placing his hands on her hips. Ino smiled, wrapping her arms around his neck. "I've got a bearskin rug date waiting for us wherever we go." Her smile widened. "Just say where, and we can spend the rest of our lives watching this madness unfold." Ino pondered for a moment before shrugging. "Let's just get in the boat and drift away. Wherever we land is where we stay." Dangerous, poetic, and reckless, but I love it, he said, leaning in and gently pecking her lips. "Let's go lose our minds." She giggled. "One more thing, mister," she said, taking his mask from his head. She removed her own, using ninja wire to tie them together through the eye holes. "For the next psychopaths who happen to find love," she said, kissing Naruto's forehead. She then tossed them into the ocean, letting them drift with the waves, leaving their next wearers to destiny. 1 year later. True to his plan, the world crumbled. Returning Cage found their villages transformed into war zones, attacked by unmarked shinobi and rogues. This unexpected assault crippled them, yet it only forced their hand further. Kumo was the first to strike, targeting Kiri, the only unscathed nation. While they battled, Suna attacked Iwa, which, upon receiving their deceased Cage's body, turned on Konoha. Konoha quickly fell, consumed by an impromptu civil war. Clans fractured, seeking refuge in hiding. Menma and his family, including his mother and sister, joined other clans, finding strength in their trusted numbers. With Konoha's collapse, Kumo's power surged, everyone saw them as the likely successor. In a joint effort, Suna and Kiri brought Kumo down. With them eliminated and Iwa in ruins, the last two shinobi villages tore themselves apart. Kiri fell first, with Suna close behind. Every survivor now held a new respect for the monster who had orchestrated this path. Naruto Namikaze became an infamous name, his mask a symbol of terror. His deeds, recounted and exaggerated, spread like wildfire across the elemental nations. Within a year, it became a chilling folktale and implausible story of unparalleled psychological warfare. Attempts to establish new civilizations were thwarted, as if by Naruto's design, by individuals who shared his ideology. Chaos, to them, was equality. Violence and bloodshed were rampant, yet so was unquestioned companionship as people found solidarity in their shared hell. It was a world of freedom for all. The two architects of this new age resided in a hideout in Rice Country, their appearances drastically changed. Naruto had re-dyed his hair blonde, and Ino had cut her red tips. They resembled their younger selves, from a time when things were, in a way, worse. They lived a simple life as new parents, making their own food, watching the world unravel as they knew it would. It was crazy to think it all began with a few books. A young boy, well-read, gained the will to change a dying world. Witnessing the so-called false gods fueled his rage, their ignorance the spark. He cast the first stone, knowing he wouldn't be the last.